100 people were taking selfies with the corpse, and I was the only one watching its throat. There was a light in there, deep down, past the teeth, a small gold coal that had not been there 10 seconds ago and was very obviously getting bigger. The kind of light you see in a gas stove 1 heartbeat before the burner catches. The thing was called a golden-winged great peng. King rank. Wingspan 2,000 meters, which is a number that means absolutely nothing until one of them puts a shadow over your entire street and the shadow has feathers. It had come out of the north an hour ago, and the first thing it did was open its mouth over the eastern district and breathe. I'd watched a kilometer of my city turn into a sea of gold fire. People ran out of it still burning. They made it a few steps. That was the whole story, and it took about 4 seconds, and I found out something about myself that afternoon, which is that when I am truly terrified, I do not scream. I just stand very still and think one clear sentence over and over. Death can be that close. A life can weigh that little. Then Grandmaster's son showed up, and everybody remembered they had phones. Sun Jian. Guardian of Lincheng City, Soaring Realm, which is the realm where a human being stops needing the ground. He came in over the rooftops with a green sword and no expression whatsoever, and for the next 20 minutes, the sky above the ring road did things that the sky is not supposed to do. Half the crowd was cheering. One guy next to me was live streaming it with the caption already typed out, "Shocking. Lincheng's Grandmaster son battles a golden-winged great peng in broad daylight," and he kept apologizing to his viewers for the vertical framing. Sun burned half his spiritual energy on one strike. A dragon of white swordlight, 1,000 meters of it, went up through the peng from underneath and came out the other side. The bird folded in the air like a wet coat and came down about 100 meters from where we were standing, and the whole street shook, and then it stopped moving, and everyone ran toward it. That's the part I still think about, not the fire, the running toward. 20 minutes earlier, this thing had cooked a district, and now there were middle-aged men climbing onto its wing to get a better angle, and a woman doing a peace sign next to a beak the size of a bus, and somebody's kid petting a feather. Because it was dead. Obviously it was dead. Grandmaster's son killed it, except its throat was glowing. I did the math while a man beside me argued with his wife about whether the lighting was better from the left. The fire cone that morning had reached about 300 meters. We were at 100. Which meant that if I turned and ran right now, at the very best speed a normal 18-year-old with no talent whatsoever can produce, I would die approximately 200 meters from safety, in a crowd, at full sprint, facing the wrong way. So that was the situation, and this is the part where I explain who I was, because it matters. Nobody. That's the short version. Lin Kai, 18, 1 month from the college entrance exam, and 0 talent. Not low talent. 0. 40 years ago, the spiritual energy came back, and the beasts came with it, and since then, there have been 2 kinds of people, Transcendent and everybody else. Everybody else goes to a cultural academy, gets a desk, and hopes the wall holds. My mother was dead. My father sold fruit and looked 50 at 43. My sister was 15 and had not stood up in years. And I was standing inside a kill cone doing arithmetic that came out the same every time I ran it. That was when something in the back of my skull cleared its throat. Ding. After 16 years, the infinite smelting system has completed repairs. I want to be very clear about my reaction because I've told this to people who assume I was thrilled. I was not thrilled. I was a boy in a crowd of tourists with a monster charging up behind him, and a voice had just started narrating in my head, which historically is not a sign that things are going well. Then it kept going. Host, Lin Kai. Physique, ultimate divine body. Compatible technique, myriad things devouring art. Function 1, medicinal pill smelting. Function 2, divine ability fusion. Locked. Unlock condition. Accumulate 50 billion. 50 billion. Not 50 billion of anything exotic. 50 billion yuan. Money. Current progress. 0%. Sure. Great. Very helpful. Meanwhile, the gold coal in that beak had grown into something you could read a book by, and a woman 30 meters ahead of me was crouching to get her whole family in frame. Here is the thing about the myriad things devouring art, which I understood in that second the way you understand your own hand. It eats. Essence, energy, spirit. It takes what a living thing has and it makes it mine. And the biggest reservoir of essence within 1,000 kilometers of me was lying right there with a hole in it, dying, and 100 meters away, and I was going to be dead in about 7 seconds regardless. So I picked up a piece of construction rebar off the curb, a meter of rusty steel. My weapon, against a king-rank beast, was a stick, and I ran at it. Behind me, a girl's voice went up. Lin Kai, come back. That was Manhwa, classmate. The pretty one, the one who actually had talent. The one who'd been walking home next to me making small talk about the exam maybe 6 minutes earlier, back when the world made sense. I did not turn around. In my head I was counting, because 100 meters at a dead sprint is 7 seconds and I did not have 8. The crowd noticed me at about second 3. Nothing clears a photo op like one screaming idiot running the wrong way. At second 5, I was under the beak and the heat coming off it was pushing on my face like a hand. At second 6, I went up the ruin of its skull, found the crack Grandmaster Sun's sword had opened, and put a meter of rebar into it with everything I had. At second 7, the world went white, not fire, memory, because the devouring art latched on, and the Peng's whole life came through the steel and into me at once, and I got to be a bird. I hatched in a nest of stones somewhere freezing. I was weak. I got hunted by things bigger than me for what felt like decades. I learned that flying higher meant fewer things above you. I killed. I grew. I became the shadow that other things ran from, and I was very good at it, and I was proud of it, in a way birds are not supposed to be able to be proud of anything. And then a man in green flew up out of a human city and put a sword through me, and I died confused. I came back to myself on my knees on a mountain of feathers with a nosebleed and a system panel unrolling behind my eyes. 10 acupoints filled, strength, 150 caddies to 180. I sat there and did some more math. A normal person opens their first acupoint after months of training with a licensed instructor, assuming they can open one at all. I had just opened 10 by hitting a bird with a stick. The throat light was gone. Whatever it had been building, it had needed that last handful of life to build it with, and I'd taken the handful. There was a sound behind me. Boots on feathers. I turned around and Grandmaster's son was standing there in green battle armor with the sword still out, looking at me the way you look at a math problem that has produced the wrong answer twice. He'd seen it. All of it. The running, the rebar, and whatever the devouring had looked like from the outside, which I still don't know and have never wanted to ask about. "Young man," he said, "your heart nature is very good." I had no idea what to say to that, so I said thank you, which is what you say. He looked at me a while longer. Then he took a knife off his belt, opened the Peng's chest, and cut out a piece of the heart with the blood still in it, and a slab of breast meat, and he packed them into a case, and handed the case to me like a man handing over a lunchbox. "Take it," he said. "You earned it." I said thank you again. I did not ask what it was worth. I found out later, and the number was over 10 million, and I had carried it home under my arm on a bus. Then he picked up 2,000 meters of dead bird with one hand, went up, and left, and the street went back to filming. Manhwa caught up with me at the corner. She was pale in a way that had nothing to do with the heat. "Thank you for saving my life," she said, which was generous because I hadn't been thinking about her at all. I'd been thinking about a crowd and a cone and the fact that running was the only obviously fatal option available, but I've noticed people prefer the version where somebody chose them, so I let her have it. What I did not know, and would not know for another 6 hours, was that we were being watched through a pair of binoculars from the 11th floor of a tower 2 streets over. The man holding them was named Wu Bao, bearded, 50 acupoints, 280 caddies of strength, which in our city made him a small god of a very small kingdom. The kingdom was a nightclub called the Golden Cauldron, and about 9 blocks of protection money. He had watched a nobody school kid get handed a case by a grandmaster, and he had done the only arithmetic he knew. He called his best man, a thug they called Scar, 20 acupoints, 200 jin, a dagger he liked to spin. "The kid on Xinghua Road," Wu Bao said. "He's carrying. Take it off him. And what if he doesn't want to give it up? Cripple him. Just don't kill him." There were cameras today, so that was being arranged for me while I sat on a bus with 10 million yuan of dead bird in my lap, and the system asked me a question. Ding. Detected. Golden-winged Great Peng heart blood and golden-winged Great Peng flesh. Smelt. Now. Appreciate the decision here. 10 million. My father had sold fruit for 22 years and had not seen 10 million. Our apartment was 50 square meters on the 6th floor of a building with no elevator, and the paint came off the walls if you leaned on them. 10 million was a different life, a real one, immediately, for all 3 of us. And it would also have been 10 million yuan of a life where my sister still could not stand up and the wall still held, or didn't depending on strangers. "Smelt it," I said. The case got hot, then it got light. And then there was a pill sitting in it, round and dark red, and it smelled like a thunderstorm. Ding. Spirit Emperor pill obtained. I swallowed it on a public bus. 10 minutes. That's how long it took. 30 acupoints, one after another, popping open down the length of my body like someone walking a hallway turning on lights. A genius with a rich family and a private tutor does 30 acupoints in about a year, and it costs them 20 million. I did it between 2 stops, sitting next to a man asleep against the window. Total, 40 acupoints. Strength, 250 caddies. And I sat there with my hands shaking on my knees and thought about the thing that nobody warns you about, which is that 10 million yuan can just be gone, and you can be glad. I got off 2 stops early because I wanted to walk. That's how Scar found me. He was standing in the mouth of the alley behind the noodle place, spinning his dagger, and he had clearly practiced the spinning a great deal more than he had practiced anything else. "Hand them over," he said. I looked at him. 200 jin, 20 acupoints, and an absolute forest of confidence. 6 hours ago, that man could have killed me with a thought and a slow afternoon. So I threw him the case and the bottle. He caught them one-handed, very smooth, and popped the lid, and his face did something wonderful, because they were empty. Both of them. I had eaten 10 million yuan on the number 14 bus. Kid, he said, just for that remark, you're losing a finger later. I hadn't made a remark. I think the empty box counted as one. He came in with the dagger at 260 jin, which is a lot of force behind a very short piece of metal, and I found out in that second what 40 acupoints actually buys you. It buys you time. The blade came at my stomach, and it came slowly, in the sense that I had a whole moment to decide, and I stepped off the line and put 360 jin a foot into his gut. He folded. The dagger came up out of his hand on the way, and I caught his wrist on the way down and snapped it, and caught the dagger as it fell. Then I cut his throat. He looked at me with enormous surprise. They always do, I've learned. Every single one of them. Me what? I said. You came to cripple me first. The devouring took about a second and gave me 20% of one acupoint, which was insulting, and all of his memories, which were not. In among the debt collections and the beatings and one genuinely sad birthday, I found a bearded man in a nightclub office saying the kid on Xinhua Road, take it off him. I took his phone too, 36,100 yuan, and I put his body in my storage space because it turns out the infinite smelting system comes with a room, and a room is exactly what you need when you have just made a corpse in an alley 2 blocks from your house. I should say something here about how that felt. It felt like nothing. That's the part that scared me on the walk home, more than the fight did. Because I had been a boy who once cried over a hamster, and now I had opened a man's throat and my hands were steady, and I knew exactly why. The Peng's memories were still in me. 200 years of a life where killing was just the thing you did before eating. It had rearranged something in the back of my head, and it had not asked permission. So I fed the 36,000 yuan to the system, mostly to hear it say something. Ding, divine ability fusion. Current progress 0.00000722%. Good heavens, I said out loud on a public street. This thing is a gold-devouring beast. Meanwhile, in the golden cauldron, Wu Bao was calling a phone that was in my pocket and getting nothing, and eventually he went and looked at that alley himself. He found the phone right where I dropped it after emptying it. He found a pool of blood. He did not find Scar, and he did not find any part of Scar, and that bothered him for the rest of the day and most of that night, which I think was the last genuinely productive thought that man ever had. I went home. Building 32, Urban Village, 6th floor, no elevator. The stairwell smelled like other people's dinners, and the walls had been white during some earlier administration. Our door was the one at the end with the rust on the frame. My father was at the stove. Lin Wei, 43 years old, looked 50, wrists like rope. Braised eggplant because it was Tuesday, and eggplant was cheap on Tuesdays. He asked if I'd seen the thing on the news about the Eastern District, and I said yes, and that was the whole conversation, and neither of us ate very much. And my sister was in the corner by the window with a drawing board on her knees. Lin Yue, 15. She had a wheelchair and a very small hard face, and she had not been to school in 3 years. I'll tell you the version I can tell. She has been in that chair since she was 5. A car in the street that did not stop and was never found. And then, when she was 12, there were 3 boys at school who worked out that a girl who cannot stand up is a very safe thing to practice on. It went on for a while before anybody noticed. The day it ended, a teacher walked in on it, and after that all 3 of them turned out to have fathers who make phone calls, and nothing happened to any of them, and my sister never went back to school. One of them came to our building afterward and said something to my father in the stairwell, and my father, who had been a Transcendent once, stood there and took it, because a man with a fruit stall and a crippled daughter does not get to answer that. She stopped going out. She stopped going to school. She drew instead. That night she was drawing an angel. Storm behind it, the whole sky coming down, this small, fierce figure holding position in the middle of it. The angel had one wing. She'd drawn the other one, and then not drawn it, if you know what I mean. There was the place where it should have been, and there was nothing in it. Ayue, I said. My Ayue's drawings are the most beautiful things in the world. She said I was only saying that because I was her brother. I was only saying that because I was her brother. Both things can be true. I went and lay down in my room, which had no window, and stared at a ceiling I couldn't see, and made 2 promises, not out loud. Out loud is for people who have options. 1, she was going to stand up. 2, it was going to be answered for, starting with whoever made sure that it never was. I was 40 acupoints and 250 caddies and a system with a 50 billion yuan paywall on it. It was, objectively, the least credible vow in the history of our district. At the same hour, in a tower on the other side of Lincheng, Grandmaster Sun was standing in front of a projection and reporting to a man whose face I would not see for another 4 months. There's a boy in my city with a devouring physique, he said. The man on the other end was quiet for a moment. Commander Gu Dingchao, guardian god of Hangxia, the strongest human being alive by a margin nobody had ever needed to measure. So it's appeared again, he said. His name is Lin Kai. I know his name, Commander Gu said. I've known it for 18 years. His mother is the young miss of the Huang family of Yanjing. They suppressed her for the sake of some damned pure bloodline. That girl in the wheelchair, the accident that took her legs, that wasn't an accident. That was arranged, and it was arranged by her own grandfather as a way of making a point to his daughter. Grandmaster's son did not say anything for a while. Then, Commander, do we intervene? No. Watch him. Keep the Dark Knight cult off him, and if you find one of them near that family, kill them. Beyond that, nothing. He walks his own road or the road is worthless. Understood. And son, said Commander Gu, if that boy actually grows up, the Huang family will not survive it. I found out about all of that much, much later. At the time, I was asleep on a mattress in a room with no window, and the only thing I knew about my mother was that she died of an illness, which was what my father had always said, in exactly the same tone, for 16 years. The next evening, we were invited to dinner at Uncle Chen's. Chen Hao was a civil servant, a decent one, and the only reason our fruit stall had gone 11 years without paying protection money to anybody. His apartment was 148 square meters in the good district. My father put on the shirt. I carried Ayue up the last flight because the building had an elevator, but it stopped on the wrong floor. And Chen Ruoxi was home. Childhood friend. The girl from downstairs, back when we lived downstairs from anybody. She'd awakened at 15, gone to Heavenly Saint Academy by special exception, and in 2 years she had become someone else entirely. She came out of her room in a white dress and she was polite. That's the word. She looked at me the way you look at a photograph of a place you used to live. And she looked at my sister's wheelchair for exactly 1 second and then didn't look at it again and said nothing about it at all. She hadn't come alone. Xu Chang, 21. 3rd year, Heavenly Saint Academy. Pifu realm. Which at that dinner table meant that if he had sneezed with intent, he could have killed everyone in the room including the building. Handsome in a way that photographs well. He introduced himself as her counselor. He was pleasant for about 4 minutes. So, he said to me, cutting something. Which martial arts academy are you applying to? I said none. Ah, of course. He nodded like I'd confirmed a theory. You know, our family runs a logistics group. We're always short of drivers, presidential car, good salary. A man should be practical. My father put his chopsticks down. And then Xu Chang turned and looked at my sister and said the thing. The Hua family also has a chain of foot massage parlors, he said. Very high-end. Your sister's face is wasted in that chair. She'd be a top technician inside a month. 50,000 a month, easily. Some young masters have a particular taste for beautiful women who are also crippled. The room went absolutely silent. Yue did not say anything. She just put both hands on her wheels and turned herself away from the table, and her voice came out very small and very level. Brother, Dad, we're not eating. Let's go. I heard myself say, you shut the hell up, which considering the man could have removed my head by deciding to, was not tactically sound. Uncle Chen stood up before Xu Chang could answer. He was a 50-year-old office worker in his own living room, and he pointed at his own front door and said, get out, and I have thought about that a lot since. Chen Ruoxi sat there and looked at her plate. Xu Chang smiled and got up and left, and he took his time doing it. We didn't stay much longer. At the door, Uncle Chen pressed something into my hands, wrapped in a supermarket bag, and told me not to open it there. 2 bottles of super-grade gene potion, 3 million each. He was a civil servant. His daughter was at the most expensive academy in the country. I've never asked whose budget that came out of because I know. I smelted them together on the 6th floor of a building with no elevator. Ding. Mixed awakening gene potion obtained. Spiritual energy absorption increased by 1000%. And then the devouring art layered on top of it and put it at 1300. I sat on the floor of a room with no window and drank 6 million yuan, and it went into my bones like cold water into a dry sponge. And somewhere across the city, a man in a nightclub office was telling 4 men to go find out where the fruit seller lived. The presidential suite of the Golden Cauldron had a leather sofa the size of a small car and a man on it who was extremely unhappy. Boss, scars gone, not hiding, gone. There's blood in the alley and no body. And the kid went to school today, walked home, bought vegetables. Wu Bao turned that over for a while. He'd been running 9 blocks for 11 years by being the meanest available option, and the one thing he genuinely could not process was a version of events where he was not. The father, he said. Lin Wei, the fruit stall. That's the one that never paid us, isn't it? Some official at the district office covers him. Chen Hao. Yes, boss. Go and get the father. Wu Bao picked at something on the arm of the sofa. Pick somewhere out of the way. That abandoned coking plant south of the city, and bring a few barrels of gasoline. For light? Wu Bao looked at him. Yes, boss, he said. I understand. I did not know any of this, because I spent that night on the floor of my room with 1300% absorption running through me like a river through a culvert. When the sun came up, I had 70 acupoints and 325 caddies of strength, and I felt like something that should probably be kept in a cage. Then my phone rang, and the screen said, "Dad." "Ah," said a voice that was not my father's. Behind it, further from the microphone, I heard him. "Quickly, report it to the authorities, go and find Uncle Chen," and then a sound I am not going to describe, and then no more of him. "The abandoned coking plant south of the city," Wu Bao said. "You come alone. You bring what the Grandmaster gave you. 1 hour, or come later and collect the body." I stood in the hallway and Ayue asked me who it was. "Nothing," I said. "Small thing. Somebody wants to buy something off me." She looked at me for slightly too long. She was 15. She'd been reading rooms professionally since she was 12, but she let it go, because letting things go was the arrangement we had. I took the empty box and the empty bottle and I left. The coking plant had been dead for 20 years. Rust, weeds up to my waist, a sky you could see through the roof. My father was taped to a chair in the middle of the floor with 5 men around him in cheap suits, and Wu Bao out front with a machete resting on his shoulder like a farm tool. "Give it," he said. I held the bottle up over the concrete at arm's length, the way you hold something you are about to drop. "Let him go first. I want you to understand what a stupid bluff that was." It was empty. It had been empty for 2 days. But there is a specific kind of man who genuinely cannot imagine anyone throwing money away, and Wu Bao was one of them, so the tape came off my father, and my father got up, and I said, "Run," and he did not run. He went into the weeds and crouched down about 40 meters away and stayed. I don't have room here to explain what that did to me. I'll just say I found out that afternoon that my father had been waiting 11 years for someone to hurt one of us in front of him. Then I put Scar on the floor. I mean that literally. I opened the storage space and a corpse fell out of empty air onto the concrete in front of 6 people. "You," Wu Bao said, and something changed in his face entirely. "You actually have a spatial storage device." And that was the end of the negotiation, because a storage device is worth more than 9 blocks, and greed is faster than fear. He came in fast, and he came in smart. Handful of grit at my eyes first, then the machete, 392 jin of it. The grit worked. I couldn't see. It didn't matter, because I could hear a large man moving through gravel, and I brought Scar's dagger up at 500 caddies, and the machete went out of his hands and into the ceiling. He looked at his own empty fingers. I kicked him in the stomach, and while he was still going backwards, I threw the dagger through his throat. Then there were 5. I've thought about how to describe the next 11 seconds without sounding like I'm bragging, and I can't, so here it is. I flicked the machete up off the floor with my foot, caught it, and walked into them. 325 caddies of base strength against 5 men who had spent their careers frightening shopkeepers. It was not a fight. It was gardening. The devouring gave me 40% of 1 Acupoint, which is a terrible return on 6 people, and it gave me Wu Bao's memories, which were worth considerably more, because Wu Bao had a boss, 9 blocks, a nightclub, a machete, and the whole thing sat under a 19-year-old with a black Lamborghini who came to my school every morning. He Peng, my classmate, he sat 2 rows over. He once asked me to help him with a physics question. Their combined accounts came to 2,580,000 yuan, which I moved before their phones cooled, and then I used the gasoline. He'd brought 4 barrels of it to the plant, for light. That was not poetic to me at the time. At the time it was simply the only fuel available, and there were 7 bodies, and I had school in the morning. My father came out of the weeds while it was burning. "How did you get out of that?" he said. "I killed them," I said. "All of them. And here's the thing." He did not stagger. He did not ask me what I had become. He looked at the fire, and then at me, and he sat down on a piece of broken machinery, like a man setting down something he'd been carrying uphill. "Sit," he said. So we sat, in an abandoned factory, next to a fire, and my father finally told me who he was. Body refining realm. He'd been a transcendent, real one, frontline, the whole thing. And then 18 years ago, he'd taken something meant for Chen Hao, and it had broken him out of the system permanently, and he had gone and bought a fruit stall, and that was the entire story he had ever told anyone. "Your mother was a transcendent too," he said. I asked what happened to her. "Illness," he said, in the tone. The same tone. 16 years of the same tone. I let it go, because that was also the arrangement we had. Then he told me the only piece of advice he ever gave me that I have followed to the letter. "Son, if you ever end up in a conflict with another transcendent, not a fight, a conflict, if you get the opportunity, kill. Do not warn them. Do not spare them. Do not leave them alive because they're beaten, because a beaten transcendent gets stronger and comes back, and the second time he won't announce himself." I said okay. And I meant it, which I think surprised both of us. We split the money on the drive home. 200,000 to him for the shop because I wanted the shop bigger and I wanted it in his name. The rest I was not going to spend on cheap gene potions. Gene potions are for people with time. I was going to buy mercenary grade equipment and go into the wilderness and kill things because vicious beasts are essence with legs, and the college entrance exam was in 28 days. That was the plan. I got about a day and a half of it before the Ye family came back into my life. Chen Roxy was flying back to Yanjing, and Uncle Chen asked me to drive her, and I drove her in my father's delivery van, which had a fruit sticker on the door. We got about 4 blocks before a black Lamborghini cut across 2 lanes and stopped in front of us. He Peng got out, my classmate. The 19-year-old who had, at that exact moment, no idea whatsoever that his entire organization had been on fire in a field the previous evening. Ruokshi, he said, and then he saw the van, and his whole face lit up like a man finding money. You're going to the airport in this? He's picking you up in this? What kind of rubbish is this? I sat there with my hands on the wheel and thought about how strange it is to look at a person and know that you have already read their diary. Chen Roxy got out. She didn't raise her voice. She let a fraction of what she was off the leash for about half a second, and He Peng went the color of a fish and stopped talking mid-word. Get lost, she said. He got lost. We drove. She was quiet for a while, and then she explained Shu Chang to me, unprompted, in the flat voice of somebody who has run out of ways to be polite about it. He wanted her married into the Hua family, not her. Her talent. Her family was 3 tiers below his, and everyone involved understood the shape of the transaction except, apparently, her. My destiny, she said, looking out the window, can only be controlled by me. Then she turned around and looked at me and put a knife in. Lin Kai. I'm going to say this once because we grew up together. I am a bird flying in the sky. You are a fish in a stream. That is not an insult. It is just where we are. And I heard myself answer before I decided to. A fish isn't necessarily confined to a small stream, I said. It can swim upstream. It can go over the abyss and come out a dragon. She didn't say anything to that. She looked at me a second longer than she needed to. At the airport, He Peng was waiting, because of course he was, and he'd worked himself up on the drive. Stay away from her, he said, and swung at me. 190 jin. A rich boy's 190 jin. I caught the arm and put a foot in his stomach, and he sat down on the terminal floor in front of a departures board. And then Manhwa walked out of the doors with a suitcase, saw both of us, saw the Lamborghini, saw the fruit van, and got into the fruit van. I'll be honest, that was the best thing that happened to me all week, and I include the part where I got a system. We pulled out. In the mirror, He Peng was still sitting on the ground, alone, in the wind, with his keys in his hand. The next time the two of us were in a room together, it would be his bedroom, and I would be a very different problem. That same evening, in a house on the good side of Lincheng, a very old employee named Old He was giving a report he did not want to give. 7, he said, all 7. And the bodies were burned, boss. He Peng took it better than you'd think. He was 19, and he had been raised to believe that nothing that happened outdoors was really happening to him. Pretend it never happened, he said. Wu Bao was a subcontractor. As for Lin Kai, I'll figure out a way to kill him. Then he went and told his father, which is what he always did, and his father was He Liang, 60-odd, and there is a particular kind of ruin that gets made when a hard man decides his son will never hear the word no. They didn't send thugs. They'd learned that much. They put out a contract at Qi Sensing Realm, which was, on paper, correct. A Qi Sensing Realm Transcendent against a 70 Acupoint schoolboy is not an assassination, it's a chore. The next morning I went to school because I still had an exam. Class 3-22, second period. He Peng caught my eye across the room and drew a finger across his throat, very slowly, so I'd be sure to see it. Childish, I said, out loud, and went back to my book. Then our homeroom teacher came in with the applications. Qin Fen. 22 years in the job. She had a very warm voice that she used on about 6 students, and the rest of us got the other one. Names for the Martial Arts Academy registration, she said. Only students with genuine transcendent talent, please. Let's not waste the district's time. Mei Hua stood up. Of course. Wang Chang stood up. Rich, gifted, fine. I stood up. Nonsense, she said before I had straightened all the way. Lin Kai, sit down. You don't have transcendent talent. You have never had transcendent talent. I didn't before, I said. I do now. Somebody behind me said, maybe his brain got stuck in a door. And she looked at me with real irritation, the kind you only get from someone whose afternoon you're inconveniencing. And she said, are you just someone who was born but not raised? That is what she said. To a boy whose mother was dead, in front of 40 people, because he stood up. I've been asked whether I lost my temper. I didn't. Something in me went very cool, and I looked at her the way you look at a person in a photograph on a wall. Teacher Chin, I said. 3 years. In 3 years, have you once paid attention to a student who did not come from a good family or have transcendent talent? Once? You've taken millions in gifts from the parents in this room, and everyone here knows the names. Take it. Nobody cares. But don't stand up there with a face of high virtue while you do it. It's disgusting to watch. The room came apart. She went and got her phone and put my father on speaker in front of the class because she wanted witnesses. Come and collect your son, she said. He's insulted a teacher. And my father, who sells fruits, said this. My son's affairs are his own to decide. He wants to sit the martial arts examination. I fully support his decision. And don't try to intimidate me by flaunting your teacher's authority because I'm not a student and I never was. I'm hanging up now. Click. Chin Fen registered me. She wrote my name down with the pen digging into the paper and she said, fine, let's see what you do when you fail the strength test. Manhwa registered too, and then she picked up her bag and walked out after me in the middle of a period, which for her was roughly equivalent to arson. Behind us, He Peng was texting his father a very useful piece of information. Lin Kai was going to be training outside school for a month, meaning outside the city, outside the cameras, outside anybody's jurisdiction, which is a perfect window if you happen to be shopping for one. Outside the school gate, Manhwa folded her arms and said, punch something for me. There was a tree. I punched the tree. The trunk cracked open in a line about as long as my forearm. She looked at the tree for a while. 70 acupoints, I said. 325 caddies. In 3 weeks? From zero? I'm joining the mercenaries, I said. I'm going into the wilderness. That got a much bigger reaction than the tree. Because here's the thing about the wilderness. Inside the high wall, there are transcendents and rules and an ambulance. Outside, there are vicious beasts and neither. And transcendents die out there constantly. And the ones who don't come back mostly don't come back in any form. She told me her own number to make a point. 118 acupoints. She wanted 130 before the exam. And she gave me the lesson I actually needed, which is the one nobody bothers to give people with no talent. Because why would you? The human body has 362 acupoints, she said. 120 is not the finish line. 120 is the door. Fill 120 and you become a transcendent, and everything after that is the real path. And after 22 years old, your body stops absorbing properly, and whatever you have is what you have forever. 362. I said nothing and thought about a system that had told me my physique could fill all of them. I look forward to you becoming a transcendent, she said. Then we can fight side by side. I said okay. What I did not tell her was that I'd already killed 9 people. You have to keep something back for later conversations. The Mercenary Hall of Lincheng is 30 stories on 1,000 mu in the west of the city, and it is the loudest building I have ever been in. I registered at a machine that measured my strength at 325 jin, minimum accepted 250, and then I stood in an atrium full of teams and nobody talked to me for 40 minutes because I was visibly a schoolboy and mercenary work is not a school trip. The teams advertise on a board. Most of the posters are enormous. Requirements, ranks, pay splits, kill counts, photographs of dead things. One poster was 4 words, young and capable. That's it. That's the whole advertisement. I went and found them because I have a weakness for that kind of thing. Gao Lei, Captain. Heavy build, tower shield, crimson axe, 400 jin. Graduated from our own #1 high about a decade earlier, which he mentioned twice. Tang Jing, red hair, red soft armor, 3-edged bayonet, 350 jin. Assault. She looked at me the way you look at a delivery you didn't order. He Tao, ex-army sniper, green armor, said approximately 9 words that entire month. Spar with him, said the captain, and Tang Jing came at me with a shout designed to freeze a rookie's spine. I'd heard a king rank beast scream at a city. It didn't land. She feinted a hook. I parried. She swept my leg, and I gave ground. And then she came in for the finish with a high kick, and I went under it and put a hand on her throat. The atrium got quiet in a small local way. After that, 4 other captains tried to poach me, and one of them offered me a signing bonus. I went back to the 4-word poster. Gao Lei, to his eternal credit, immediately offered to lend me 500,000 for equipment, sight unseen, to a boy he'd met 11 minutes earlier. I didn't need it. I bought black gold armor and a black gold battle saber, 1.3 meters, 85 jin. 2,300,000, all in. That left me 50,000 wen and a corpse-eating superpower. You can save money on a lot of things, Tang Jing said, watching me sign for it. Never on equipment. Our last teammate saved money on equipment. She didn't finish the sentence and she didn't need to. The high wall is 50 meters tall and 1,000 meters wide, and the concrete is stained in long dark streaks that nobody washes off because washing them off would suggest they were unusual. The gate is 500 meters across. It opened for us and we drove out, and I looked back once, and that was the last civilized thing I saw for 3 weeks. Mission, Lianfeng Town. Dead settlement. 20,000 mu. Overrun. Clear it and hold it for 3 weeks. 20 million for the contract, maybe 40 with materials. 10 million ahead. And about 4 hours behind us, a man who had spent 25 million wen of Heiliang's money was standing at a checkpoint being told that no, he could not follow a licensed mercenary team into the wilderness, and phoning his client to scream at him about it. The first thing that tried to kill me was a pack of black-winged wolves. 10 of them, 2 meters nose to tail, moving in a spread the way trained soldiers move. I stood still. Behind me, I could hear the captain saying my name in a rising voice, and the click of He Tao's safety coming off, and one wolf came in from 10 meters at a full run, while I did absolutely nothing. I wasn't frozen, I was reading, because there was a 200-year-old bird in the back of my head who had eaten several thousand of these, and it knew exactly where they were soft. The neck, always the neck. They have a plate over the spine, and a gap at the front of it, and they open the gap themselves every single time they lunge, because they lunge with their mouths. I killed the first one in the air. I went under the second one, and opened it from below on the way past. The third one, Gao Lei punched into the sky with a tower shield, which I did not know was a thing shields did, and I jumped and took its head off before it came down. "Good lad," he said, in a completely different voice. "You've got guts." Then we skinned them, and while everybody was busy with knives, I put my hand flat on each carcass in turn and emptied it. 10 black wind wolves. 1 entire Acupoint. 71. I want to note the exchange rate here because it explains everything I did for the next 4 months. 10 wolves, 1 Acupoint, 291 to go. I did ask the system whether the meat was worth smelting. Ding, flesh and blood grade too low. Cool, very cool. Love that for me. Lianfeng Town had been a real place once. 20,000 mu of streets with moss on them and vines coming out of the second floor windows, and every single thing in it wanted to eat us. The worst of the first week was a spirit-colored tiger. 5 meters long, 3 meters at the shoulder, and it took the 4 of us 2 hours. 2 hours. I have since killed things 100 times its weight in less time than it takes to describe them, and I still remember that tiger because it was the first thing that made me understand that strong is not a number, it's a duration. Its meat just barely cleared the system's threshold. Chi rhyme pill, down the hatch. Then 20 days happened, 80 fights. I stopped counting the individual ones around 30 because they blur and because the shape of them stopped changing. Something would come out of a building, and I would kill it, and my hand would go flat on it, and the number in my head would tick. 71 Acupoints to 100, 325 caddies to 400. 400 is exactly what our captain could do. I had caught a man with a decade of professional violence behind him in 20 days, and he watched me do it from 3 meters away, and something else was happening that I couldn't have explained to anybody. The Peng's memories weren't sitting in me like a file anymore. They were dissolving. Every fight took a little more of them into my arms and out of my head, and around day 15 I started doing things in combat that I had not decided to do. Angles, weight shifts, a way of reading where a thing would be rather than where it was. Later I found out that has a name, the technique realm, and the profound truth inside it, which is the 4th of the 10 realms, and which people usually reach around year 8. I was 100 Acupoints deep in a dead town, brushing my fingertips against the 4th realm, and I did not know it was unusual, which was probably for the best. "I rarely admire anybody," Gao Lei said one night, over a fire, apropos of nothing. Then he didn't say the rest of it and drank his soup. On day 21 we found the fox. 3 meters of white hair with brown eyes, and it hit Gao Lei's shield like a truck and put him on his back, and then it whipped Tang Jing across the town square with its tail, and then He Tao put a sniper round into its forehead from 400 meters, and the round did not go in. Gao Lei came up wheezing and said the most motivating sentence I heard that entire month. "White-haired spirit fox. Gene potion base material. 40 million, minimum. Corpse has to stay intact. 40 million. We spent 2 more hours on that animal. 2 hours of not being allowed to damage it, which if you have never tried it, is like being told to win a fistfight without touching anyone's face. In the end, He Tao put a second round through the exact same crater in its skull as the first, which is a shot I still don't entirely believe, and I came down the fox's own tail with 600 jin behind the saber and put the point into the hole. What hard bones, I said, sitting on the corpse, out of breath. We were, at that point, looking at a projected haul of 80 million yuan, and then 5 men in armor came into the square, and one of them was smiling. Luo Feng, crimson armor, great saber, 430 jin, and I knew the name before he said it, because everybody who has ever set foot outside the wall knows the name. The Mad Tiger Mercenary Group. 12 months earlier, there had been an all-female outfit called the Spirit Element Mercenary Group, and then there had been a dispute over a beast carcass, and then there had not been a Spirit Element Mercenary Group. No arrests. No case. If people die in the wilderness, Luo Feng said pleasantly, and the bodies can't be found, what exactly is there to investigate? He wanted the fox. He wanted the fox and the materials and the 3 weeks, and he wanted them handed over. And then he did the thing that I have never been able to explain, which is that he assigned the kills out loud, in front of us, at conversational volume, like a foreman. "Zhou Jin with me on the shield. Sun Qian, take the redhead alive. She's worth more talking than dead, and her family will pay. Zhao Ye, the sniper. Wu Ting," he looked at me, and his mouth did something. "The new kid." Wu Ting had twin steel claws and 330 jin, and he came at my head with 400 behind him because he assumed the number in front of him was a rounding error. I gave him 650. We crossed once. I kept walking. His head came off behind me. Luo Feng's face went completely blank. Not afraid. Blank, the way a screen goes blank. Zhou Jin was third ranked and quick, and he came in with a longsword thrust to buy his captain a second to think. I slid off the line of it, put one finger on the flat of his hilt, and flicked, which turned his beautiful thrust into a man leaning the wrong way, swept his legs, and threw my saber through his stomach on the way down. You've hidden your strength well, he said. I misjudged you. I said nothing, because I was busy. The devouring took him at 50% of my 101st Acupoint. It also took his memories, and that is how I found out exactly what the Mad Tiger Mercenary Group had done to the Spirit Element Mercenary Group, in detail, all at once, standing over him with my hand on his chest. I am not going to repeat any of it. I'll say this instead. The name people used for them out there was the Mad Tiger Mercenary Group. In my head, from that second on, it was the Beastly Mercenary Group, and it has stayed that way. Sun Qian lasted about 30 seconds against me and Tang Jing together. Luo Feng lasted longer because Gao Lei was the one holding him, and Gao Lei fights to survive rather than to win. The captain got him pinned under the axe, and I walked up behind Luo Feng and put my saber through him from the back. How ruthless, he said, on the way down. He actually sounded offended. Not as ruthless as you, I said. Not as ruthless as any of you, and not 1/10 as ruthless as what you did to the Spirit Element Mercenary Group. Then I took him too, and finished my 101st Acupoint and started the 102nd. Zhao Ye died to Tang Jing and a bullet. 5 for 5. Whole outfit, 1 square, about 4 minutes. The looting took longer than the fight. 5 phones, a lot of cash, and on Luo Feng personally, 2 bottles of Awakening Gene Potion at 2.5 million each. I asked for the potions and paid the team for them out of my own share in front of everybody immediately. That mattered more than the potions did. Then I steered us, very casually, 3 streets north to a collapsed shopfront where the Mad Tiger Group had stashed the rest, because I had a dead man's memories and a straight face. 3 more bags, 15 million. Projected haul, 95 million, 23 and change each. That night, I fused both awakening potions with the white-haired spirit fox's blood, and frost crawled 2 meters across the floor, away from my hands. Ding. Spirit-breaking gene potion. Absorption increased 1100%. With the devouring art layered on, 1430. 10 hours later, my 120th Acupoint opened, and everything in my body connected end to end at once, and I stopped being a person who was trying. Qi sensing realm, transcendent. And then, on top of it, something rare enough that my father cried when I described it to him weeks later. The spiritual energy in the room stopped waiting to be pulled and came in on its own. A spiritual Qi infusion. Free. Every instinct I had said push, break through to body tempering, take the second realm tonight. I didn't. Because a normal transcendent fills 120 Acupoints and moves on, and the other 242 stay shut forever, and an ultimate divine body can fill all 362, so I stayed 3 days in a room in a dead town, filling a body that was not supposed to be fillable. 190 Acupoints, 650 caddies. A standard Qi sensing realm transcendent runs 500. When I opened the door, the 3 of them were standing in the corridor arguing in whispers about whether it was safe to knock. Gao Lei shook my hand out of habit and made a noise like a dog stepping on something. 650, I said. How many Acupoints? 190. My heavens, he said. He was 30 years old. He had not reached 120. We loaded 7 bags and a fox onto the roof of the truck and drove for home. We got 2 hours down the road before a man was standing in it. Black soft armor, a prismatic warhammer that weighed 130 jin all by itself, and the relaxed posture of somebody who has done this a number of times and has a system for it. He didn't say hello. He tapped a stone off the roadside with his toe. The stone hit Gao Lei's shield, and Gao Lei went 10 meters through the air and landed on his back with his shield arm out of its socket. That was a pebble. That was a man kicking a pebble. He kun. 32. 150 Acupoints, 560 caddies, 25 million wen of Heiliang's money, and a month of his life spent following a mercenary contract into the wilderness and losing it and finding it again. I told the team to drive. Then he pointed at the roof of the truck and said the fox stays. Captain, I said, unload it for him. They unloaded a 45 million yuan corpse into the road and drove away, and Tang Jing was still yelling at me out of the window when they went round the bend. That was not a loss. That was storage. It started raining. Not dramatically, just the ordinary gray rain of a country road. He opened with the hammer at 800 jin, which would have taken the top off a car. I met it with the saber at 1020. He went backwards off his own strike. The hammer stayed roughly where it had been, and his hand split open along the web of the thumb, and I watched a professional killer's entire model of the afternoon fall apart behind his eyes. Then I put the saber through his chest. "Who sent you?" I said. "I'm a killer with professional ethics," he said, with real dignity, on his knees in the rain. "Do you think I can't find out if you don't speak?" He did think that. He was wrong about it in a way that nobody in the world had been wrong about yet. He was worth an entire Acupoint on his own, my 191st Yas, which tells you exactly what the exchange rate between people and animals is, and I have never enjoyed knowing that. His memories gave me a bank card, 4.2 million yuan, and a name, He Liang, which is to say He Pong. I stood in the road in the rain with a dead assassin at my feet and made a decision with a date attached to it, and I said it out loud, which I almost never do. The day before the college entrance examination, I'm going to kill them. The reunion at the mercenary hall involved a great deal of shouting and one bear hug that I think cracked something. Final accounting, 20 million for the contract, 45 for the fox, 36.21 for the materials, 101,210,000 when. I took 21.5 after paying the team back for the potions. They took 26.5 each and tried to argue with me about it, and lost. With the assassin's card, I walked out of that building with 25,800,000 yuan to my name, which was more money than everyone in my building had ever collectively seen. And then I went up to the potion hall on the 4th floor to spend it, and that is where I found the thing that has been steering my entire life ever since. It was behind glass, on the top shelf, in a bottle the size of my thumb, and it looked like nothing at all. Life Rejuvenation Potion. Regenerates severed and necrotic limbs. Restores destroyed nerve function. 10 billion yuan. I stood in front of that glass for a long time. If Ayue drank that, she would stand up. Not therapy, not maybe. She would stand up and walk out of the building and go wherever she wanted for the rest of her life. 10 billion. I had 25.8 million, which sounds close to a big number if you don't look at it, and is in fact 1/400th of the price. I could not steal it because the room it sat in had 2 Transcendents in it and the glass was better armored than my chest. I could not earn it, at 95 million per 3 weeks of nearly dying, in under 7 years. So the arithmetic of my life finalized itself right there, in a shop, in front of a display case. 10 billion for my sister's legs, 50 billion for the system's second function, 60 billion, total, and I was 18 years old with a fruit stall in the family. I bought 3 bottles of Mortal Transformation Gene Potion at 8 million each, which took me from 25.8 million down to 1.8, and I went home. My father hugged me in the doorway and didn't let go for a while. He hadn't slept properly in 27 days. He'd told Ayue I was at a study camp, and she had believed him for 4 days. Her room had new drawings on the wall. All of them. Every single one was me. Me with the saber. Me on a wolf. Me from behind, small, in front of something enormous with its mouth open. She hadn't seen any of it. She had built all of it out of a phone call a week and the shape of my shoulders when I came home. "I only draw my brother," she said. "I don't draw other people." And then I saw the one at the end of the row, and it was not me. It was Xu Chang, photorealistic, down to the collar of his shirt. She'd worked on it for days, you could see it, and then she had taken a pencil and driven it through the paper twice, once through the forehead, once through the heart. "I hope he dies," she said, in a voice I had never heard out of her. "I hope he dies in agony." Her face did something while she said it, and for about 1 second I was standing in my own house looking at a person I didn't recognize. "I'm going to make him grovel for his own teeth one day," I said. That's the closest I've ever come to lying to her, because at the time I had no idea how. At dinner, I told them the whole thing, all of it. The wolves, the fox, the mad tiger group, the assassin in the rain. My father listened without interrupting until I got to the words spiritual chi infusion, and then he put his chopsticks down and his eyes went red and he had to go and stand at the window for a minute. I thought it was pride. It was, partly. The other part I would not understand for another 4 months, and it was this. Somewhere in the country, there was a woman who had never once come to see us, and who would be watching the national practical test, and who was going to see her son's name. I told them where I was applying. Heavenly Saint Academy, Marshall Dow Holy Land. Roughly 1,000 students admitted nationwide per year, about 10 of them out of a city like ours. Nobody at that table laughed, which I think is the single greatest thing my family has ever done for me. 2 days before the exam, I fused all 3 mortal transformation potions into one. Ding. Super Spiritual Gene Potion. Absorption increased 2,000%. 2,600 with the devouring art. 2 days later, I was at 215 acupoints and 700 caddies, and I stood up off the floor of a room with no window and told my father I was going for a walk to clear my head before the exam. He said, "Good idea, get some air." I was going to kill a boy from my class. I want to lay out the reasoning because it was not rage. Rage would have been simpler, and I'd have done it a month earlier. Tomorrow morning, at the examination district, He Peng was going to see me walk in alive, and he was going to understand in about a second and a half that his 25 million yuan assassin was dead, and that the only person who could have done that was me. And then he was going to phone the one relative he had who could squash a city, Xu Chang. Which meant that everything after tonight was a race between how fast I could grow and how fast the Hua family could be told about me. And the fastest thing available to me, right then, was a bus. Jingjiang Huating is gated, facial recognition, cameras on the approach. There is a 2-meter section of the wall behind the north hedge with no coverage at all, because there's a maintenance shed in the way. I went over it, and then I walked through a luxury estate at 10 in the evening at a completely normal pace, and nodded at a man walking a dog, and he nodded back because I was wearing school clothes, and nobody has ever suspected school clothes of anything. Villa 8's front door wasn't locked. Upstairs, in a bedroom the size of my family's apartment, He Peng was sitting at a desk in headphones, humming, working a math paper. I tapped him on the shoulder. "Dad, wait a minute," he said, without turning around. "I'm solving a century-old math problem." I tapped again. "Dad, what do you want?" He turned around. The scream got about half a second of runway before I put a hand over most of his face and sat him back down in his own chair. He thought I was a ghost. He said it twice. He genuinely believed for several seconds that he was being visited by a dead classmate. "You're the ghost," I said. "You're the one who paid for it." Then came the offers. Tens of millions, then 100 million. Then when that didn't move, the name, you know who my cousin is. Xu Chang, Heavenly Saint Academy, Pifu Realm. Do you understand what he'll... I lifted him off the floor by the throat with one hand, which ended the sentence and most of his negotiating position. "I want your father here," I said. "Call him. Only him, and don't say anything else." He called him. He was very good about it, honestly. Terror makes people extremely obedient. His mother was in Nancheng that week, which I found out from the call. 3 missing 1, I said, and I meant it as arithmetic, and I heard how it sounded afterwards. He Liang came up the stairs and got one look through the doorway and turned to run, and I threw a fountain pen off the desk into the back of his calf and dragged him in by the ankle. We had a business conversation on the floor of that bedroom. 25 million was the price you set on my life, I said. That's the market rate. There are 2 of you. 50 million left that family's accounts in 11 minutes. Both of them cooperated beautifully. Rich people are very fast with the phone. Can we consider the matter settled, He Liang said, when the second transfer cleared. Of course not, I said. I have never regretted it, and I have never enjoyed remembering it. He Peng gave up almost nothing to the devouring. 19 years of a life spent indoors is not nourishing, but his memories gave me the wall safe behind the bookcase, 4 bottles of Mortal Transformation Gene Potion, 32 million, and a card with 2 more on it. They also gave me a receipt of sorts, a list of names in the family's payments ledger. One of them was Qin Fen. 53.8 million yuan in cash, 86.8 in real assets, and a homeroom teacher who had been on the payroll of the boy trying to kill me. I went home and slept for 6 hours and got up and went to sit my exam. At around the same hour, Xu Mei got back from Nancheng and was annoyed to find the house quiet because it was exam morning and the 2 of them were apparently sleeping in. She went upstairs to say something about it. By 9, the whole estate was taped off and there were law enforcement vehicles on both approach roads, and a very rich neighborhood was discovering that its gate did not actually do anything. I carried my sister down 6 flights of stairs, wheelchair first, then her, the way I had 1,100 times. And out on the street she did something she had not done in 3 years. Somebody looked at her, and instead of turning her face away, she smiled at them. I asked her about it years later, and she said she couldn't remember deciding to. She said she just knew there was a Transcendent walking behind her. Qin Fen was at the classroom door, and she saw me, and her whole face lit up like a slot machine. "I thought you'd be too frightened to come," she said. "Aren't you worried your results are going to disappoint your family?" "Old hag," I said, which got a noise out of 40 people. "Last year," I said, "on Teacher's Day, He Peng's family gave you a check for 1 million yuan and a lady's watch." The corridor went absolutely silent. "Oh," I said. "Yes, it's the one you're wearing right now." She said I was slandering her. She said it about 4 times at increasing volume, and one hand went to her wrist while she said it, which is a thing people do without knowing they're doing it, and 40 teenagers watched her do it. I hadn't been guessing. I'd been in He Peng's head about 9 hours earlier, and the payments ledger had been extremely thorough. Then the bell went, and He Peng didn't come in. She called his father to complain about it because she was still trying to win the morning. His mother answered. You could hear it from 4 rows back. Xu Mei, screaming down a phone line into a silent classroom that Peng and his dad had been killed last night. Manhwa turned all the way around in her seat and looked directly at me. I looked back with the face of a boy hearing news, and she looked at me a second too long and then turned around again and never once asked me about it. Not then, not ever. Out on the spectator platform, my father was thinking about the very faint smell of blood he'd noticed on his son's collar the previous night, and had decided, apparently permanently, to go on thinking about the weather instead. Qin Fen came and found him there before the test started because she wanted to enjoy it live. You're a truly incompetent father, she said, encouraging that boy. A rat's son is only fit for digging holes. Are you done? My father said. You're blocking my view. The strength test is very simple and very public. You walk up to a machine and you punch it twice. No techniques, no run-up, no winding, and a supervisor watching for exactly that. Anything over 500 jin, and they also scan your acupoints, because at that point, they want to know what they're looking at. The anti-cheat supervisor that day was Grandmaster's son. Ordinary students went in at 90 to 200 jin. Wang Cheng went in at 546 with 142 acupoints, and his family had spent over 100 million yuan across 4 years to buy that number, and it was a very good number. Manhwa went in at 543 and 140. Then me. I hit it once. The machine physically moved. The frame is bolted to the floor and it moved, and the readout came up, and the examiner read it into a live microphone before his brain caught up with his mouth. 700 jin. There had not been a 700 at Linqing No. 1 High School in 20 years. Wang Chang said out loud into the silence, "Is he cheating?" The examiner didn't answer him. He turned around and looked straight up at the supervision box, at a Grandmaster, and the entire gymnasium turned around with him. Grandmaster's son leaned into his own microphone. "No problem," he said, "completely normal. Second punch, 700 again, not 698, not 702. The same number twice, which the technician told me afterwards is the part that actually frightened him. Then the Acupoint scan. 215. The Qi sensing standard is 120. I was sitting at nearly double at 18 out of a fruit stall. On the platform, my father started laughing and crying at the same time, which is a horrible thing to watch a parent do, and he grabbed the railing with both hands and shouted at nobody in particular. "Linger, did you see that? Our child has made something of himself." I heard it. I heard the name. My sister is Ah Yue. He was not talking to my sister. I filed it, the way you file something you cannot deal with in the middle of a gymnasium. And I have thought about that one syllable more times than I can count. Ah Yue herself had not registered any of it. There was one number in her eyes and it was 700. "Brother," she said, when I got to her, "so amazing." I went down on one knee in front of her chair in the middle of the floor, in front of the entire district, and I said the thing I had been carrying for 3 years. "I promise you, one day your brother is going to make you stand up." She started to say something about being fine. 10 billion yuan a bottle, I said. "Don't worry about it. Your brother's going to save up." And here came Qin Fen, arms out, at speed. "Teacher knew a long time ago," she was saying. "All of that before, those were teaching methods, a form of provocation, to motivate you." She was, at that moment, calculating her performance bonus. I know because I could see her doing it. 500,000, a million, a top 3 practical result belongs to the homeroom teacher on paper. Grandmaster's son handed me the top 3 prize himself. 2 bottles of gene potion, and 1 sentence quietly while the cameras were on the trophy. "Cultivate diligently, guard your inner self, and don't forget the hardships you once endured." Then 20-something armed law enforcement officers came up onto the awards platform. The lead one started reading the warrant. I pushed the paper aside with 2 fingers before he got to the second clause. "You mean I killed He Peng and his father," I said, "right?" Which, in hindsight, was not a helpful thing to say into a live microphone. They cuffed me on the award stage with the medal still in my hand, so I used the microphone, since it was there. "I'm a Transcendent," I said, to a gymnasium of 2,000 people. 2 weeks ago, He Peng and his father paid 25 million yuan for a Qi sensing realm assassin to kill me in the wilderness. That's a fact you can check. He found me. He tried. He failed. Nobody's asked me a single question about that. Not one officer has asked me why. They came here with the answer already written down. So which part is the crime? Being ambushed or surviving it? The gym split down the middle and started arguing with itself. 2,000 people. And over all of it, one very small furious voice from a wheelchair by the barrier. "My big brother isn't a bad person. Other people are." My father was already on the phone to Chen Hao before they got me off the platform. They gave me 2 rookie interrogators first, which told me everything. "Confess," one of them said, leaning in, doing the voice. "Cooperate now, and it's a few years. Fight it, and it's your whole life." "Are you sent by the Hua family?" I said. He went the color of paper. "Because I only left one of them alive," I said. "Shu Mei. And I've been sitting here 40 minutes, and neither of you has asked me a single question about the assassin. You're not investigating. You're shopping." They took a break after that. The man who came in next was about 50 and had been doing the job for 20 years and had the specific tiredness of somebody who has been overruled a great deal. He took my statement properly. Dates, sums, the account the 25 million moved through, the road, the rain, the hammer. He told me afterwards in the corridor that he believed me for a stupid reason. A liar would have given him less. They put me in the Transcendent detention wing, 50 square meters, 2 iron beds, 1 camera in the southeast corner, and a door I could not have opened with a truck. He asked me, on the way in, why I hadn't just reported it. Why not go to the law enforcement office in the first place? Because when something bigger than you leans on the people holding the power, I said, the people holding the power always start reaching for small tricks. Always. You've watched it happen. You've probably signed some of it. He didn't answer that one. He wrote in his notebook that evening that he had just interviewed a 17-year-old with a demonic intellect, which I think was meant kindly. That night, 400 kilometers south, in a frontier city called Deep City, Shu Chang took a phone call from his aunt. He let her cry for a while. Then he hung up and said to an empty room that his cousin had been an idiot, hiring assassins to kill a Transcendent. Was his brain filled with shit? He was, in fairness, correct. Then he pulled my examination data, because the Hua family can, and he looked at 700 Jin and 215 Acupoints, and he sat down. A month earlier, he had personally stood in the Ye family's living room and offered that boy a job as a driver. A month earlier, that boy had 100% not been a Transcendent. He was sure of it. He had checked, the way you check the weather. And then he arrived at the actual reason, which had nothing to do with his cousin at all. 700 Jin gets you into Heavenly Saint Academy. Heavenly Saint Academy is where Chen Ruoxi is, every day, for years. The best thing, he said out loud, is to nip it in the bud. His instruction was precise, and I have to admit it was well thought out. Not a hit team, not a Grandmaster. One chi-sensing realm killer, strength capped deliberately low, placed inside the law enforcement office itself, because anything stronger than that gets noticed by Commander Gu, and being noticed by Commander Gu is not a survivable condition. I spent that first night in the cell with my back to the camera, fusing 4 bottles of Mortal Transformation Gene Potion into one. Ding, Holy Super Spiritual Gene Potion. Absorption increased 3,000%. 1 extra bottle in the mix and the yield nearly doubled. I have never gotten over that. Somewhere out there is a version of the world where I had 5 bottles. 2 days later, I was at 260 Acupoints and 790 caddies in a locked room on the government's food, which is roughly when they put a roommate in with me. There were a dozen empty cells on that corridor. I had counted them on the way in, because counting things is free. They put him in mine. Sunbo, 35, 1 meter 90, and the single gentlest face I have ever seen on a human being. He had the eyes of a man who volunteers at animal shelters. Brother, he said, sitting down on the other bed. What are you in for? Murder, I said. Ah, he said, delighted. Me too, sort of. I robbed a few wealthy individuals. Killing and arson brings wealth, wouldn't you agree, brother? We're not familiar, I said. I don't want to get too close. He laughed at that like it was the best thing he'd heard all week. And then every camera in the Transcendent wing went dark at the same time, and the outer door of the corridor locked from the far side. Sunbo sighed. He genuinely sighed, like a man whose bus is late. It's nothing, he said. It's just that somebody's about to die. The dagger came out of his sleeve at 1,030 Jin. I leaned back 45 degrees and it went past my throat close enough to sting and buried itself in the wall behind me. The second one came out of his trouser leg while I was still leaning, which is genuinely good work, and I did not straighten up to deal with it. I stayed at 45 degrees and hit his forearm with 1,185 Jin. He made a sound, not of pain, of confusion. Because Sunbo was 750 caddies base, 2 marrow cleansings, 60,000 circulations, a half step from the second realm, a properly built, professionally made killer, and the number that had just come off my fist was 60% above anything he had ever seen, a chi-sensing realm human produce. To make the point, I put my other fist into the stone wall of the cell. I have never done that again. It left a crater and split 3 of my own knuckles, and it hurt in a way that made my eyes water, and I stood there with a straight face and bleeding hands like an absolute idiot. It worked though. I broke his wrist, then his ribs. Then when he tried to shout for the guard who was supposed to be listening, I put about 1,200 Jin into his throat and he stopped. The devouring gave me 8 whole Acupoints in one go, 268, 806 caddies, and it gave me a name, Shu Yuan of the Lincheng branch of the Hua family, plus an inside man in the law enforcement office, plus the plan, which was to log my death as a fight between 2 detainees. Now, here's the part I'm actually proud of, and it did not involve hitting anybody. There were 2 daggers on the floor of a Transcendent detention cell. Transcendent detainees do not have daggers. Transcendent detainees get searched by people whose entire job is finding daggers. Those 2 pieces of metal, lying on that concrete with his fingerprints all over them, were not a murder weapon anymore. They were a receipt with a name on it, which meant the only thing that mattered in the next 4 minutes was making sure nobody got to pick them up quietly. So I went to the iron door and started screaming, I want to complain. I want to report a crime. I want to make an accusation. For 10 minutes, at the top of my lungs, in the voice of a wrong teenager, which took no acting at all, because I was a wrong teenager. Sure enough, one guard came at a dead run, alone, sweating, with a sharpened toothbrush in his hand, because the story had already been written and it needed the right prop in it. I let him get the door open, and then I kicked him back out through it and stood in the doorway with my arms braced on the frame. No, I said. Stay there. He told me to move. I just want more people to come and watch you inspect the scene, I said. That's all. I want witnesses while you go in. Isn't that a reasonable request? And I went back to howling. They came. Of course they came. Nothing on this earth travels faster than the sound of one prisoner making a scene, and within 20 minutes there were more than 30 officers in that corridor, half of them there out of pure curiosity. Then I stepped aside and let them in. He Chong ran the scene. 20 years, no patience, and a very good memory. Prints on both daggers. Metal detector logs from the intake gate that had somehow been signed off on. Camera control room access records. 5 moles inside the lynching law enforcement office, including a section director. They put 2 body-tempering realm officers on my cell around the clock after that, not to guard me, to guard themselves from what a 4th incident would do to their careers. And then the director came down to inspect the corridor personally. Song Jen, 50s, uniform pressed, jaw like a filing cabinet. I stood up when he came in, and my hands went closed all on their own, because I knew that face. 3 years earlier, my sister had been 12 years old, and there had been 3 boys, and one of them was named Song Yang, and this man was his father. He was the reason there was no case. He was the reason a report went into a drawer. He was the man who had a conversation with my father in a stairwell that my father has never described to me. He is why Chen Hao, a district official with a clean record, made 4 phone calls in a week and then came to our apartment and sat down and couldn't look at us. And in return for burying a crippled 12-year-old, Song Jen had become a client of the Lin Hua family, which is how a man like that gets to be a director. He recognized me too. I watched it land. I opened my hands and put them at my sides. Not now. My sister's revenge was going to have to be later. He raised his voice for the corridor. Daggers in a detention cell. This is rebellion. I want a full internal review. By 11 that night, he was on the phone to Xu Yuan, working out which of the 5 moles to feed to the paperwork. In Deep City, Xu Chang revised the plan. Killing me was off. 2 failures had made me visible, and visible things attract Commander Gu. Get him 5 to 10 years, he told his aunt. Not for the punishment. Think about what it is. 5 to 10 years is the entire window where a Transcendent's body still absorbs. He loses the golden years, and he never enters a martial arts academy. That is considerably more unbearable than killing him. I want to be at the trial, Shumei said. I want to see that little beast's face when they read it out. He hung up and went back to his actual job, which was the reason he was in Deep City in the first place. Heavenly Saint Academy had sent him to look into the Dark Knight cult, who were preparing something on the frontier in 2 or 3 months' time. He was not being paranoid about that. If anything, he was being relaxed about it. They held the trial in public, 200 seats and every one of them full. Director Song Jen presiding, Deputy Director Duan Quan beside him, and the audience's opinion counted toward the verdict, which is a Hongxia thing, and which Chen Hao had prepared for by filling 40 of those seats with people from the district office. Xu Mei stood up before it started and screamed that she hoped I died horribly. Your husband and your son brought it on themselves, I said. Both facts went onto the record inside the first hour, and neither was disputed by anyone. I killed them. They had hired an assassin to kill me first. Public speakers ran 6-4 in my favor. Then my father stood up. He is not a public speaker. He sells fruit. He said one thing, and then he sat back down. If Lin Kai had not managed to break through out in the wilderness, then the person who died would have been my child. And I want to ask this room a question. Would we be here? Would there be a trial? Or would my son simply have been recorded as having died to a vicious beast? Nobody answered him. Song Jen cleared his throat and said, I believe Lin Kai is guilty. His reasoning, delivered slowly, was that I had shown a disregard for the city's laws, that my methods were brutal, and that a transcendent has a duty to set an example. 3 years. I laughed out loud in the courtroom. Director Gong, I said. When he Peng decided he had a problem with me, why wasn't he pure and good enough to come and talk about it? When vicious beasts come over the wall, why aren't they pure and good enough to talk to us first? My sister was bullied by 3 classmates 3 years ago, 3 of them. She's 15, and she hasn't stood up since. Why weren't those 3 pure and good enough to let her off? And yesterday, in your building, in your custody, somebody walked a transcendent assassin through your front gate with 2 daggers on him to kill me in a locked cell. Why wasn't he pure and good to me? You want me to set an example, I said. Fine. Here's the example I'm setting. If a transcendent gets ambushed and hits back and you put him in a cell for it, then what exactly are you asking us to defend Hongxia with? Our mouths? I'll take this to the Transcendent Alliance, I said. Every word of it. His hands weren't steady. I watched them. He raised it to 5 years. To wear away that vicious heart of yours, he said. One day, I said, I'm going to kill you, old dog. The bailiffs started moving and I kept talking. Also, I said, I'm very curious how much the Hua family paid you. And then the strangest thing in that whole month happened, which is that Deputy Director Duan Quan, sitting one seat down, said into his own microphone in open court that he rather admired me. That this was the spirit the new generation of Transcendent in Hangxia ought to have. The two of them argued for 10 minutes in front of 200 people. Recess. What I did not know is that the trial was being watched live, 3,000 kilometers away, by 2 men. Song Zhen, said Commander Gu Dingchao, watching a screen. That fool has become a dog of the Hua family down to the tail. For a prodigy like that boy, every extra day he spends in a cell is a sin. Grandmaster's son offered to go and arrest the director personally. No, said Commander Gu. Leave Song Zhen to Lin Kai. Let the boy kill him himself. The growth of a devouring physique requires nourishment, and a corrupt transcendent is excellent sustenance. Then he dictated the sentence, and it was not mercy, and he said so. Acquitted of the killings, and penalized, because the killings were sloppy. 3 months on the deep city front line, and he does not come home for the national practical test until he has earned 100,000 merit points. Commander, said Grandmaster's son carefully, the front line. If he was going to kill that father and son, said Commander Gu, he should have done it meticulously and cleanly. He left a witness, he left a timeline, and he left a bank transfer. If it can't be done cleanly, then it shouldn't be done at all. He can learn that in a place where the lesson has a price. And Grandmaster's son finally understood what he was watching, which was not a powerful man being impressed by a talented boy. It was Commander Gu Dingchao cultivating someone, deliberately, step by step. He had never done that for anyone, not once, not even for Xu Chang. The order came in during the recess, and Song Zhen had to read it out loud himself, which I would have paid money for. The gallery could not work out whether I had just been saved or executed. Half of them applauded. The other half went very quiet, because everyone in Hangxia knows what the Deep City frontline is, and what it does to Transcendence, and how many of the ones who go there in a group of 10 come back. My father went gray. Chen Hao had to hold his arm. And I stood in the middle of a courtroom and smiled, and I could not have explained why to a single person in that room. Because to a man with the myriad things devouring art, the frontier is not a punishment, it's a buffet. Chen Hao bought everyone lunch. It was a strange lunch. My father drank 2 beers, which I had never seen, and at the end of it he put his hand on the back of my neck the way he used to when I was small. If you have that kind of talent, he said, and that kind of ambition, then I want you to fly as high as an eagle. Go on, child. I had 6 days before the transport, and the Hua family used 4 of them. Xu Chang's last favor to his aunt was elegant, and I say that with genuine professional respect. He didn't send killers after me. He replaced the escort detail. 2 Transcendents, 26 years old, 850 caddies, 80,000 circulations, both a hair short of the second realm, both graduates of academies the Hua family had paid for. Loyal in the way people are loyal when they owe you their entire lives. The report was written before they left. Lin Kai attempted to escape during transit and was killed while resisting. Signed, witnessed, filed. There won't be anybody to contradict it, his aunt said, delighted. There won't, he agreed. She wanted him to send actual body-tempering realm men to be safe. To kill a transcendent who has just entered the chi sensing realm, he said, do we really need 2 body-tempering realm? Do you understand what a body-tempering escort on a student transport looks like from the outside? It looks like something. Things that look like something get read by the Transcendent Alliance. Then he added, and I like this part, that it was the last time he would act for her. I went back to school for my admission ticket. Acquitted, I told the class when they asked, with some irregularities. What irregularities? A penalty. 3 months guarding the deep city front line. The room made a sound I have never heard a room make before or since. Somewhere behind me a pencil case fell off a desk. That's not a punishment, Manhwa said slowly. That sounds more like being banished. Wang Cheng didn't say anything out loud. He did the arithmetic in his face though, and I could read it from 4 meters. When you die, first place in the strength test comes to me. And then the strangest social thing happened, which is that they stopped looking at me. Not out of cruelty, out of tidiness. 40 teenagers quietly filed me under resolved. He shone on the 7th of June, and then he went out, like a comet, and there was no point getting attached. At the crossroads, Manhwa tried to say something and got as far as opening her mouth and then went red from her jaw to her collarbone. Why is your face red? I said, which I would like the record to show was a genuine question. Be careful, she said. She watched me walk away until I was out of sight. She told me later that she did it twice because she went to the corner and looked again. I sat the cultural exam over 2 days, which in our country means literature, mathematics, and a subject that used to be English and is now called The Great Illustrated Guide to Vicious Beasts. I came out estimating 250 out of 300, which for someone who had spent the previous month killing wolves was, I felt, respectable. Then I spent 50 million yuan in one transaction on 2 bottles of king-grade gene potion, which took me down to 3.8 million, and I fused all 4 bottles I had. Ding, Saint King gene potion. It came out of the fusion throwing red and blue flame off the surface of the liquid, and it tasted like strong liquor, and it hit at 4,500% absorption. 3 days later, I was at 328 acupoints and 926 caddies. The absolute ceiling of the chi sensing realm is 362. The weakest transcendent in the second realm runs about 1,000. I was 99% of the way through a realm that most people never finish at all, and my automatic energy circulation had gone from 20 cycles a day to 30, which meant I was now getting stronger while asleep. My last free day, I spent working the fruit shop. 4 in the morning at the wholesale market, hauling crates, arguing about melons, then unloading, then pulling the rotten fruit off the front of the display, which is a job my father has done every morning of my entire life and which I had somehow never once helped with. I could have carried the whole van. I carried crates like a person. He watched me from the register, and I found out much later what he was thinking, because he told me, once, when he'd had a drink, he was wishing I'd stayed ordinary. Departure morning, my black gold armor was standing in the middle of our 50 square meter living room like a piece of furniture from a different house. Brother, Ah Yue said, you look so handsome today. And my father came out of the kitchen with a bowl, longevity noodles, 1 long noodle, unbroken, and 2 eggs on top, and he put it down in front of me and did not make a speech, because we are not that kind of family. Go safely, he said. Come back safely. Nobody talked much after that. Across the city, Songjian stood at his office window and watched the escort SUV pull out with a small satisfied smile, because he had personally signed the 2 Hua family men onto that detail. Downstairs, half the building came out to watch me go. One of the escorts put a hand on my shoulder and shoved me into the car for the neighbor's benefit. And my sister, in the wheelchair, could not see over the windowsill. So she put both hands on the frame and hauled herself up out of the chair on the strength of her arms alone and held herself there and watched the car until it turned the corner. Then she went back inside, to the wall. She sat in front of the drawings for a long time. In front of the one at the end. Xu Chang's face with 2 holes in it, and something in her head, which had been under load for 3 years, finally went. My father was in the kitchen. He said the pressure hit the doorway first, like a wave coming out of her room. Every object on every surface started to shake at once. The brushes rattled in the jar, and then one paintbrush lifted itself out of the jar, turned in the air, aimed, and fired across the room through the throat of that portrait and shattered against the wall behind it. She was unconscious before she hit the floor. He carried her down 6 flights and drove to the hospital. I didn't hear about any of it for weeks because I was 5 days south, boxed in the middle of the back seat of an SUV with a killer on either side of me and the front passenger seat left deliberately empty. Driver, Liu Shuhua, not a transcendent. Escorts, Dai Mingli in green armor, Wu Lingjiang in black. They were good company actually. That's the strange part. We killed beasts together for 3 days on the road, and it was almost pleasant, and every single fight was me measuring them. Both a step from body tempering. Both significantly better than the man they'd sent to my cell. On the 4th evening, the sky went black in the west, and the storm came across the plain at us, and the rain got heavy enough that the wipers stopped meaning anything. Liu Shuhua pulled over and cut the headlights. Then nobody said anything, and the rain came down on the roof. He looked at me in the mirror, and there was a light in his eyes, because this was a very good opportunity. They went at the same instant, left and right, in the dark, in a sealed car, both blades coming inward, at a boy sitting between them. It's a good plan. There is no answer to it. I answered it. I took Wu Lingjiang's knife on the saber, on my right without turning my head, and in the same motion, off the same twist of the hips, I put 1,390 caddies into Dai Mingli on my left. His arm came out of the shoulder socket, then he went through the car door, not open, through it, and out into the mud. I followed him out. 1,436 caddies, overhand, in the rain, and he got his saber up in time, and it did not help. 1,580 on the way down from the jump. His own blade went into his ribs. Wu Lingjiang came in from the side and we crossed each other in a lightning flash, his 1192 against my 1527, and he kept running 4 more steps after his chest opened. They had been promised 100 million yuan each. His last coherent thought, and I know this because I took it out of him a minute later, was that they had been sent to kill a sheep, and they had gotten out of the car with a tiger. Dai Mingli was crawling, so I threw the saber. Then Liu Shuhua tried to drive away, which was optimistic because the road was broken and the SUV had a hole in one door, and I can run. I caught the car. I threw the saber through the driver's window. Then I put a hand under the frame and flipped it back onto its wheels, one-handed, because I needed it to still work. 3 of them, in the rain, on a road nobody uses. 18 Acupoints, 346, 962 caddies, and 2.12 million, 10.23 million, and 11.61 million yuan from 3 men who had all told me at dinner 2 nights earlier that government pay was terrible. I stood in the rain for a minute with the headlights of a righted SUV on me and made a list out loud because there was nobody in 100 kilometers to hear it. Shumei, Songjin, in due time. And as for the Hua family, I said, this is sealed now. I could see Deep City from 5 kilometers out because the wall was on fire, not burning, firing. 50 meters of concrete with muzzle flash running along the top of it in a continuous line, and the noise arriving about 15 seconds after the light, and a smear of smoke going up into the sky over the whole eastern approach. I was still doing the arithmetic on that when 4 mutant spotted tigers came out of the roadside brush and flipped my car. I killed all 4. The last one I split in the air, head first, on the way past, and their memories gave me a piece of the world that had never once been explained to me in 12 years of school. The ocean makes them. That's the whole thing. That's the answer. The sea breeds vicious beasts continuously, without pause, without season, and pushes them onto the land the way a tide pushes driftwood, and it has been doing that for 40 years, and it will do it forever. Which is why coastal cities are not cities with a beast problem. They are cities that are permanently, structurally, at war, and everyone inland gets to have opinions about it. The car was finished, so I ran the last stretch. I got ambushed roughly every 300 to 500 meters, and the numbers climbed as I got closer, which told me everything about which direction the pressure was flowing. Groups of 3 to 8, then 6 to 16, then 20 and up. Twice I found something rare enough to be worth money, a 6-meter silver-eyed wolf and a blue-black crab the size of a car, and I put both corpses in my storage space while things were actively trying to eat me, because I am who I am. And then I came out of the tree line onto the open plain with 346 vicious beasts behind me. I want to be careful here, because this is the first time I saw the real thing. Deep City's outer plain is about 2 kilometers of open ground, and it was not ground, it was a floor of moving bodies. Thousands of them, going at the wall in a mass, crabs and giant red shrimp and armored turtles, and artillery carpeting the outer mile so consistently that the explosions overlapped into one long sound. And in front of the wall there was a line of men in battle armor with cold weapons in their hands holding. I watched a man in black armor go down about 200 meters to my left. He was there, and then there was a knot of movement, and then he wasn't, and what was left afterwards was fragments, and it took under 4 seconds. I had seen frontline footage on television my whole life. Everybody has. There are documentaries. The actual thing is more than 10 times worse, and the difference is not the violence, it's the arithmetic. On television, you watch one man fight one beast. In life, you watch the wall spend people in units at a rate, because the alternative is worse. I was 500 meters out with a horde behind me and the barrage in front of me, and I was going to have to run through my own side's artillery. Then the barrage in my sector stopped. Just my sector, just those few hundred meters, for about 4 seconds. There was a fire control dispatcher up on that wall who had spotted one armored figure sprinting the wrong way with 300 beasts on his heels and made a decision and cut his own guns. I did 500 meters in under 4 seconds. The barrage came back down behind me on everything I'd brought with me. Whoever you were, I have never found out your name, and I have thought about you a great deal. Inside the line, a woman in patroller armor grabbed my arm and shouted something I couldn't hear. Then I beheaded a black-armored mystic tortoise that was coming up behind her, 1 strike, and she stopped shouting. That takes me several exchanges, she said. He Huan, Crescent Squad. 25, 700 Jin, 1 marrow cleansing, 51,203 circulations, which she told me within 90 seconds of meeting me because everyone on that wall introduces themselves in statistics. She killed a crimson prawn while I watched. It took everything she had, and she was proud of it, and she should have been. In the same span, I killed 10. That battle cost Deep City more than 800 dead out of 10,000 defenders. It was, they told me afterwards, a fairly ordinary day. Afterwards, she explained the economy to me, sitting on a dead crab. Merit points. 10 for a low-level beast, 100 for an intermediate, 10,000 for a general rank, 100,000 for a king rank, 1,000,000 for an emperor rank. 1 merit point is worth about 3,000 yuan. The wall is covered in cameras, and there's a machine they call the Galaxy computer behind it that watches every kill and assigns it automatically to whoever made it. No paperwork, no arguments, it just knows. And after a battle, they pay 20 points to anybody willing to haul corpses onto the trucks, which is the worst job on the front and which I volunteered for immediately. Not for the 20 points, because there were 60 more beasts on that field with something still left in them, and nobody was watching me put my hand flat on a corpse before I threw it on a truck. 160 beasts that first day, 9 acupoints, 355, 980 caddies, So how long are you posted here? Huan asked, on the drive in. 3 months, I said, and 100,000 merit points. She nearly put us into a wall, and it was not entirely the sentence's fault because her driving was genuinely frightening. 100,000? In 3 months? Even a body-tempering realm transcendent can't do that. That's 10 months of work. That's not a punishment, that's… She stopped and restarted. Who did you make angry? Then we came through the inner gate and I saw Deep City itself, and I have never gotten over it. Clean streets, tropical trees and planters, shops open, people on the pavement carrying shopping bags, a man arguing about the price of a phone case. 800 people had died 4 kilometers away that afternoon, and nobody was running to a shelter because there are no shelters, because there has never been any point. One wall separates 2 worlds. The reason it's a rich city, incidentally, is the corpses. There are biotech firms in Deep City that exist entirely to process what the wall kills, and the wall kills a very great deal. The clerk who processed me was named Wu Yan. 450 Jin, 110 Acupoints, and she told me both numbers flatly because she already knew she would never break through, and she was going back to university in late September and had made her peace with it. She read my file with a completely professional face for about 11 seconds. Then she said, "This is arguably the most severe violation in the history of Hanxia." She set me up on the patrol app. Rank, Elementary Patroller. Merit points already banked from that afternoon, 567. Required for Intermediate, 100,000. And she explained the part I hadn't understood, which is that rank on that app is not about money at all. Rank is standing. A high enough patroller rank makes you, in her exact words, a king without a crown in any city in the country, forever. And sitting in that office with a phone in my hand, I finally understood what had actually been done to me in that courtroom. I hadn't been sentenced. I'd been enlisted. Somebody with a great deal of power had taken a schoolboy with a body count and stapled a military label onto him, and the Hua family were now going to have to think about that label every single time they thought about me. Then she asked where the 2 escorts and the driver were. I want you to picture my face while I answered because I have been told it was very good. There was a tiger bear beast, I said, 7 meters, on the 4th night, in the rain. The 4 of us fought it together. They died making the opening that let me kill it. All 3 of them, one after another, for me. I buried them myself. And then I didn't delay a single day on the road afterwards because I didn't think it would be respectful to be late after that. I looked at the floor. They'll live forever in my heart, I said. I'll never forget what they did for me. She filed it as an official notice to the Lincheng Law Enforcement Office, which is how, 4 days later, Director Song Zhen was informed that 3 of his men had died heroically in the wilderness and had to stand up in front of his own office and order compensation and posthumous honors for them. He went back to his window afterwards and stood there for a long time. His methods are ruthless enough, he said to nobody, not one survivor, and he didn't mention the assassination, not one word about it anywhere to anyone. That was the thing that frightened him, not the killing, the silence afterwards. The Hua family withdrew that same week. Xu Chang shut the whole thing down over his aunt screaming. 3 attempts, 3 total losses, and a boy who was now a decorated frontline patroller with a paper trail leading to Commander Gu's own office. He forbade the Lincheng branch from supporting Shumei any further, and he added a line that tells you everything about that family. If she keeps causing trouble, you can send people to deal with her. He left her exactly one thing. If I happen to run into him alone in the wilderness outside Deep City, he said, I'll do it myself. She threw her phone into a wall and screamed that they were all beasts, every one of them, which was the first accurate assessment I'd ever heard from her. And Song Zhen, now standing entirely alone with a boy's promise to kill him hanging over his head, made a decision. He went to the Lincheng black market himself, with his own money, to buy his own killer, and this time he wasn't going to specify any limits. Meanwhile, in an office in Deep City, a man named Zhou An was reading my file and deciding where to put me. Special Action Commander, Patroller Corps. He read 3 months and 100,000 merit points, and he laughed out loud, alone, in a room. A student fresh out of school, he thought. He'd be lucky to last a month, so he assigned me to the Hurricane Squad, which is where Deep City puts people it has stopped budgeting for. Disciplinary cases, troublemakers, men nobody else will take, 30 to 40% casualties. The only thing holding it together is that the captain hits harder than anyone in it. Then, alone, after signing the transfer, Zhou An said something to the empty office that I did not learn about until much later, and which I have never been able to forget. Lin Kai, oh Lin Kai, if you die early, don't blame me, and you won't be lonely. Before long, everyone in Deep City will be joining you. This fireworks display, paid for with lives, is going to be splendid. Training hall number 8 had about 20 men in it, and all of them stopped when I came through the door. The one who came over was built like a door himself. Duan Jun, 632 caddies, 1 marrow cleansing, and the captain's cousin, which in a squad like that is a job title. "Oh," he said, looking me up and down, "so it's another rotten person." Then he gave me the standard welcome, word for word, the way you'd recite a menu. Kneel down, kowtow 3 times, then say, loudly, so everyone can hear you, that you are a rotten person. Otherwise you walked in here standing up and you'll be carried out horizontally. There's normally a payment involved too. Newcomers hand over merit points to the brothers for protection. It's a whole system. He came at me at 903 caddies. I threw my saber to one side because I didn't want to explain a corpse on my first afternoon, and I kicked him. He went 20 meters and rolled about 10 more. The hall was very quiet. "Is that all?" I said. Nobody in that hall answered me, so I went back to my quarters and spent 26 million yuan. 2 bottles of Spirit Ascension Gene Potion, which left me 1.76 million to my name, and I fused them. Ding, Dragon Spirit Gene Potion. It tasted like cola, 26 million yuan, and it tasted like cola. Then I fused the 2 rare corpses I'd stolen off the road on the way in, the silver-eyed wolf and the blue-black crab, and got something I had not seen before. Ding, Spirit Jade Medicinal Pill. A pill doesn't ask your body to absorb anything. It just opens and floods you, about 10 times faster than a potion can. That one gave me 6 acupoints. 361, and half of the 362nd. Then I drank the cola, and the last acupoint in my body opened. I want to try to describe what happened next because I've never met anyone else who's felt it. There was a sound inside me, a specific physical continuous sound, like a stream running over stones, starting somewhere behind my sternum and going out to my fingertips. My meridians had been widened by 362 open channels of pure energy until Qi didn't move through them anymore. It flowed. My automatic circulation went from 20 a day to 100. Do the math on that with me. A normal Transcendent needs 10 to 15 years to grind out the body-tempering realm. At 100 circulations a day, I was going to get there in about 3 years while lying down doing nothing, and my strength went from 980 to 1050 caddies on 7 acupoints. The weakest human being in the second realm runs 1000. Ding, Qi sensing realm limit. I looked that up afterwards. Every reference I could find, every training manual, every academy syllabus in the country. The Qi sensing realm has 120 acupoints and a ceiling around 500 caddies, and that is the end of the entry. There is no textbook in Hangxia that mentions a limit realm at all. We got 3 quiet days after that, which never happens, and I spent all of them sitting still. Active circulation up to 142 an hour. At that rate, the 100,000 circulations that buy you the second realm were 30 days away. Banked so far, 13,219. The first marrow cleansing wants 25,000, then 35, then 40. Strength 1103 caddies, then the captain came to see me. Duanchen, 30 years old, a saber scar across the face, red alloy armor, genuine body tempering realm, 1050 caddies, and a squad he held together with nothing but the demonstrated willingness to hurt everyone in it. "Before you report for duty," he said, "you're going to kneel and kowtow to my cousin." 3 times, I said. 9, he said. I tried the reasonable version first. I want the record to show that. I came here to be a member of the Hurricane Squad, I said, to fight vicious beasts alongside everybody else. I didn't come here to be your private servant. You, he said, are a good-for-nothing who was punished and shipped here, so we did it the other way. Our first exchange was fists, straight on, and I hit 1543 and he hit 1764, and he still went backwards, but he took it, and my hand hurt afterwards, which taught me something important about the second realm. Their flesh is fed, mine was just strong. He read me almost immediately, which I respected. He knew I wasn't body tempering, he could feel it, and he could not construct a sentence that explained where the strength was coming from. Then he did something clever. I brought a knee up, and instead of blocking it, he used a very small amount of force at exactly the right angle and turned my own knee off its line and came in under it with a palm blade at my throat. I answered with 2 fingers, about 1500 caddies into the underside of his shoulder blade. It dented the alloy plate and the strike died in his arm. After that, it was arithmetic, an 1820 sweep. Then 40 punches in 20 seconds, 1654 each, which is the part the squad talked about for weeks, because a body-tempering realm captain spent 20 seconds unable to do anything at all except be hit. Then I jumped and put 1875 through his chest plate and he went 50 meters into a wall. Duanjun charged in from the side. I kicked him away without looking at him. "Do you still think I'm a good-for-nothing?" I said. "How could that be?" said Duanchen from the wall. "If you're a good-for-nothing, what does that make the rest of this team?" "If you'd said that at the start," I said, "there wouldn't have been any trouble at all. You're not very bright, Captain, and that idiot cousin of yours isn't either." Which was satisfying, and which was also the single most expensive sentence I said that year, though it took me weeks to find out why, because Duan Chen did not retaliate. He stopped his men from retaliating, and that night he sat in his room and explained to the 3 people he trusted what he had actually just fought. Years ago, he said, I saw something in a classified patrol system record. All 362 acupoints filled, strength over 1,000 while still in the first realm. And in combat, the meridians make a sound like running water. They call it the Qi Sensing Realm Limit. None of them had heard of it. Nobody has heard of it. So we don't fight him, Duan Chen said. We isolate him on the battlefield, and we let the beast do it. Then he waited for them to go and turned the lights off and took a second phone out of a compartment behind a panel in the wall. I've found a limit realm transcendent, he said. He's been posted to my squad. The voice on the other end went quiet for a long time. A deacon of the Dark Knight cult does not go quiet easily. There has been exactly one other, the deacon said finally, in 40 years, since the resurgence, and you know his name. Commander Gu Ding Chao, the man who held the whole country together with his own hands when the beasts first came, the single greatest enemy the cult has, the one man their own cult master is at a disadvantage against. New orders, the deacon said. Recruit him. Ask twice. If he refuses the second time, kill him. And then, because deacons cannot help themselves, a new blood sacrifice is about to begin. I did not know that phrase yet. I learned it later, at close range. A blood sacrifice opens a door and brings something down through it, and the cult has records of one that killed every Transcendent Alliance member present at it, and they claim walked a dead cultist backwards out of death. Duan Chen briefed his 3 loyal men that night. Duan Jun, Wang Tao, Hei Cheng. The window, he told them, is narrow. It only exists if the line pushes into the forest, past the wall cameras, and Lin Kai is either worn down or already bleeding. At 2 in the morning, the air raid siren went off, and it was not the ordinary one. Our orders routed the Hurricane Squad to S-102A on the southern high wall. 50 kilometers of concrete on the seaside, where the things that come out of the ocean make landfall. It is the worst wall in Hangxia. A squad of our quality is never, under any circumstances, sent to the southern wall. There must be cult people among the patroller command, Duan Chen said out loud, in a car to himself. He was right. He had no idea how right. 27 of us in 6 SUVs, and he put me in his own vehicle so he could keep his eyes on me. 4,000 to 5,000 armored defenders came up out of the passage under floodlights and flares. Crescent Squad drew the sector beside ours, which is how I got a good look at their captain, Ding Yu, gold armor, body tempering, about 2,000 caddies, academy graduate, and a squad with a 5% casualty rate on a wall where 30 is normal. Then the forest emptied, tens of thousands of them, 4 times what I had seen on the northern approach. Duan Chen put me on the far left end of our line. Alone. Which was, I want to be fair, tactically defensible if you squint. 6 came for me in the first minute. 3 crimson prawns, a black armored mystic tortoise, and 2 mutated dragonfish, which was more than anybody else on that stretch of wall drew, and the man to my right quietly took 4 steps away from me, so I ran out to meet them. Everybody who saw it read it as a boy losing his nerve in the wrong direction. Split the first prawn's head coming in, took the tortoise's head off without turning to look at it because I could hear where it was. Then I let the second prawn chase me, back flipped over the top of it and killed it on the way down, and then I stopped moving. Completely still, in the middle of 3 animals, for about a second and a half, long enough that the 2 dragonfish committed and bit each other, and the last prawn's pincers closed on both their heads at once, and all 3 of them were now a single knot of confused meat. Then I went through the knot. 35 seconds, all 6. Almost nobody watching understood what they'd seen. One person did. Ding Yu from the next sector in gold armor had spotted the thing underneath all of it, not the strength, the footwork, movement technique skill, which is something you are not supposed to be able to comprehend before the 4th realm, and which most people never comprehend at all. He pulled my file that evening out of professional curiosity and found a secondary school student, mid-college entrance examination, 3 months of frontline duty as a disciplinary posting. And he sat there and thought a thought that had genuinely not occurred to me yet. Could this one take first place in the national practical test this year? 6 hours of grinding melee later, 1 man from the Hurricane Squad was dead, and nobody in the Hurricane Squad said anything about it. Then the crystal shrimp came through the artillery net. 6.5 meters, a carapace like cut diamond, and it walked through a barrage that was killing everything around it and did not slow down. Near intermediate rank. There is no angle on a crystal shrimp. The shell does not break. The only opening on the entire animal is its mouth, and its mouth is directly between 2 pincers that can take a car apart. This kid isn't going to die to the crystal shrimp, is he? Duan Jun said hopefully. I went underneath it. There's a space under the belly of a shrimp that big where the pincers physically cannot reach, and I got into it and started hitting legs. It has 10, 1 swing a second, 120 swings, 2 minutes, under a diamond animal, hitting the same joints over and over, because I couldn't break them and I didn't need to break them. Accumulated shock does not care about your shell. The legs went out from under it, then I climbed onto its back and onto its skull and hammered the top of its head until it stopped tracking. I didn't invent that. I got it out of a sea beast I ate on the road in, which hunts juvenile crystal shrimp for a living and stuns them first because it also cannot break the shell. Then I dropped off the front in front of its mouth and put the saber up through the palate into the brain and stirred. 4 minutes. Alone. Nobody on that wall had ever seen one killed by a single person. Duan Chen admitted out loud in front of his own men that it would have taken him 20 minutes. At 10 in the morning, the forest opened up again, and this time hundreds of intermediate fierce beasts came out at once. That's the beast committing everything. That's the day being decided. 2 of them reached our stretch of wall. Crescent Squad drew a 2-headed black tortoise, which Ding Yu and 6 men killed together, and that is what a good squad looks like doing its job properly. We drew an ironclad rhinoceros, 8 meters, 16,000 caddies, iron hide, and a horn that does not care what you are made of. And Captain Duan Chen looked at it and looked at me and walked his entire squad away, not tactically, deliberately, at a pace, in a direction, leaving one 17-year-old alone in front of an intermediate beast and the low-level pack running behind it. I understood the offer perfectly. Either it kills me or it softens me up enough to be worth recruiting. If I can handle it, I said loudly, so they'd all hear me, then obviously, I don't need any of you. And if I can't, do you really think I'd be stupid enough to charge in? Then I ran, not away, sideways, along the base of the wall, at a speed the low-level pack couldn't match. So all of them peeled off the rhino's flanks and went for the nearest slower target, which was the Hurricane Squad, and I got my clean one-on-one. I fought that animal like a bullfighter at the foot of a 50-meter wall. First charge, I stepped off the line and the horn went into the concrete and burst 4 meters of masonry, and every single time it went past me, I hit the same spot. Left chest, same handspan, every pass. Not because I could hurt it, because iron hide is still a surface and surface is where. It tried a body slam once, 5 meters of airborne rhinoceros, and the ground where I'd been standing sank 2 meters. Somewhere around the 40th pass, the hide over that one patch gave up. 1985 caddies, straight thrust, between 2 ribs, into the heart. It did not die. That's the part nobody tells you about big animals. It went berserk instead, and I spent another 2 minutes staying alive while it bled out on its feet. 6 Crescent Squad men came sprinting over to help and arrived exactly in time to watch it fall over. And while everyone was standing around it saying what you say, I crouched down by its head, put my hand flat against it, and cleaned it out. An entire intermediate beast in about 10 seconds, 600 circulations. 6 days of passive cultivation, standing in a field, pretending to check whether something was dead, plus its whole life. Every fight that animal had ever survived, straight into my hands. I stabbed it through the left chest, I told them when they asked. 1 strike, into the heart, which was true, and left out approximately everything. Ding Yu worked out the method by that evening and conceded he wouldn't attempt it. Not couldn't, wouldn't. Because the whole thing only functions if your footwork is good enough that a horn missing you by 10 centimeters is a plan and not an accident. Duan Chen recalculated too, and came to a much less comfortable answer. Killing me with beasts wasn't going to work. And recruiting me had become dangerous, because if I said no to a Dark Knight cult deacon's proposal, the 4 of them might not be enough to close the conversation. So he burned his savings. Over 50,000 merit points, call it 150 million yuan, plus about 40 million of the cult's money, to push himself at the 3rd realm and shove his 3 men to the edge of the 2nd. At 1 in the afternoon, the beast broke, and the order came down the wall to pursue them into the forest. There was no cheering afterwards. I'd expected cheering. What there was instead was men crying over body bags in the open. One of ours went into a bag, 23 years old, and not a single person from the Hurricane Squad walked over. Today might be over, somebody said behind me, zipping something. Tomorrow, it might come again. I hauled 102 corpses onto the trucks that afternoon and quietly emptied every one of them. 121 low-level beasts and 1 intermediate. That battle. 1,111 automatic circulations in 11 hours. 14,230 banked. And I'll tell you the thought I actually had, sitting on the tailgate of a truck full of dead things with my hands shaking from 11 hours of it. I did not want my father and my sister to have to come here and collect pieces of me. That's it. That's the whole thought. It was not noble. The merit settlement came through that evening. 333 beasts, including 1 intermediate. 3,670 points, about 10 million yuan. In 1 day, and that is when I found the Vicious Beast Kill ranking on the Patrol app, which is a live daily leaderboard of every patroller in Deep City, 9,565 names. I went to the bottom first because I wanted to know what the floor looked like. The last name on the list had 0 kills and a red avatar. Red means killed in action. I scrolled up. The next one was red and 0. And the next. And the next. I scrolled through 132 consecutive red zeros before the numbers started. 132 Transcendents died in the first wave, before the leaderboard had anything to record about them at all. Their entire contribution to that day was a name, a red circle, and a nothing. He Huan came in at 158, Duan Jun at 159, because his cousin had been feeding him kills for 2 years. Captain Duan Chen at 153rd with 262. And me at 49th with 333. The top 3 were a different species altogether. Chen Dong 758, Ding Yu 521, Kai Yong 502. The Deep City Patroller Forum found it inside an hour. Shocking. Daily kill ranking, 49th place, suddenly changes hands. Winner, Lin Kai. And under it, the comment that got the most replies. Hurricane Squad? That trash team got assigned somebody like this? In a room 2 floors below mine, 4 men were counting their money. Can the 4 of us really deal with Lin Kai? Said He Chung, which was the first honest sentence anyone in that room had said in a month. They pooled it. 53,210 points, 41,201, 38,914, 40,983, plus cash. About 200 million yuan on the captain and 120 each on the rest. All of it into gene potions, at the first lull after the offensive. Then Duan Chen pulled up the ranking, saw 153 and 49 on the same screen, and slammed the table hard enough to crack it. Damn it, he said. Such a big difference. I'm so embarrassed. We were attacked every single day after that. Day 14 ran 16 hours and brought 300 intermediate beasts. Joanne, the special action commander, came down off the wall and killed 3 of them personally, which is what a bone-forging realm man looks like when he stops delegating. 10 squad captains died that day. I couldn't hold my section alone and ended up fighting inside the White Fox squad's line for the last 4 hours, which is not allowed and which nobody mentioned. Somewhere in those 2 weeks, the wall gave me a name, Lin the Madman. I have been called worse, and I have never been called anything I liked more. Squads started requesting to be posted next to my sector, which is the single highest compliment available on a front line, and by day 14 I was on first-name terms with Crescent Squad, Tianquan Squad, and White Fox Squad, and had not had a conversation with anyone in my own squad in 9 days. Day 14 totals, 4,831 points, 416 kills, 48th. The Hurricane Squad had lost 4 men since I arrived, and then the 4 came back from their shopping trip. Duanchen had spent 220 million yuan on 2 bottles at 110 million each, and it bought him 10,000 bone temperings and took him from 1,050 caddies to 1,300. Lin Kai, he said, looking at his own hands, you are no longer my opponent. The other 3 took their second marrow cleansings, 780, 772, 822. The next battle, the whole squad noticed it. Those 4 killed nearly half of everything that came at our sector between them. Duan Chen went from around 150th to 48th on the daily ranking. Passing me, I dropped to 50th, and my reaction was not outrage. As expected of a frontline veteran, I thought, looking at the list. His foundation is much stronger than mine. Then I started saving. What I did not know that week was the thing those 4 already knew and had known for months and had helped plan. The Dark Knight cult's operation in Deep City was not an attack. It was a blood sacrifice, the whole city, 10 million people, 5 years in the planning, and it was about 6 weeks out. I had 37,201 merit points banked, which is about 110 million yuan, and a 2-day lull that the wall said was coming and might not. I spent 34,000 of them on 2 bottles of Royal Spirit Gene Potion and fused them. Ding. Starlight Gene Potion. I want to describe this one properly. The bottle came out of the fusion floating about 30 centimeters off the table inside a slowly turning nebula, an actual nebula, half a meter across, with points of light drifting through the arms of it, in a dormitory room on a military base. It's so beautiful, I said, out loud, to an empty room. I almost don't want to drink it. 12,000% absorption, 15,600 with the devouring art layered on. 4 hours in, at 25,000 circulations, my entire body locked up and would not move. Then it started pushing. Marrow cleansing is what they call it, and what it actually is your body deciding to evict 18 years of everything that shouldn't be in it, all at once, through the skin. Black. Ink black. Everywhere, out of every pore at the same time. I sat there for a long time as a black statue in a completely sealed room, and I would like to formally apologize to whoever had the room next to mine. 1,133 caddies became 1,350, a full day more of it, and I came out at 46,210 circulations and 1,430 caddies. 300 caddies in one session. For comparison, Duan Chen had spent 220 million yuan and gotten 250. I'd spent 110 and gotten 300, and I hadn't even reached his realm. That's the Limit Realm Foundation. Everything you build on top of a complete first floor comes out bigger. I spent an hour in the shower and did not get all of it. My father called that evening because I'd been on the front line 20 days and had not phoned once. He gave me 2 pieces of advice in the order he considered important, and both of them are worth remembering. 1. Be wary of your teammates. 2. Be careful of the Dark Knight cult. And listen to me, because I was out there too once. They might be hidden among your teammates. Then Ayue took the phone and told me I was boasting when I said how strong I'd gotten. I promised her gene potions when I came home, the ordinary kind, the kind that just make a body sturdier. I promised I'd help you stand up, I told her. Until that's done, your brother doesn't fall. The air raid siren cut the call. I rode the elevator to the top of the wall for the first time that day, and I finally understood the artillery, 1,000 meters wide at the top. Not a wall, a city on its side bristling, layered, with gun positions stacked in tiers and men living up there permanently. The beasts hit us, held for 2 hours, and then broke and ran. The base ordered a pursuit, which is standard, and about a kilometer into the forest, the fleeing beast turned around and hit us with reinforcements that had never been in the first wave at all. Our casualties for that hour were worse than for the whole battle before it. That was the day I understood that something out in the ocean is thinking, something with a rank on it, general or king, that had just executed a feigned retreat on 4,000 professional soldiers and made it work. Retreat was called. We fell back through the trees, and the ground under me burst open. 18 meters of black armored king snake came up out of the sand, intermediate rank, scales as hard as a crystal shrimp's shell on a body 100 times more agile, and venom that kills things 2 whole ranks above me. It had me coiled before I had finished falling. Then it dragged me 3 kilometers into the forest, at speed, through undergrowth, to a sandy clearing where nothing was going to interrupt it. Constricted like that, I could only put out 2,073 caddies, and my saber could not scratch that hide. And I want to be accurate about the next part. My armor was creaking, my ribs were creaking, I had blood in my mouth, and my vision was going gray at the edges, and the actual sentence in my head was, no. At this rate, I am going to be strangled to death. And then I noticed the thing that was so obvious that nobody in the history of the myriad things devouring art has ever been in a better position to use it. 0 distance, full contact. Its entire body wrapped around mine, touching me everywhere, perfect conditions. I put both palms flat on the scales and started drinking. It took about 11 seconds for an 18-meter apex predator to understand that something was wrong, and about 4 more for it to panic, and when its will actually started to tear, it let go of me and recoiled like I'd burned it. After that, it was a duel, and it was a real one. 2 saber strikes knocked it flat. Its tail whip threw me through a tree and gave me my second mouthful of blood of the afternoon. And then I solved it, and I solved it out of a 200-year-old bird's memory of eating snakes. You don't cut a king snake. The heart sits about 10 centimeters under the scales, and you will never reach it with an edge. What you do is transmit. You put shock through the shell into the thing behind it. 4 strikes, same spot. Its heart burst inside its own armor. Then somebody in the tree line started clapping. Duan Chen, Duan Jun, Wang Tao, He Cheng. They had been there a long time. They had watched all of it. They had specifically waited for me to be injured. A disciple of the great Dark Knight God King, said Duan Chen, spreading his hands, in the tone of a man offering you a promotion. A disciple of the Dark Knight cult. And then he made the pitch, and I will be honest with you, for 4 seconds it worked. The resurgence isn't a rebirth, he said. It's the last flicker of a dying world. Everything you're defending is a candle going out. The only people who come through it are the people willing to pay enough, and pay it early. It is a genuinely good pitch when you are 17, bleeding, 3 kilometers into a forest, and have spent 20 days watching 132 people become red zeros on a phone screen. And then I heard my father's voice from a phone call 2 days earlier, saying, don't listen to their crooked theories. Cherish it, I said. Cherish what exactly? Become a rat that every person in this country curses? A man who kills people who never did anything to him? I've killed a lot of people. Every single one of them came for me first. My hands have never had innocent blood on them, and they are not going to start today. That was the second time of asking. They only asked twice. Since you know we're from the Dark Knight cult, said Duan Chen, and you won't join, then obviously we can't let you go back. All 4 went for vitals at the same moment, from 4 angles. I didn't block any of them. The movement technique took me out through the only gap that existed and put me on Duan Jun's left side, and Duan Jun, who had spent that entire month telling anyone who'd listen what he was going to do to me, got as far as kid, today is your doomsday, I'm going to chop off your head. 2,431 caddies, 1 pass. His head came off. Duan Chen's axe drove me back 4 meters. So I kicked a wall of sand into all 3 of their faces, and while they were covering up, I took Wang Tao's head at 2,502. 2 dead in 2 exchanges. And then my ribs opened up inside and I coughed blood down my own chest plate, and both of the survivors saw it and everything got much harder. He Chung was the smart one. He never committed past 80% on any strike, always kept a foot back, always ready to disengage. That's how you fight something stronger than you, and it works, and the 2 of them boxed me for 10 straight exchanges. I broke it by punching a descending battle axe off its line with my bare left fist at 2431 caddies, which I do not recommend, and which I could feel in the bones of my forearm for a week. He Chung's spear came in from behind while I was still committed, and I parried it without turning my head, by sound alone. Then I kicked him into a tree and dropped on him at 2574 and opened him from the shoulder to the sternum. The last exchange with Duan Chen was pure force, no technique at all, both of us out of ideas. 2300 of his against 2502 of mine. The axe came out of his hand with most of the skin of his palm still on the haft. I threw the saber through his chest. "Why?" he said, on his knees. "Why?" I didn't answer him, because the answer was long and he was going to be dead before the end of it. His essence came out richer than the intermediate beasts had, and his whole life came with it, and there were 3 things in there. 1. His codename was G028. The protection racket in the squad, the merit point extortion, the whole small, ugly kingdom, was a cult fundraising operation. 2. And this is the one that changed how I sleep. The gods are real. The Dark Knight God King has descended. It has happened. During a blood sacrifice, on record, in living memory. Every Transcendent Alliance member present died in the same instant, and a cultist who was already dead got up afterwards and walked. 3. Deep City. All 10 million of them. Everyone behind the wall, everyone on the wall, the shops and the tropical trees and the man arguing about the phone case, and He Huan and me. 5 years in the preparation, weeks away. I sat in a clearing with 4 bodies and thought very carefully about what to do with that, and here is where I landed. I could not walk into the Transcendent Alliance and report it as myself, because the cult had reached a squad captain. The cult had reached the patroller command well enough to route my squad onto the southern wall at 2 in the morning. If they could reach that far, they could reach into the Alliance, and the first thing that would happen to a boy who walked in with all 4 of his teammates missing and a story about gods is that somebody would make a phone call about him. So I emptied all 4 patrol accounts, 30,928 points, taking me to 34,129, and I left the bodies where the beasts would find them, which in that forest takes about an hour. Then I ran the gauntlet home. The wall opened a firing gap for me again. Somebody up there was starting to recognize my armor. I got about 6 steps inside the line before my legs stopped working, and I went down in front of the rampage squad, coughing. The black-armored King Snake commanded the beasts to surround us, I told their captain. Once I could talk, it dragged us into the forest. They all died fighting it. Only I survived. Not one person doubted a word of it. Moderate to severe internal injuries, ribs a hair from fractured, 5 days off duty. And on the second day, Commander Zhou An walked into my hospital room personally, carrying a fruit basket. A bone-forging realm. Special Action Commander does not visit a disciplinary private with fruit. That has never happened in the history of Deep City. He wanted my statement, in person, in a quiet room. So I gave him the whole tragedy. The snake, the ambush, the 4 of them holding the line so I could get clear, and then the finish, delivered with my eyes down. I keep thinking that Captain Zhao and I got off on the wrong foot, and if I'd just talked to him properly that first day, maybe none of it would have happened. He said the right things and stood up and left. And in the doorway, for about half a second, there was a very strange light in his eyes. I filed that away and went back to planning, because I'd worked out how to hand over a blood sacrifice without handing over my own name. I was going to buy a phone from a man who doesn't ask for identification. There was a repairman standing outside the hospital when I was discharged, in overalls, doing nothing in particular. Hao Yun Lai. 6 years in the black market trade, 1,700 caddies, 40,000 bone temperings, wanted by the Transcendent Alliance in 3 provinces and never once caught. Song Zhen had paid him 300 million yuan for me, 150 up front, which he had already spent, all of it, on 10 days of sealed cultivation, specifically so that whatever came at him would come at him at the wrong number. He had spent 3 weeks getting himself hired as an armored vehicle mechanic on a military base. He followed me home to dormitory 182, counted the cameras on the approach, timed the patrols on both access roads, and concluded that the base was too tight. He would need me outside the wire. Then, being a professional, he went away and waited, and I went upstairs and spent another 34,000 merit points on another Starlight potion, because I am nothing if not consistent. 11 hours this time, 60,000 circulations. And I had learned from the first one, so when I felt the lockup start, I went and sat in the bathroom with the door shut and spent 20 minutes in there, becoming a black thing, and then washing myself off a wall. 75,009 circulations, 1,430 caddies to 1,810, 100,000 circulations plus a third marrow cleansing is the second realm. I was 3/4 of the way to body tempering, and I had been a Transcendent for about 6 weeks, and that same evening I found out something about the merit point system that reframed my entire sentence. Plundered points don't count. They spend. You can buy potions with them, buy equipment, buy anything the app sells, but the rank bar, the experience, the 100,000 I owed the court, that only moves when the galaxy computer watches you kill something yourself, which meant every point I had taken off a corpse was money, and none of it was time. I had to earn all 100,000, personally, in under 3 months. I took my medical leave into the city. Rubik's Cube pedestrian street looks like a normal shopping street with a very old building at the end of it. Room 107, ground floor, and you knock on the inside wall 3 times. What are you here for? A transaction. The wall opens. Underneath Deep City, there is an entire second shopping street, neon lit, 600 meters long, where you can buy gene potions with no paperwork, identity documents that scan clean, and things I did not look at directly. At the far end there was a pit, and men were fighting in it to the death, and the stands around it were full, and the noise those people were making was not a human noise. I bought a phone for 3,000 yen and a forged SIM for 10,000. Then I walked 15 minutes of empty service tunnels out to a sewage outfall where the water is loud enough to eat a voice, and dialed the Deep City Transcendent Alliance hotline and pitched my voice down as far as it would go. Duan Chen, captain of the Hurricane Squad, is Dark Knight Cult. So are Duan Jun, Wang Tao, and He Cheng. In his dormitory, second floor, the left bedroom, there's a compartment behind the wall panel with an old phone in it. That's where you start. And they are preparing a blood sacrifice of Deep City, all of it. Don't bother trying to trace me. I hung up, and somebody behind me started clapping. I've been watching you for days, said Hao Yunlai. Dark Knight Cult, I said. No, just paid. Employer, I said. The Hua family, Song Zhen, or that shrieking woman? He didn't answer, which was answer enough about his professional standards. His dagger was 35 centimeters long, gray-green, and worth 5 million yuan on its own. His signature technique is called the life-breaking strike, and it goes out at 2,720 caddies, and it had killed body-tempering realm men one after another for 6 years. And I had come down there to make an anonymous phone call, so my saber was in my room, and I was standing in a sewage tunnel completely unarmed. I slipped the life-breaking strike, then I slapped his wrist at 2,700, which turned him 90 degrees, and put the dagger up over his head on the recovery. And when it came down, I clapped my bare hands together on the flat of the blade at 3,100 caddies and held it there. I have never seen a man's face do what his face did. I twisted it out of his fingers, and then I kicked the dagger at his head hard enough that he had to go flat on the floor of a sewer to avoid it. Then I stood on him, once for the arms and the ribs, once for the rest. I am a man of my word, I said, which was not really relevant, but I'd promised Song Zhen something in a courtroom, and this was as close as he had come to me since. You're at death's door, he said, through what was left of his chest, and you're still talking about being a man of your word. 15 seconds, 1,500 circulations, and a name. Song Zhen, and a call log on a phone in his pocket with Boss Gong at the top of it. I did not delete that phone. I took it, and I turned it off, and I put it in my storage space, and I said out loud to a dead man in a tunnel, "This phone is going to be your employer's death warrant." Then, about 40 minutes later, while I was walking back, it rang. Boss Gong. I let it ring out, and then I let it ring out again, 12 minutes later. I want you to imagine Song Zhen for the next few weeks, in an office in Lincheng, 300 million yuan committed, calling a number that just rings, night after night, and never once getting an answer or a body or a piece of news. I put the corpse, the burner, and the sim into the outfall, where the water was moving fast enough to take all 3. His accounts came to 40 million. My phone call, meanwhile, went off like a bomb. Grandmaster Zhang Hu, 60 years old, head of the Deep City Transcendent Alliance, convened an emergency council within the hour, and 10 Pifu realm men came to it. One of them was Xu Chang, who was in Deep City on assignment from Alliance headquarters, hunting exactly this. The patrol squads are the dam, Zhang Hu told that room, and somebody has been drilling holes in it from the inside for years. Xu Chang takes the base. Everyone else takes the city government and the law enforcement office. And from this hour, Deep City is sealed. People may come in, nobody goes out. And then Grandmaster Zhang Hu said the thing that made everyone in that room quiet. I have felt a shadow approaching Deep City for weeks now, he said, and I cannot find the source of it. I drove back to a base that had tripled its gate guards in 4 hours, and sat in the car for a minute, and had a small, sober realization about the size of the thing I had just touched with 2 fingers. They found the hidden phone exactly where the anonymous caller said it would be. And in the recovered call logs, Duan Chen's reports, months of them, to a deacon, Xu Chang found a line about me, Lin Kai, Qi Sensing Realm Limit. He read it twice, because Xu Chang had been the greatest talent his family had produced in 3 generations. He had been fed resources from the age of 9. He had every potion, every tutor, every advantage that money and a surname can buy. And he had finished the Qi Sensing Realm at 360 out of 362 Acupoints. Too short. He had missed the limit realm by 2. So what if it's the limit realm, he said, alone, to a case file. I was off by a hair's breadth. Lin Kai, you are destined to be stepped on by me for the rest of your life. Or killed. 2 days later they pulled in every surviving member of the Hurricane Squad for interview, which meant me. I walked into an interrogation room and Xu Chang was sitting on the other side of the table. I want to be clear that this was the most dangerous 4 minutes of my life to that point, and that it did not involve a single blow. He asked me about Duan Chen, and I told him the truth, turned inside out, which is the only lie that survives contact with an intelligent man. From the day I joined that squad, I said, I was in conflict with Captain Zhao and with Duan Jun. They wanted me to kneel and kowtow 9 times. I beat both of them in front of the whole squad on my first afternoon. It's in the incident log, you can pull it. And then, 3 weeks later, when a king snake dragged us into the forest, those 4 men died holding it off me. I didn't flicker, not once. Could it be, I said, that they were trying to recruit me? The file confirmed everything I'd said, because everything I'd said was documented, because I had beaten up my own vice captain in front of 20 witnesses on day 1 specifically so that it would be documented. They released me in 11 minutes. At the door, Xu Chang said the thing he'd been saving. Even if you are a Qi Sensing Realm Limit Transcendent, he said, you're still an insect. If it weren't for Xiao Xuan, I wouldn't even know a person like you existed. I said thank you for your time, sir, and went back to work. The first sweep of the base pulled 132 cultists and 1 squad captain. Zhang Hu said it wasn't enough, and Xu Chang, who is a genuinely dangerous man, and I have never pretended otherwise, came up with the thing that worked. He assembled every patroller on the base, 7,000 of us on the plaza, in armor, at dusk, and he offered 15,000 merit points for a confirmed report. 15,000 points is 45 million yuan for a phone call. Anyone, he said into the microphone, anyone at all, even if it's your own captain acting strangely. The second sweep pulled 200 more and 2 more squad captains. 337 in the end, including 3 body-tempering realm squad captains. And walking off that platform, Xu Chang made small talk with the special action commander beside him. Which academy did you attend? That kind of thing. And then, at the bottom of the steps, casually, the way you ask someone to pick up milk, there's a patroller here named Lin Kai. If you get an opportunity, help me deal with that kid, and I'll owe you a favor. I call the shots in the patrol brigade, said Zhou. That kid isn't going anywhere. 337 arrests, and neither of them noticed that the deal they had just made across a handshake was between the boy's enemy and the boy's murderer, and that only one of them knew it. Somewhere in Deep City that night, a man in a white robe reported the losses upward. He had never been seen face to face by a single one of those 337. Not one of them could have described him. He was the head of the cult's entire Deep City operation, and his designation was SA001. Small to medium fish and shrimp, he told the purple-robed deacon above him. Nothing structural. Very well, said the purple-robed deacon. Then move it up. The blood sacrifice happens 1 month earlier than planned. Reinforcements are already moving. And instruct the beasts. Attacks are to become extremely frequent from now on. Exhaust the patrollers. Exhausted men do not investigate. Then he asked about the 4 dead squad members in the forest and reconstructed from a battle report and a corpse count and absolutely nothing else what had actually happened out there. Duan Chen did not lose to a snake, he said. He lost to the boy he was sent to recruit, and the boy walked out with everything Duan Chen knew and then made a telephone call. Once he grows, said the purple-robed deacon, he will become another commander Gu Ding Chao. Therefore, regarding Lin Kai, we would rather kill the wrong man than let him live. They picked an assassin from the city side, Wang Hui, who would have placed in the top 15 if squad captains had a ranking. My phone pinged at breakfast the next morning. Lin Kai is appointed squad leader of the Hurricane Squad. I read it twice, in a canteen, holding a tray. Then I called all 19 survivors into Training Hall 8, in full armor, mine included. If anyone has an objection, I said, please voice it now. I'll make sure you're satisfied. 19 men looked at the floor. One of them had personally watched me kick their vice captain 20 meters. Fine, I said. Then here's how it works now. No protection fees. Not to me, not to anyone. No inner circle, no brothers, no cousins. You don't kneel to anybody in this hall. We fight as a unit, we cover each other, and every single one of you earns more merit points than you did last month. Because what did we come to the front line for? Be honest, it's the points. Protecting the city is the second reason, and we all know it. The room came apart, in a good way. We'll follow the captain's lead. Then the siren went off, because it always does. and our posting came through, and it was the southern high wall again. 5 men under strength, and still the southern wall. I noted that. I didn't yet know what it meant. I audited my squad on the drive out. 12 men between 550 and 600 caddies, 6 between 600 and 650, 1 at 716. Crescent squad had 6 men above 850. Ding Yu had worked out I'd been promoted before anyone told him because he'd seen who was standing at the front of our line. He Huan leaned out of her carrier and shouted across 2 squads, "When will I get to be a captain?" Both lines laughed, which on a wall at 4 in the morning is worth more than it sounds. I stole Ding Yu's formation wholesale. 2 rows, 80 meters apart, the strongest men forward, and I watched the weakest 6 in my squad physically relax when I put the strong men in front of them, because in 2 years, nobody had ever done that. "I'll take the lead," I said. "Once you've cleared your own beasts and your hands are free, come and support me." Then I ran out ahead of my own line and pulled more than 20 beasts onto myself, and our first clash of that battle cost the Hurricane squad nobody at all. A dragonfish's head, split, a crimson prawn, both pincers off with 1 two-handed swing, then the skull. A deep gloom electric eel opened along the belly while it was still in the air, and the current came up the saber and my armor drank it, which is what armor is for. 10 minutes later, I came out through the ring from the inside. 7 hours in, the second wave came, and it had changed shape. More than 100 intermediate beasts, and each one of them was moving with 200 or 300 low levels around it, in formation. The beasts were learning tactics, and ours was a 7-meter intermediate crystal shrimp. I picked Wang Guang for the killing blow. 716 caddies spear, the strongest man I had. "Squad leader," he said, and his voice went up. "Can I do it? That's an intermediate fierce beast. My strength is only 716. Do you know where a crystal shrimp's weakness is? Yes, the mouth." "Then there's no problem," I said. I took the pincers. 2 of them went for the legs, and when it shook them off and reared, I was already on top of its skull, hammering down at 3,000 caddies a swing until it lost its balance and dropped. "Wang Guang," I said. "Now." The spear went in through the mouth and into the brain, under 90 seconds. Their old squad had needed 10 men and 4 minutes for one of those and had lost people doing it. I watched 19 faces reorganize themselves around a new idea of what a captain is for, in real time, standing on a wall. That battle paid 2,860 merit points, 30% more than I'd been earning alone. Rank 28th. The forum did its thing again. Then the 14 days started, and I would like to describe them accurately, which means being boring about it. 14 consecutive days of combat. Not one of them under 6 hours. 3 of them over 15. That was not the ocean. That was a man in a white robe issuing instructions, because a patroller who has fought 16 hours does not spend his evening asking who unlocked a dormitory door. I banked 40,575 points and 85,400 circulations and 1,860 caddies, and I did not dare go into seclusion for a single one of those nights because a potion interrupted by a siren is 160 million yuan poured on the floor. Day 14 ran 22 hours with 400 intermediate beasts in it, and Gu Yi got surrounded. He was 26. There was nothing left to put in the bag. I ran that battle as well as I have ever run anything, and it did not matter, and I sat in the carrier on the way back with my hands on my knees and could not find the place where I should have done something different. My squad didn't blame me. That was somehow worse. They earned 40% more under me than they had under Duan Chen, and they paid nobody anything, and all they asked was whether I could request replacements. I got back to my dormitory at 4 in the morning, opened my own door, stepped through, pulled it shut behind me, and a green greatsword came out of the dark at the back of my neck, timed exactly to the sound of the latch. I twisted, and it opened my armor and the skin under it. 3 more strikes drove me into my own wall hard enough to crack the concrete, and for 4 seconds I was genuinely, straightforwardly losing. Then my feet found the floor properly, and the whole thing inverted. He came down overhand at 3,114 caddies. I slipped it, and the sword went 30 centimeters into a 40-centimeter wall and stuck. I answered at 3,162, 18 exchanges through what used to be my furniture. Then 2 kicks into his gut, and a drop at 3,348 that put his own sword flat against his own forehead and kept pressing until it cut him. "How could this be?" he said. "Wang Hui, 5 years in Deep City, a ghost on the Alliance's most wanted list, 1,800 caddies, 53,241 bone temperings, 52 million yuan in his accounts, and one detail in his memory that made the room feel very cold. His papers were forged, his base pass was real, and the biometric lock on my dormitory door had been unlocked from the inside by an account with the authority to do it. The cult still had somebody senior on that base, somebody who could open my door. Which is why, when I made my report the next morning, I lied to everyone. Attacked by an unknown transcendent in my quarters, I said. No idea who, no idea why. He didn't say anything. Here was my reasoning, and I stand by it. If I reported that the assassin was Dark Knight Cult, the cult would ask themselves how a private soldier knew that, and the only answer is that the boy takes information out of corpses. And the moment they know that, the anonymous phone call about Duan Chen stops being anonymous, and the next thing that comes through my door will not be a man I can beat. So I gave them nothing, and I made myself a promise in that wrecked room while I picked the wall out of my armor. If this gets any worse, I run, even if it means being a deserter. Survival is the foundation of everything, and everything else is decoration. Commander Zhou An came to investigate personally. Again. He walked around my ruined quarters, looking at the sword mark in the wall, and then he turned around and watched my face very carefully and asked one question. Do you think this has anything to do with the Dark Knight Cult? No idea, sir, I said. Upstairs, Grandmaster Jiang Hu had stopped chasing foot soldiers. He ordered Xu Chang to go straight at the 13 most senior officers on the base, starting with 3 names. Zhou An was one of them. And then something happened that told everybody exactly how deep it went. Every single inside man the supervision office moved to arrest poisoned himself before they got there. Everyone. Ahead of the knock. Xu Chang read that report and privately went white because he had asked Zhou An for a favor 11 days earlier, and he assumed the man had done something catastrophically stupid on his behalf. He had not. Zhou An had done something much worse than stupid, and he had been doing it for years. In Villa Number 1 of the Officer's Manor, with the curtains open and the lights low, the Special Action Commander of the Deep City Patroller Corps poured wine for a guest. The guest was Kai Yong, captain of the Lone Star Squad, second on the kill board, 2,200 caddies, 64,321 bone temperings, and universally admired. They were both cultists. They had both been cultists for years. Zhou An was SA001, and the 337 men who had just been arrested had never once seen his face because he had made sure of it. I put him in the Hurricane Squad on purpose, he said. It's a meat grinder. He should have been dead in 3 weeks. Then I sent Wang Hui. He turned the glass in his fingers. In the month and a half since that boy arrived at the front line, he said, he has increased his strength by at least 500 caddies. That's not possible, said Kai Yong. The blood sacrifice fires in 10 to 15 days, said Zhou An, and he has to be dead before it does, not because he can stop it, but because he is the one man on this base fast enough to get outside the radius. So we do it the other way. I'm transferring him into your squad, Vice Captain, under you. And Kai Yong smiled and said the sentence that I have thought about more than almost anything else in this entire story. The most fatal attacks, he said, don't come from your enemies. They come from the people closest to you. There was a banner over the door of Training Hall 3. Welcome Fang the Madman to the Lone Star Squad as Vice Captain. There was a red carpet, an actual red carpet, on a military base. 2 women stood at the entrance handing out something. 32 men applauded as I came through the door. After 8 weeks in the Hurricane Squad, I want to tell you honestly, it worked. It disarmed me completely, and I stood in a doorway feeling something I had not felt since the dinner at Uncle Chen's. Kai Yong came down the carpet with his hand out. Warm, handsome, easy. He told me his own number before I asked, which is a generous thing to do. 2,200, he said. What are you at? And I opened my mouth and I thought about a green greatsword coming out of the dark at 4 in the morning. 1830, I said. I was at 1860. 30 caddies. That was the whole lie. It sounds like nothing. 30 caddies can decide an exchange. I had learned that from a man who died because he had underestimated me by less. Lone Star Squad quality. 7 men over 850. 12 between 700 and 850, 14 between 550 and 700. The best squad I had ever stood in, and the first battle we fought together was, I have to say it, magnificent. The 2 of us went out as a joint spearhead and cut a hole straight through the beast line, and things that used to be problems stopped being problems. The crystal shrimp that had taken 10 men 4 minutes died in 25 seconds. Then an intermediate 4-pincer giant prawn came at us. 7.5 meters, 4 claws, 16 legs, and I have never seen anything move that many limbs that fast. I took 1 claw off in the middle of a dodge, not to cripple it, just to hurt it, and the pain froze the whole animal for about half a second. Kai Yong's twin swords came down through its skull at 3,740, 20 seconds. The squad behind us made a noise, then the 2-headed black tortoise, which had needed Ding Yu and 6 men, in 50 seconds with 2. That battle ran 13 hours and I finished it with 501 kills, 5,731 merit points, and 10th place on the board. Being in a strong squad, I wrote in my own notes that night, is genuinely different. That same night, in Villa Number 1, Kai Yong laid a 30cm concealed dagger, 10 million yuan, worn as decorative trim, on his own armor for 2 years, into a jade dish of dark green liquid. It's called withered bone rotten flesh. You buy it in a room under a shopping street. A trace of it in an open wound and the flesh goes off the bone. Lin Kai, he said, to the dish, among all the patrollers I have known, you are the third person I have had to take this seriously. I spent 13 days in the Lone Star Squad, and I need to say this part plainly. I was happy. They were good men. They covered each other without being told. They ate together. Somebody organized a card game every third night and cheated openly and badly. Their captain was generous with kills and generous with credit and asked after my family. For 13 days I had a place, and I felt warmth, and I felt what people mean by camaraderie, and I have never had it before, or particularly since. And I never once lowered my guard, not for a single hour, because my father had told me on the phone to be wary of my teammates, and my father was a man who had come home from a front line. 13 battles, 40,300 more points, taking me to 84,875 plus 93,930,000 in funds. Call it 340 million yuan total. And somewhere in there, quietly, a number rolled over that I had been carrying since a courtroom. I passed 100,000 lifetime merit points, all earned, all watched by the machine. Intermediate patroller, 2 months out of 3, the thing that a body tempering veteran needed 10 months for. Then I bought 2 bottles of Dark Soul Gene Potion at 55,000 points each, 165 million yuan a bottle, and fused them. Ding, Qilin Gene Potion. The liquid went iridescent, and then 5 small red Qilin came up out of the surface of it and started circling the bottle. Alive, roaring, rearing, leaping over each other, in my room for about a minute and a half. 28,000% absorption, 36,400 with the devouring art. It tasted like sweet wine. An hour and a half later, I hit 100,000 circulations, and my third marrow cleansing took me, and I broke through to the body tempering realm. The second of 10. It took me 9 weeks. Every one of the 206 bones in my body woke up at once and started wanting things. And here's where most people stop, because the third cleansing is where the second realm is supposed to begin, and you have the rest of your life to fill it. I did not stop. I went at the 4th. Most Transcendents never reach a 4th marrow cleansing. And there is a 5th, which a normal body cannot even perceive the existence of, which a body with 362 open acupoints can feel sitting there, waiting, like a door at the end of a corridor. 12 hours, 56,321 more circulations, 1,910 caddies to 2,350. Which made me, sitting alone on the floor of a dormitory room at 17 years old, stronger than Kai Yong, and stronger than Ding Yu, and I did not tell either of them. Ding Yu jumped back to second on the board that week, and I asked him how, over a messaging app, expecting to hear about a potion. Not strength, he wrote. I'm at 2,220, same as Kai Yong, near enough. Equipment. And then he explained the thing that I, a boy who had bought 1 set of armor once and never thought about it again, had somehow gone 2 months without learning. Gear has grades. Entry, C, B, A, and S. A C-grade blade is not a bit sharper, it is several times sharper. The longsword I used before couldn't cut a crystal shrimp no matter what I did, he wrote. When I switched to the bright jade sword, I could cut it. The catch is weight. C-grade needs 2,000 caddies minimum just to carry it, and the price, 70,000 merit points and up, 210 million yuan for the cheapest one. The most expensive item in the entire patrol app is 330,000 points, which is 1 billion yuan, for 1 set of clothes and 1 stick. I had just come out of seclusion. What am I even thinking about, I said to my phone. My total assets don't come to 10,000 points. 2 days later, an order came down. An intermediate beast had gotten into Deep City's main sewage trunk line. Kai Yong and Lin Kai together would go and kill it. Joan had written that order himself, that morning. The main trunk is 12 meters across with lamps down the walls and water moving fast enough to drown out a conversation, and we walked into it for 90 minutes. At about the 91st minute, Kai Yong slid a 30-centimeter dagger out of his armor trim without a sound and stabbed. And I was not there. I had jumped the instant his arm moved, not when the blade appeared. When the arm moved. You dodged it, he said, and he sounded genuinely astonished. You actually dodged. You clearly weren't prepared. Does being prepared need to be written on my face? You were guarding against me. Why shouldn't I guard against you? And then I said the thing I meant, and I meant every word of it, standing in a sewer with a poisoned knife between us. These have been the best 13 days I've had since I got here, I said. That isn't a line. I liked your squad. I liked you. I've thought of you as a brother for most of a fortnight, and I was going to say so. And in the last 2 months, the cult has come for me twice, and one of those times, somebody with a senior officer's password opened my bedroom door for the man who did it. So I never relaxed. Not once. Not for an hour. Not with you. Not with anybody. He looked at me, and something in his face actually gave. For all these days, he said, you and I forged a real bond. We entrusted our lives to each other out there. More than once. And you still guarded against me. Yes, I said. His style was twin swords, and it was the most frightening thing I had faced up to that point because it was not about power at all. A strike every 4/10 of a second. There is no gap. There is nowhere to put a counter. He simply arrives over and over, and you go backwards until you run out of tunnel. I went backwards for a while, and then I found it, and I told him out loud because I wanted him to know I'd found it. Dual swords give you frequency, I said, and you pay for it. Your strength is split. Every one of those strikes was about 3,150 caddies out of a man who could produce 3,540 if he ever put it all in one place. So I used the movement technique to buy myself 1 meter of daylight, and I put everything into a single swing. 3,995 caddies. The blade made a sonic boom in an enclosed tunnel. It nearly took both swords out of his hands. The second one, with both blades braced together at his full 3540, lost outright. The third, 4,112, put him on the floor and knocked one sword away down the tunnel. The fourth was a drop, 4,230, and it cracked the concrete open under him, and he kept fighting. That's the part I want on the record. Disarmed, on the ground, out of ideas, running on nothing but battle sense, he was still making me work right up to the second I opened his throat. His last act was to gloat, which I have come to understand is the cult's version of a prayer. The blood sacrifice is starting, he said. You're inside the radius. You can't get out of it in time. You're going to be part of it. 20 seconds. 2,221 circulations. And 3 facts arriving all at once, in the dark, standing over a friend. 1. Joan, the commander of the entire patrol brigade, the man who had brought me fruit in a hospital, is the white-robed deacon. He runs all of it. 2. A blood sacrifice needs 3 things: enough life and blood in one place, a core altar, and a chanter who holds the key. 3. The altar is 3 kilometers east of the high wall passage on the 2nd underground level. Exactly 2 men in Deep City knew where it was, and one of them was cooling off at my feet. Also, for completeness, 2 king-rank beasts were currently being walked into the city on a trail of emperor-rank heartblood laid from the coast inward, because a sacrifice of 10 million people needs the 10 million to be in the process of dying. 75,353 merit points in his accounts, which put me at 80,228. What a bunch of freaking lunatics, I said, out loud, in a sewer. Then I climbed the ladder and came out into the open and looked up. The whole sky was a magic array, not a patch of it, all of it, horizon to horizon, blood-colored, patterns turning slowly inside other patterns, and blood mist streaming up into it in columns from the direction of the base. When it saturates, it punches through and something comes down. I did the only arithmetic available, 200 to 300 kilometers of radius, about 3 hours to completion, on foot, with beasts in every direction. I could not outrun it. Nobody in that city could outrun it. So I did the same thing, the thing anyone would do, and took out my phone to call the Transcendent Alliance and tell them exactly where the altar was. Current signal interrupted. No bars, not weak signal, none. The cult had been quietly demolishing the city's communication stations one at a time for weeks, and Deep City had just become an island with 10 million people on it. Rewind an hour to the observation room on the southern high wall. They picked up 2 contacts 50 kilometers out, closing at 200 kilometers an hour with a mass of beasts landing behind them that filled the screen. Both king rank. Then every screen in the room went out at once. They sent a runner, on foot, then by car, to the Alliance Tower across a city. And in the command center, Commander Joan listened to his own staff describe an approaching catastrophe with an expression of deep concern, and then walked to the door and sealed it. He killed all of them, one at a time, with a C-grade Crimson Saber, in a locked room. Then he destroyed the equipment. On top of the wall, gun crews turned their weapons on each other. The barrage stopped, and 4,000 defenders on an open plain looked up at their own wall shooting itself. The winter frost serpent is over 2.5 kilometers long and 200 meters thick, and it has 1 horn, and the horn means it is on its way to becoming something worse than a beast. It reared 600 meters into the air. The heavenly poison octopus stands 1,300 meters tall, with 10 tentacles 2 kilometers long, and it walks in a trailing blue mist. They cleared the battlefield in 1 pass each. The serpent breathed, and a corridor 400 meters wide and 5 kilometers long, beasts, patrollers, vehicles, ground, became statues. The octopus walked, and and everything the mist touched came apart. Men, beasts, earth, and a long section of the wall itself, which turned to slurry and ran. Then the two of them leaned on the high wall of Deep City. 50 meters of concrete that had stood for 4 decades turned to dust under them, and the general rank beasts came in behind to widen the holes. 2 men on that plane read the situation correctly inside about 90 seconds, and I owe both of them my life several times over. Chendong, who had been first on the kill board every single day since I arrived, and Ding Yu, who had spotted my footwork on my first morning. They merged their squads on the spot in the middle of a rout. The wall is gone, Chendong said. Command isn't answering. The elevators are locked from inside. No aircraft have come, which means all 3 of those things are the same fact. Abandon this place. They cut a path back through a breach and set up a mobile defense inside the base itself, using the buildings, block by block, which is the only thing that works when a wall stops existing. Then the 2 of them went to the command post together, and neither of them said out loud what they expected to find in it. 3 kilometers east, Zhou An was walking down a service stair past his own soldiers. They saluted him, a commander with a dripping saber, walking downward, away from a battle, and 30 men saluted him and thought nothing at all because he was the commander. Second basement, a locked iron door, and behind it, a circular hall 300 meters across with a 50-meter altar cut into the floor. He opened his palm on his own blade and bled onto it, and the patterns lit up red. Then he started to chant, "Oh, great dark night God King, please listen to your servant's words." By the 6th repetition, wind began to blow in a sealed underground room, and a force with no color and no shape went out 300 kilometers in every direction, and everywhere it passed, the plane, the breaches, the streets, the wall, the death lifted off the ground. Blood and life came up out of the dirt as dark mist and started climbing into the sky. At the Alliance Tower, Grandmaster Zhang Hu lost communications because his own signals officer had smashed the relay and run. Then somebody at a window said his name in a voice that made the whole room turn around. From the appearance of a blood array, said Zhang Hu, looking at his own sky, to a successful trigger is approximately 3 to 4 hours. He opened a cabinet at the back of his office that had not been opened in years. Inside was an S-grade set, heaven-breaking armor, and a heaven-breaking axe. The armor came apart into particles in the air and reformed itself around him. He went off the balcony toward the southern wall without touching the stairs. Every other Pifu realm officer in the Alliance got into a car, and the cult had put killers on every single route out of that building. Duels erupted across an occupied city, in the streets, between men who could each level a block, and civilians within 10 meters of those fights died from the shockwaves without being touched by anything. Shu Chang's convoy was hit first, and he ended up in a one-on-one against a veteran Pifu realm cultist on a road, which meant that the single most useful man in Deep City spent the next hour completely unavailable. And I was standing at a sewer outfall with the one piece of information that could stop all of it and no way on earth to transmit it. So I picked the stupid plan, because it was the only one. Run at the base. Find Ding Yu, find Chendong, find anybody with rank who is still alive, tell them where the altar is, and go at Zhou An in a group, because he is bone-forging realm, 3,000 caddies and up, and I was 2350, and one of me is not enough. I couldn't run away, so I ran forward. 2 kilometers from the base, I found out that the city itself was already inside the fight. There was a mutated dragonfish in a residential street chasing a woman and a small girl, and it went for the girl first, because she was smaller and would go down easier. I took it in the ribs at a dead run and put it through a shop front and opened its skull, and I did not stop to say anything to either of them, because there was no time, and because I did not have anything useful to say. 23 more between there and the base, then more than 80 inside it, 3 of them intermediate, and everywhere I looked there were soldiers behind overturned cars giving up ground meter by meter in a place that had been a canteen the day before. I went past the Patroller Comprehensive Mall, which a squad was still holding, and stopped dead in the street. 80,228 merit points. 2,350 caddies. C grade requires 2,000. I turned around and went in. 6 sets in stock, and exactly one of them came with a saber, the dragon slaying set. 78,000 merit points, which is about 230 million yuan, and every single thing about it was correct. 100 caddies of armor with a dragon's head worked into the chest plate, and a saber 1 meter 35, ink black with a silver edge, 500 caddies on its own, 600 for the pair, which most key sensing realm men could not have carried across a room. There was no signal, so the transaction couldn't clear. The clerk scanned my eye, wrote the debit against my account by hand, and gave me 250 million yuan of equipment on trust in a building with beasts 4 streets away. I sold my black gold set back at 30% and walked out with 2,288 merit points to my name. Broke again. 3rd time that season. I tested the saber on the first crimson prawn I met. The pincer came off like I was cutting a sheet of paper. I want to be precise about what that changed, because I had spent 2 months learning to fight things I could not cut. Every trick I had, the shrimp's legs, the rhino's one patch of hide transmitting shock through a snake's armor, every single one of those was an answer to the question of how you hurt something you cannot cut. I had just been handed a saber that cut. Half a street later, I found Tang Fu of the Rampage Squad thrown across the road with a broken rib. His squad was scattered. Most of them had been outside the wall when it came down. He didn't recognize me. Different armor, different weapon, different size. Kai Yong and Commander Zhou An are both Dark Knight cult, I told him, while I pulled him upright. He stared at me. Then 2 near-intermediate crystal shrimp came down the side street with a dozen low levels behind them. And this time there was no cleverness at all. I sheared a crystal pincer clean off, got under the belly and took 6 legs in 4 seconds, went up onto its back and put the saber straight down through the shell into the skull. 15 seconds, better than anything I had managed with Kai Yong standing next to me. Then I did it again to the second one, so that Tang Fu could stand up and walk. A 9-meter ironclad rhinoceros came around the corner while he was still finding his feet. 3 weeks earlier, one of those had cost me 7 minutes, 40 passes along the foot of a wall, and the trick of wearing through one handspan of hide until I could reach a heart. 2 swings, same spot on the neck, both times. Tang Fu is a squad captain, and I watched him do the arithmetic he did not want to do, which was that the distance between him and me was now roughly the distance between him and Chen Dong. "Where are you going?" he said. "The southern high wall," I said. "There's a Dark Knight cult altar 3 kilometers east of the passage, second basement. I'm going to break it." He started to say he was coming. "Going in your condition is suicide," I said, and left, because there was a clock on all of this, and the clock was in the sky. I ran 10 kilometers through a running fight. And the thing that frightened me most on that run was not the beasts. It was that there was nobody to gather, no captains, no rally points, no command. A base of 7,000 professionals with no organized defense anywhere in it, because the man who organizes the defense had personally killed the room where that happens. Then a sound hit me from 5 kilometers away like weather. Through a gap between 2 high-rises, I saw Grandmaster Zhang Hu in the sky, fighting both king-rank beasts at once. A stray breath from the serpent froze an entire building 50 meters in front of me. Just froze it. Windows, walls, the water in the pipes. The whole fight was sweeping toward my position, and instead of running from it, I climbed into a window and made myself small and waited. Because if he won, I could hand him the altar, and a Grandmaster can cross 3 kilometers in a few seconds, and this whole thing ends inside a minute. Grandmaster Zhang Hu had 38,000 caddies of base strength and an S-grade heaven-breaking axe. He opened the octopus's head with something called Po Mi San Shi, first form, earth shatter, double amplification. 76,000 caddies in the shape of a 4-meter axe phantom made of light. And then he started drawing the second form. And in that one moment, with everything committed and nothing guarding his back, a man came up at him from below and put a poisoned dagger through his chest. A Dark Knight cult Grandmaster, Zhou Min, purple-robed deacon, who 10 years earlier had been split nearly in half by that exact axe and had spent a decade getting back up specifically for this. The poison was 100 Ghosts toxin. 100 rare beasts venom, refined together, fatal inside half an hour, and there is no antidote in existence that you could reach in half an hour. Someone actually dared to assassinate a Grandmaster, I said, out loud, in an empty apartment 2 kilometers away, and Zhang Hu, poisoned, boxed between 2 king-rank beasts and a Grandmaster, in the middle of the sky, went completely calm. "I will kill you," he said. And then quietly, almost to himself, blood-soul disintegration. Great method. Red mist came off him. His veins went crimson through the gaps in his armor, and his ki turned the color of blood, and his strength went from 38,000 caddies to 57,000. That technique costs your life, not metaphorically. It spends the rest of it, all at once, as fuel. He had mastered it 20 years earlier. He had carried it, unused, for 2 decades for exactly one purpose. There is an emperor-rank beast called the Twin-Headed Azure Dragon. 20 years ago, it came over a settlement while Jiang Hu was away on a mission, and it killed everyone in it, and among the everyone were his wife and his children. He learned blood-soul disintegration so that if that thing ever came ashore again, he could take it with him. It never came ashore, so he spent it on Deep City instead. First form, Earth Shatter, at 114,000 caddies, broke Zhou Min's best thrust in the air. Second form, Man Shatter, at 125,400 mi, a blade of blood-colored light 300 meters long, drove him down into the ground. Third form, Sky Shatter, 142,500 caddies in a phantom 600 meters tall. Zhou Min burned his own life to answer it and got most of one strike out. The axe took his head and his shoulder off together. Then Zhang Hu turned around, and Man Shatter burst the heavenly poison octopus's skull, and Sky Shatter split the Winter Frost serpent's head in two down the middle. One dying old man killed a Grandmaster and 2 king-rank beasts inside about 90 seconds. Then he came down and landed, and I got out of my window and ran. He was ancient. That's the only word. His hair had gone white, and his face had folded into wrinkles that had not existed 4 minutes earlier, and black lines were coming up his neck under the skin. Grandmaster, I said. The altar is 3 kilometers east of the southern passage, second basement. The chanter is Commander Zhou An. He's the white-robed deacon. He's been running Deep City for years, but I am already powerless, he said. And then he looked at me properly and said the thing that knocked me sideways. You have the devouring physique. I did not say anything, because there was nothing to say. All of this was told to me by Commander Gu, he said. Your presence here is also Commander Gu's arrangement, so go and devour that thing over there. Zhou Min's remains. Take what you can get from them. And then he gave me my instructions, and they were the last things he ever said to another living person. The future of Hangxia depends on you now, he said. Do not be afraid. Move forward boldly. If you don't have the courage to clear your own path, you will not walk it, and a man who doesn't walk his own path can end up walking an evil one instead. White flame took him from the inside out, and the very last thing he said was not to me. Shaoqing, he said. My child, I'm coming. The heaven-breaking set fell on the road with nobody in it. Grandmaster Yang, I said. Rest in peace. I had spent 2.5 months among Gong Yuans and Zhao Huayans and Hu Xiaofengs. I had been building a fairly ugly private theory about what a transcendent is. I revised it standing in that street. I stopped hiding after that. My secret was known to the men who mattered, Commander Gu, Grandmaster's son, and a dead man in the road, and not one of them had moved against me for it. So the calculation had changed. Let people talk. So-called thorns. Bring them on. As long as they can't kill me, I'll turn the thorns into food. Zhou Min's torso held less than 1/10 of what a Grandmaster carries because his head and one shoulder were somewhere down the street. Less than 1/10 of a Grandmaster. My circulation rate went to 250 per second. I went through 100,000 and straight into my 4th marrow cleansing standing in a stranger's living room with the wall already gone, and I did not stop, and I came out the other side somewhere around 205,000 circulations. 2,350 caddies to 2,800 to 3,000. 3,000 caddies is the floor of the 3rd realm. I was still in the 2nd one. The 2nd basement was full of red light and a wind that had no business existing underground. 300 meters of hall. A 50-meter altar cut into the floor with the patterns lit, and Zhou An standing in the middle of it with a sword through his right chest, over 5 men. 3 of them were already dead. Ding Yu was against the wall with 3 tears in that gold armor and his sword arm not working, and Chen Dong, first on the board for 11 weeks, freshly broken through to Bone Forging Realm at 3,600 caddies, had just been kicked into a wall hard enough to break his ribs. They had found it the honest way. They'd broken into the command post, seen the staff, looked at the wounds and worked out what makes wounds like that, and then counted who was missing, and they had gotten close enough to put a sword through him, which nobody else in Deep City managed all night. He was going to leave them alive. That was the plan. Breathing, on the floor, until the array completed so they could be part of it. And me? I said, from the doorway. He turned around. Who are you? There's no such person among the patroller captains. Lin Kai, I said. His face came apart. Because Kai Yang was supposed to have killed me 9 hours earlier in a sewer, and the fact that I was standing in that doorway told him everything about where his friend was. Both captains on the floor started shouting at me to run and get help, which was correct advice, and which there was no time for. First exchange, his 5,216 against my 5,100. I went backwards, but I held it, and the sword wound in his chest opened up again. Neither of us could explain the other's number. He was Bone Forging Realm and had been for years, and there was a 17-year-old in front of him producing 5,100 caddies out of the 2nd realm. There is no framework for that. There is no chart it fits on. He had no way to model a limit realm growth curve because nobody in Hangxia has one. On the floor, Chen Dong and Ding Yu realized at the same moment that this was not a rescue attempt. It was a fight. Zhou An's base was 3,800, dropped to around 3,200 by the hole in his chest, and he was on the road to the 4th realm, which meant he had a comprehended technique, and I did not. Shadow killing intent. 1.8 amplification, 5,760 caddies, and it launches with no wind-up at all, no drawn breath, no shift of the feet, nothing to read. The first one blasted me across the hall and onto the altar itself. The follow-up cleave missed me and took a piece out of the altar, and the patterns dimmed where it hit, and I watched the man who had spent 5 years building it go white with horror at his own strike. 20-odd rounds around that hall. Those 20 rounds went entirely one way. I had no initiative in any of them. I was alive because of a movement technique and 4 marrow cleansings worth of hide and nothing else. He was better than me and he was hitting harder than me and he did not miss twice. But the altar light was fading. Because the chanting had stopped. Because he was fighting me instead of chanting. And he knew it, and he started fighting like something with nothing left to lose, which is fast, but not careful. Then Chen Dong, with broken ribs, flat on the floor, out of the fight, got one hand on a fallen wolf tooth club and threw it at 5,500 caddies. Zhou An had to turn and swat it out of the air, and I put the dragon-slaying saber through his back and out of his stomach. How is this possible? He said. I am the strongest patroller. Then he started laughing through the blood and said the sentence I had been afraid of since the sewer. Don't think that killing me stops the blood sacrifice. If I fail, the backup activates. And don't expect to interrogate anything out of me. I never intended to interrogate you, I said. And I put my hand on him and took it in front of 2 conscious squad captains in a lit hall with no attempt whatsoever to hide what I was doing. Lin Kai actually possesses the devouring physique, Chen Dong said to the ceiling, which was, I found out later, a bigger sentence than I understood at the time, because there is exactly one other confirmed holder of that physique in the world, and he runs the Dark Knight cult. The backup altar was on a cliff southwest along the coastline, standing out over the sea, held by a reserve team that Zhou An had personally rated as weak. 91,123 merit points came off his accounts, which was the largest single transaction of my life, and which I did not look at for another 2 days. Then I smashed the altar in the floor into gravel. The wind died, the blood mist in the sky above Deep City stopped climbing and started falling apart. And across the base, in the streets, on the wrecked plane, 7,000 people who had spent the night losing looked up and saw the sky stop, and something changed in the fighting immediately because somebody somewhere was hitting back. Whether Deep City survives now depends on you, Ding Yu said. Go, said Chen Dong. I won't die. I went out through a breach in the wall at a full run, and Xu Chang, who had finished his duel and was hunting the same altar from the other direction, saw an armored figure sprinting out of a broken base into the wilderness, and drew the obvious conclusion and followed me. He thought I was a cultist going to a rendezvous. On the way, a black armored king snake came up out of the ground in front of him, 18 meters, intermediate rank, the thing that had dragged me 3 kilometers and nearly crushed me to death. He killed it in one strike without breaking stride and thought of it as an ant. I want that on the record, because it is the most accurate description of the gap between us that I can give you. The cliff was southwest, over the sea, and there were 6 of them, and the altar was already lit. Black lightning was crawling across the array. The chant was going. 2 minutes, maybe less. I went through the guards like weather. First one's head came off in the opening pass, and then, and this is the thing I am proudest of in the whole of that night, I took all 4 remaining weapons out of 4 pairs of hands with a single horizontal sweep. Not the men, the weapons, then the men. The core chanter looked at the array, looked at me, and jumped down off the platform to buy the ritual 4 more seconds with his own body. I cut him in half in the air and kept walking. Then I hacked the altar apart, and 200 kilometers of blood-colored sky started to come down. Ha ha ha, I shouted, at an empty cliff over the sea, alone, at 4 in the morning, with pieces of a magic array falling apart above me. Dark Knight cult, you failed. You're all a bunch of damn lunatics. Somebody in the tree line started clapping. Not the slow, sarcastic kind. Real applause, genuinely impressed, and that is what made it so much worse. The ant-like person I met at junior sister Ruoxi's house back then, said Xu Chang, walking out of the dark in white armor, has grown to this extent in 3 months. I did not say anything. I was doing arithmetic, and the arithmetic was very bad. Then he told me why he was really there. There's nobody else around, he said. Is there going to be a better opportunity to kill you than this one? I tried the only thing available, which was his pride. Give me 3 years, I said. 5. Then fight me properly, at the same realm, in front of people, and find out. And he did not so much as blink. I have never feared your talent, he said. I'm not accepting your challenge because I find it a boring game. Then he said the part out loud, which I did not expect, and which I have never stopped being grateful for, because it made everything afterwards very simple. After you're dead, the credit for wiping out the Dark Knight cult's strike team, and for destroying the altar, and for saving Deep City, all of that is going to be mine. You'll get a footnote. You will at most be recorded as a guide. And then, in your next life, don't provoke anybody from my Hua family. The thrust came in at about 50,000 caddies. I slipped it by a hair on pure instinct, and it still opened the dragon's head carved into my chest plate. Then he punched me, casually. 45,000 caddies, thrown the way you'd swat something, and the dragon's head shattered like cake, and there was blood on the inside of my visor, and the whole world turned over, and I went off the cliff, 200 meters backwards, over the sea. Our eyes met on the way down. He was looking at me with the calm satisfaction of a man closing a file. I was looking at him with something else entirely. If I don't die today, I said, into a rushing wind that took most of it, this is going in my heart, and it stays there. I will repay you and your family tenfold, 100-fold. Then I hit the water and everything stopped. Here's what happened next, which I have reconstructed from what my body was doing when it started working again. 2 mutated dragonfish came for me almost immediately because there was blood in the water and I was unconscious in it. And before they got there, an underwater current took me. There is a whirlpool system under that cliff. It caught me and pulled me down and out at a speed I do not want to think about, into deep water, sideways, away. The 2 dragonfish, arriving at a smear of blood and no body, bit each other, which made more blood, which brought more of them. Shu Chang dove in and searched. He found a feeding frenzy and no corpse, and he drew the obvious conclusion. Then he climbed back up onto the cliff, and this is the single most professional thing I have ever heard of anybody doing. He took his own sword and recut the altar and recut the 6 bodies. All of them, every wound. So the saber marks were gone and the sword marks were his. Lin Kai, oh Lin Kai, he said, working. You're only fit to be a guide. Deep City paid for that night in full. The base fell completely. The beast came through the breaches and into the streets, and the law enforcement office and the city government did what those organizations do, which is their absolute best, which was not enough. Shu Chang went back and fought magnificently in public, in the middle of the city, in front of thousands, which was exactly the effect he wanted. And privately, he had already decided that the dead didn't matter, because they weren't Hua family, and as long as a few seeds came through, the rest was arithmetic. And then the cult's own bait turned on the city. Somewhere in the center, in a plaza, there was a vat of emperor-rank heartblood that had been used to walk 2 king-rank beasts inland. A general-rank beast found it and drank it. In 10 minutes, it went from 540 meters to 1,020 and became a new king-rank in the middle of a city and started eating. Communications came back at the Alliance Tower first, on the one station that reaches outside Deep City. Commander Gu emptied 2 cities into it, Chucheng and Fancheng, both bases, everything they had. 2 Grandmasters went ahead by air. 20,000 patrollers came overland behind them. The Grandmasters killed the new king rank thing and then swept the city from the north and the west, and 10 hours later the beasts were pushed back out through the southern wall and driven into the sea. The wall breached, the base destroyed, most of the city's Transcendent Alliance leadership dead or crippled, and Grandmaster Jiang Hu killed in action. A Grandmaster had not been killed in Hangxia in living memory. It went national inside 2 hours. In Lincheng, in a 50-square-meter apartment on the 6th floor of a building with no elevator, my father was cooking and my sister was at the table waiting for him. The television was showing the southern high wall of Deep City with a piece missing out of the middle of it. "Dad," she said, "come out and look. Something's happened in Deep City. My brother's there." He came out with a towel in his hands and stood and watched for about 8 seconds. Then he went and got his phone. "The number you have dialed is temporarily unavailable." He dialed it again. "The number you have dialed is temporarily unavailable." He dialed it 11 more times, standing up, and then he sat down on a kitchen chair with the phone still in his hand and stopped being able to hold it together in front of his daughter. "Dad doesn't know," he said. "Dad can't reach your brother's phone. Dad doesn't know." And my sister sat in her wheelchair and watched her father cry, and her grief found something to hold on to, and what it found was the Hua family. The whole room lifted. Every small object on every surface came up off the wood at once and hung there, shaking. Her eyes went a hard, brilliant blue, a color my father had seen once before in his life, on somebody else. "You deserve to die," she was saying. "You deserve to die 10,000 times." And then everything in the air shattered at once. She went out of the chair, and my father caught her on the way down. He carried her to the car, and on the way to the hospital, with one hand on the wheel, he called Chen Hao and said the only thing he had left. "I couldn't protect Yan back then, I couldn't protect Ah Yue, and now I can't protect my son either. Yan." That was the second time my father said my mother's name out loud in 18 years, and both times it happened while he thought nobody who mattered was listening. I woke up on a beach with a lizard the size of a car licking my armor. The dragon-slaying saber was still in my right hand. My fingers had not opened the entire time, which is apparently something bodies do. The armor is sealed, which is why I hadn't drowned. The current had taken me somewhere and dropped me, and the something was an island in the southern sea region, and the ribs Shu Chang had broken with a casual punch were still broken. I killed the lizard, climbed a mountain to get above the things that came for the noise, found a cave with a spring in it, drank until I couldn't, and sat still for 2 days. 4 marrow cleansings buy you a 2-day recovery from an injury that should take a fortnight. That is the entire reason I am alive to tell you any of this. Then I did the calendar. It was the 7th of August. The national practical test is the 2nd of September. 25 days. No signal. No rescue. Because Deep City was going to file me as dead within the week, and there is nothing more final in this world than a completed form, which meant that to get home, I was going to have to swim. Distance unknown, direction approximately known, ocean full of the things that make Deep City necessary, And I sat in that cave and thought about Xu Chang, and I want to share the conclusion because it kept me sane. He had to wait. That man could have killed me in Chen Hao's living room in June. He could have killed me on any street in Deep City. He waited 3 months for a cliff at 4 in the morning with nobody on it. Which means the Alliance's rules are real, and they are a weapon, and I can use them until I am strong enough not to need them. I went 4 days without eating, and then found 3 apples the size of dinner plates on a tree that had clearly been drinking spiritual energy for a decade, and considered the food question closed. Then I worked out what the island actually was. No people, no general rank, no king rank, endless intermediate and low-level beasts breeding into each other with nothing above them. It was a farm. Day 1, 358 beasts and 6 intermediate, all devoured. 5,320 circulations, which put me at 110,320 on the way to the 5th cleansing. And I kept the 6 intermediate corpses and fused them. Ding, 7-colored medicinal pill, 4,100 circulations in about 10 seconds, which is when I noticed something I should have noticed months earlier. The Patroller platform, which sells gene potions, armor, weapons, spatial artifacts, and forged identities, does not sell medicinal pills. Not expensive ones, not any. Nobody in Hanxia makes them. Whatever the infinite smelting system's first function actually is, it is not a thing this world has. So I made a note not to show anybody, ever, and I decided to stay on that island and push all the way to the limit of the second realm before I tried the water. 3 days later, at a state funeral broadcast to the entire country, Commander Gu Dingchao stood in front of a photograph of an old friend. "Farewell, Brother Yang," he said. "I will avenge your wife and your children. As long as that twin-headed azure dragon dares to show its face, I will skin it alive." Then he took Grandmaster Sun aside and refused flatly to accept the official story. "Whose account is this?" he said. "The Hua family. Xu Chang. I think he was knocked off a cliff by Xu Chang himself. There was no evidence, so there was no move to be made against the Hua family, and Commander Gu did not pretend otherwise. Instead, he ordered a search. Quietly, the islands of the southern sea region, one at a time. He lent 10 Pifu realm men to it and insisted on total secrecy, not from the Hua family, but from the Dark Knight cult, because the value of a dead Lin Kai to them was 0, and the value of a live one was a contract. "I can feel it," he said. "Lin Kai isn't dead. That boy has enormous fortune on him, and he is going to matter in what's coming for the human race. Send the death notice to the family on schedule," he added, "exactly as normal. I don't want anyone noticing anything. Somewhere that nobody has ever found." 3 figures in black robes and crimson masks were reviewing a quarter. The Sect Master, who runs Hanxia. Left Dharma King Mauritian, Europe. Right Dharma King Jietian, the Americas. Deep City had failed. But Mauritian had blood sacrificed a European city of 4 million that same week, and Jietian had taken an American one of 1.2 million, and the Sect Master had been quietly turning the Transcendent Alliance leadership of Sakura for a year and a half. And he named the 3 things he wanted next. The Hanxia Practical Combat Test, the geniuses who come out of it hunted individually as they emerge, and above all, the Crimson Blood Ruins in the Great Forest, 3 years in preparation, aimed at killing an entire generation of Academy students in one place. Deep City decorated its saviors 11 days later. Its new guardian was a Grandmaster named Gao Qiqi, about 35, with a face like a closed door. Xu Chang, medal. Chen Dong, medal and promotion to captain of the patrol brigade. Ding Yu, medal, and a 4th recipient carried onto the stage in a frame. Xu Chang had not been able to erase the first altar from the record because 2 squad captains had walked into that hall and seen it, and he was extremely quiet about it all afternoon. Gao Qiqi laid the silver star on the glass of the photograph. "Heaven envies genius," she said. "If you had lived, you would certainly have become one of the great heroes of Hanxia." 100,000 merit points to each recipient, and Chen Dong and Ding Yu did not believe one word of Xu Chang's account for one specific reason. They had watched me leave that hall, and I had been completely confident, so the 2 of them wrote everything into their formal report to the Alliance. Everything, including the devouring physique, not to expose me, to put a shape in the record that somebody upstairs might trip over. Xu Chang gave a speech on national television that was generous to the point of being moving about the young patroller who had led him to the altar and paid for it with his life. Then he went back to his room and said, to a mirror, "Lin Kai, I really should thank you. I am the son of destiny. You're a stepping stone." And 2 men in black suits knocked on a door on the 6th floor of a building with no elevator in Lincheng. "Lin Kai's father," one of them said. "Please accept our condolences." My father took the certificate in both hands and could not hold his arms up. My sister took it out of his hands, read it, and tore it into pieces. Then she made a sound that the neighbors 2 floors down still remember. I spent the next 10 days living like a wild man. Fire on a beach, meat on a stick, plate-sized apples, washing in the sea, 3 to 400 beasts a day, every day, which came to about 8,000 circulations daily, and a level of personal hygiene I would rather not describe. On the 10th day, I fused a pill out of 7 intermediate beasts and swallowed it, and it carried me through 200,000 circulations, and my 5th marrow cleansing took me, the 5th, which most Transcendents cannot reach, and which most Transcendents cannot even detect the existence of, because you need 362 open Acupoints to feel that there is a door there at all. The stream I'd been listening to inside myself since the first realm stopped being a stream. It became a river, loud enough that in quiet moments I could hear it. 3,000 caddies to 3,500. Ding. Limit body refining realm. The overflow bought me my first 5 spiritual energy bone temperings, which is the currency of the 3rd realm, of which you need 100,000, and I picked up a new capability that changed everything about how I fight. I could now attack while executing the movement technique. Before that, the technique ate every scrap of ki I had, so I moved or I struck. From then on, I could do both in the same motion, which is what all those people meant when they said my footwork was the frightening part. Next morning, I washed the armor properly for the first time since the cliff. The water around me went black-red. 10 sea beasts came onto that beach inside 2 minutes. I killed all 10 in about 20 seconds and not one of them touched me, and I stood there afterwards feeling extremely pleased with myself. Then I checked the numbers and stopped feeling pleased. Devouring a low-level beast used to give me 10 to 20 circulations. Now it gave 2 to 3 bone temperings. I needed 100,000. That was the day I finally understood why body-tempering realm men sit at the 2nd realm for 20 and 30 years and then die there. It isn't laziness and it isn't lack of talent. It's that the resource cost goes up faster than any human being's income, and past a certain point, cheap potions stop working entirely because they're below the potency threshold your body will even notice. Damn it, I said, to an ocean. The pressure of cultivation is immense. Meanwhile, 15 Pifu realm Transcendents were combing the southern sea region island by island on Grandmaster Sun's authority, and the estimate on that search was 2 to 3 months at best and 6 at worst. 3 people in Hangxia knew it was happening: Commander Gu, Grandmaster Sun, and the 15 men doing it. Deep City's own new Grandmaster was not told. 20 more days on that island. By the end, I was killing 600 or 700 beasts a day, which is an amount of violence that stops being interesting and becomes a job. 20,321 bone temperings, 3,600 caddies. The 28th of August, 5 days to the exam, an ocean in the way, and a family who had been handed a piece of paper. I decided to swim. Dawn, tied over my boots, the black armor with gold flecks on it from a month of salt. I walked into the sea and started north. My legs beat faster than a ship's screw, and because I am small, and because I stayed under, I made almost no noise at all, which turned out to be the only reason this story has an ending. 2 hours out, the sea in front of me boiled. 2 enormous green dragon heads came up out of the water, and behind them wings that were thousands of meters across, and the whole thing kept coming up, and I stopped swimming. Emperor rank. Several times the size of the octopus that had turned Deep City's wall into dust with a shoulder. I sank. I hung in the water without moving a single muscle, and it played in the sky above me for a while, genuinely played, the way a bird does, and the swell it made pushed me a long way off course, and I let it, because moving was death. Then it went back under. I can hold my breath for 8 minutes now. I used about 7.5 of them waiting, and then I ran. Somewhere in the second half, a golden spearfish came at me head-on with a snout like a lance. I did not stop. I killed it in the pass and kept swimming, because blood in open water is a sentence, and the only appeal is distance. Behind me, the corpse started a feeding riot. And then something 700 meters long came up out of the deep and ate the entire riot. Good thing I was fast, I said, to nobody, underwater, at about 40 kilometers an hour. I navigated by the currents and by the stars when I could surface, which was not often. 27 hours, several hundred nautical miles. At 9 the next morning, I saw land, and it was the coastline south of Deep City, and behind it there was a new southern high wall going up where the old one used to be. I came out of the tree line about a kilometer from a checkpoint, on foot, in black armor, and somebody up there was watching through binoculars. Chendong came down the road at a run. He stopped about 6 meters away. Is it really you, Lin Kai? I opened the helmet. I had a month of beard and hair, and I looked, by his account, like something the forest had produced on its own. Captain Bing, I said, we fought Zhou An together in a basement. And you've already forgotten me. He took me inside the line and sat me down and asked, carefully, what had happened at the cliff. I was knocked off it by Xu Chang, I said. He did not look surprised. That was the thing. He looked like a man having a suspicion confirmed and hating it. No evidence, he said. No witnesses. Outside camera range. None of it, I agreed. Then be patient, he said. Grow first. Don't say that name out loud for a few years. Since I can't avoid him, I said, why should I? He also told me 2 other things. The first was that my 100,000 merit point commendation had been awarded to a photograph of me on a stage in front of the entire city. The second was that the payment to my family had been blocked at Alliance headquarters for reasons nobody in Deep City could explain, and that the block had come from very high up. I did not understand that one at all at the time. Commander Gu was keeping his search quiet, and a large sum of money arriving at a dead boy's family is exactly the sort of thing that gets noticed. Patroller Lin Kai, I said at the counter. Here to process my departure. Wu Yan looked up and went down about 4 centimeters in her chair. The last time she had seen that name, it had been on a memorial portrait being carried across a stage. Legendary, she said eventually, reading 3 months of file. Truly legendary. They restored my account. 191,123 merit points, about 570 million yuan, sitting on a phone, belonging to a boy who 4 months earlier had been counting out change for a bus. The first thing I bought with it was a delusion breaker gene potion, 40,500 points, 135 million yuan, and she gave me 10% off because of the file. It doesn't grow legs. Nothing that costs 135 million grows legs. It makes a body genuinely structurally sturdier, and it is the single best thing money can buy for someone who has not been able to walk in 3 years. The second thing I did was call my father. He was standing in his own fruit shop, and his hair had gone white in the front, and the screen on his phone said, "Son." He answered it. "Hello," he said. "May I ask who this is?" "Dad," I said. "Don't you recognize me?" There was a pause that went on for a while. You're Lin Kai?" "Yes," I said. "It's me." I have never heard grief come out of a person that fast. It went out of him in one breath, like air out of a bag. Then a customer asked for 2 caddies of bananas, and he served her beaming, and could not have told you afterwards what he charged. I drove north in a Tyrannosaurus off-road vehicle at 100 kilometers an hour over broken highway for 3 days and 3 nights. The 2nd of September. Lincheng's southern wall. And at the gates of Lincheng No. 1 High School there were 4 people waiting. My father, my sister in her chair, Uncle Chen, and Aunt Lin. I got out of the car in blood-stained black armor with a 135-centimeter saber on my back and a hole in my chest plate where a dragon's head used to be, and Chen Hao, who is himself a transcendent, said quietly to my father, "That's a very fierce feeling." Ayue tried to refuse the potion. "Brother, it'll be wasted on me. Sell it. Use it for yourself." And Uncle Chen picked up the case out of politeness, read the label, and had to sit down on the wall. 135 million, he said. "I've been saving toward one of these for 11 years. When," my father said, to nobody in particular, "did this kid get so rich?" They asked about the chest plate. I told them a beast had done it and that I'd been careless, and I said it the way you say something that isn't important, and both of them believed me, and I would do it again. The class had gathered to see off Manhwa and Wang Chang for the practical test. Nobody had gathered to see off a dead boy. I got about a meter into the room. Manhwa came over the top of 2 desks and hugged me in front of 40 people and started crying so hard she couldn't get the words in order. "I thought you were dead," she was saying. "I called you so many times. So many times." The room, the teacher included, stared. Wang Chang looked at me for a while and then quietly stopped competing with me, right there, without saying anything about it, which I thought was fairly graceful. Qin Fen's face performed an entire arc in about 2 seconds and arrived at delighted, and then the detail that actually reset that room. I put the saber down on a desk and the desk went over. Mei Hua picked it up with both hands, using everything she had, and got it about waist high. 500 jin, she said, staring at it. That's more than most chi-sensing transcendents can carry across a room. Wang Qiang, who had spent the same 3 months training with the best coaching his family's money could buy, had come out at 583 caddies, and he said so, honestly, in front of everyone, which took nerve. "Then what's your current strength?" he asked. "It's a secret," I said. "You'll find out after the exam." Captain Zhou Bing of Lincheng Base ran the briefing. Practical test rules. 1 point per low-level beast, 10 per intermediate, 14 days. You may bring combat equipment and no food. You may not fight other students. You sign a life and death waiver on the way to the helicopter. 6 examination zones nationally, scored separately, and a national ranking across all 6. I looked at that last line for slightly too long, because a national ranking has no function inside the exam at all. It doesn't get you into an academy. Zones do that. A national ranking is a scouting list. Somebody built that so that somebody else could read it. Then I put the dragon slaying set in for an urgent C-grade repair, 1,000 merit points, 3 million yuan, and watched 4 technicians work on it in complete silence. C-grade equipment does not come into a municipal repair bay. It certainly does not come in on a high school student who says he's just back from the deep city front line. The whole country watches the practical test. Peak traffic on the Alliance website that year came close to 1 billion concurrent viewers, which is about a third of Hangxia sitting down at the same time. 3rd examination zone. 2,500 students from more than 40 cities listed by strength test score. First, Shugang, 1,500 Jin, Donghai Hua family. Second, Chushuan, 1,200. Third, Chen Xin, 1,050. Fourth, Wang Honghu, 800. Fifth, Zhou Kai, 780. Sixth, Lin Kai, 700. The only name in the top 6 with no family attached to it. Nationally, the favorite was in Zone 1. Wei Yun of the Yanjing Huang family, who had put 2,500 Jin into the strength machine and had since broken through to the third realm at 3,850. In a tower in Yanjing, a woman was watching the same page. She was 39 and looked about 20. She was the prospective head of the Yanjing Huang family, half a step from a realm above Transcendent, and everyone who worked for her described her the same way, which was cold. Her own father was the current patriarch, and he kept her on a very short leash, and she had let him for 12 years for a reason. She checked on the family prodigy in Zone 1. Then, out of nothing but idleness, she opened Zone 3, Lin Cheng, and stopped at the 6th avatar, Lin Kai. Lin Kai, is that him? Age 17, Lin Cheng, number 1 high school. Her mental energy came off her hard enough that the entire office floor felt it, and 3 people stood up at their desks. She had her secretary run a quiet background check, and the document came back inside 20 minutes, and it was 4 lines long. Father, Lin Wei, fruit retailer. Sister, Lin Yue, disabled. A district official named Chen Hao, who had been quietly keeping that family afloat for 11 years. She read 4 lines of text in a glass office at the top of a tower and cried until she had to send her secretary out of the room. The younger members of the Huang family have a rumor they half believe about the vice patriarch, about a man from nowhere and 2 children and a patriarch who ended it by force. Every word of it is true. She did not move that day. She did not send anyone. Because the last time she had moved too early, a 5-year-old girl had lost the use of her legs in the street to a car that did not stop, as a message to her mother. So she sat in her office and waited, the way she had waited for 12 years, and watched a helicopter drop her son into the wilderness on a live feed with 1 billion other people. 5 students to a helicopter and 2 drones each, 1 relay, 1 camera. The borders of the zone are patrolled by Transcendents the whole fortnight, Grandmasters on the Futuo mountain range side, to keep anything general rank or above from wandering in and turning an examination into a massacre. Manhwa was on my aircraft at 591 Jin, and about 4 minutes before her drop she admitted quietly that she was frightened of being alone out there for 14 days. So I gave her everything I had. Scout towns from the edge, never walk into the middle. Don't fight packs, lure them and take them in 3s. Find water before you find anything else. Learn to make a fire tonight, not on day 4 when you need it. Cut meat off whatever you kill, because you'll be hungry by day 3, and every other student out there will still be pretending they won't be, and if it comes to it, beast blood will keep you alive. She wrote none of it down and remembered all of it. I went out at 10:12 in the morning onto empty ground with a score of 0 and started walking toward a dead town. In my apartment in Lincheng, there were 4 people around a television. In a tower in Yanjing, there was a 5th, watching alone, seeing her son's face for the first time in 12 years. And in a building in the capital, Commander Gu Ding Chao had cleared his afternoon. A 7-meter spirit-colored tiger came at me out of a side street at a full run. I stood still. 1 billion people watched a 17-year-old stand completely motionless while an intermediate beast closed to 20 meters, then 10, then 5, and the chat feed on that stream went from confusion to genuine screaming. At about half a meter, I moved. The tiger went past me and did not stop because it was already dead, and almost nobody in the country saw the cut. Wei Jing, in her office, put my strength at a veteran 2nd realm, around 2,000 caddies. Commander Gu, in his, said body tempering limit, 3,500 at least. He was right. I did not pocket the corpse. Far too many cameras. Deeper in, I found a 15-meter python and 3 silver wolves and killed all 4 inside 10 seconds. And then the blood in the street called the town. 1 to 200 beasts came out of the buildings at me, including 2 intermediate, and the chat feed begged me to run. I went further in. That was the point at which my mother, in her tower, sat forward and said something out loud. That's a movement technique skill. My child comprehended a movement technique skill on his own, before the 4th realm. There are grandmasters who never learn one. There are academies where the technique is taught over 2 years to students who already have the realm for it. I had built mine out of a dead bird's memory of how to be in a place I was not, on a road outside Lianfeng town, at 100 acupoints, because things kept trying to bite me. Although the movement technique is crude, said Commander Gu, mildly, watching, it's still very good. Then the Azure Black Ox came through the pack, walking over its own kind, and the Snow King Giant Tiger came in from the other side. 4 cuts, 5 cuts, 165 beasts in 4 minutes, in a street you could not see the road surface of. 289 points, 4th in the zone, 22nd nationally. Because my drop point was thin, and because points are not a measure of what you can do, They are a measure of what walked past you. Manhwa, meanwhile, was using my whole brief line by line. She split a wolf pack the way I'd told her and took them 3 at a time, and by day 2, while a billion people were watching other students on other feeds discover thirst on camera, she had water bottles, a fire, and meat roasting on a stick. I have never been prouder of anything I've said out loud. And in a town full of 400 corpses, I sat down and roasted unsalted meat with an expression that my mother later described to me, years afterwards, and which I did not know I had been making. How much suffering, she said, does a child have to go through to sit in a place like that with no expression on his face at all? Not even a tremor. Day 2, third, day 7, second in the zone, third, nationally. And I could not catch Shugang, and everybody watching knew exactly why. His drop point was an entire abandoned city, not a town, a city, arranged and paid for by the Hua family, with a beast population 2 orders of magnitude above mine, and he stayed 250 points ahead of me for the whole fortnight while visibly fighting worse than I did. The country noticed. The biggest thread on the exam forum that year was titled, "Who is stronger, Shugang or Lin Kai?" and it ran to 40,000 replies, and one whole camp in it argued sincerely that luck is a form of strength, which it is. That's the annoying part. Somewhere else entirely, 3 masks were choosing a target. Zone 1 is too well defended, said the sect master. Zone 2 smells like a trap. The third examination zone, 2,500 candidates, the largest in the country, the national number 2 and number 3 both in it, and a dark horse nobody could have predicted, which means the alliance did not wait its defenses there. And then he named me, and he did it in the tone of a man mentioning a stain. The blood sacrifice we spent 5 years preparing in Deep City was largely ruined by this kid. His deacons wanted a dedicated team sent for me specifically. He waved it off. He's just a bone-forging realm transcendent, he said, and he assigned 8 purple-robed deacons to the third examination zone with orders to create a major incident. Day 13. 6,713 points, 165 behind Shugang, 33,623 bone temperings, 3,672 caddies. And running northwest toward the Futuo mountain range, I came over a rise and saw skyscrapers on the horizon with vines growing out of them. An abandoned city. I went in expecting the best hunting ground of my life, and instead I found corpses. Not fresh ones, decaying ones, in the streets, in stages, going back about a fortnight. Somebody had been farming that city for 13 days, so I did what I would have done in a dead town outside Deep City, which is track the freshness of the kills inward, and about 40 minutes later, I heard fighting and got up on a wall and watched. A man in dark green armor with a heavenly halberd working through 40 beasts at once, competently. Veteran body tempering, around 2,500 caddies, strong, and more than 1,000 caddies below me. Could this be Shugang's test location? I said to a drone. Come out, he shouted without turning around. Lin Kai, I said, from the wall. Oh, he said, so it's you, chasing me this whole time like a dog. You're actually quite lucky you didn't die. The great hero of Deep City. And then, on a national live stream, with 1 billion people watching, he repeated his family's official version of my death, that the Dark Knight cult had knocked me off the cliff. The truth Shu Chang told all of you wasn't that, was it? I said. I, Lin Kai, am going to remember this grudge. In front of the Hua family, he said, you're an ant, so I spread my arms. I'm standing right here, I said. Come and kill me. Nobody's stopping you. I was praying he would do it. 1 saber, 2,500 against 3,672 in an examination where students are forbidden to fight each other and every single thing that happens is somebody else's fault. He looked at me for 4 or 5 seconds, and then he didn't. The rules, the cameras, and I think, a small honest voice telling him he would lose. So he settled for a speech about Heavenly Saint Academy, where his cousin is a king, and where I would find out what the Hua family really is. What kind of trash are you, he finished, thinking you can make me leave with 1 sentence. I want first place too. If you're not convinced, suck it up. And that was the moment the entire country learned that Lin Kai has a blood feud with the Hua family, including one viewer in a tower in Yanjing who watched her son be threatened on television by a great family and said very quietly to an empty office, Hua family, then don't blame me for playing along with you. While the 2 of us were racing each other through a dead city, the Dark Knight cult hit the cordon. 5 Grandmasters and 3 Pifu Realm Transcendents against the patrol line holding the third zone's borders. At the southeast corner of the Futuo mountain range, a crimson sword key came out of nowhere at Grandmaster's son, and he barely got it parried. The man who threw it was an old enemy of his named Yang Qihong, who had gone into seclusion 5 years earlier and had come out of it a Grandmaster about a month before, and whose very first action was to shoot down the nearest drone so that the cameras in that sector went dark. 5 Grandmasters, said Grandmaster's son to himself, which is enough to hold a cordon shut. It is also enough to hold a cordon open. Sun Jian had been a Grandmaster for 6 years, and he pinned Yang Qihong with a sword aura like a needle, a thing so thin it looks like nothing, which shattered a 200-meter crescent of red sword ki coming the other way. But 4 Alliance Grandmasters were pinned by 5 Cult Grandmasters, which left the 5th one free, and he was not fighting anybody. He was inside the Fuchuo mountain range with room to work, hitting the deep forest with distant strikes and walking backwards, hurting. Over 4.5 hours, he drove more than 100,000 vicious beasts southeast across the border into the examination zone, spread along a frontier that long it wasn't a wave. It was a tide, thin and everywhere, moving across the whole 3rd zone at once, and the abandoned city sat close to that border. I was in the middle of a fight when I turned around and saw a street fill up. Then the next street. Then all of them. How is this possible, I said. That many? 10 times what 3 or 4 frontline squads used to hold on a bad day coming into a city with 2 students in it, so I ran. And about 400 meters into running, a thought arrived, fully formed, and I want to be completely honest with you about it because I have never once pretended otherwise. Shu Gang is in this city too. There are exactly 2 ways to take first place in an examination zone: outscore the man in front of you, or have him die. Such a good opportunity, I said out loud, at a dead sprint, on a live national broadcast. If I don't take it, that would truly be foolish. Shu Gang, prepare to die. Then I turned around and ran toward the sound of him fighting, and I brought the horde with me. He was already boxed in by 60-odd beasts when I came around the corner, and he could not break out, and he had been trying for a while. I appeared at the edge of the ring, and the entire country, including, I found out later, his own parents, watching in Donghai, assumed they were about to see a rescue. He shouted his terms at me across a street. Help me, and afterwards you submit to my cousin at Heavenly Saint Academy, and you serve my Hua family, and everything before this is forgiven. That idiot, I thought, save you. And then pledge allegiance to Shu Cheng. Why don't you all just die? I ran straight at the ring, slipped 3 beasts on the way in with the movement technique, and accelerated out the other side, and the 100+ beasts behind me did not follow me, because there was a louder, larger, slower target standing in the middle, and beasts are not sentimental. The ring went from 60 to more than 200 in about 11 seconds, and the last gap in it closed. Lin Kai, he was screaming behind me. May you die a terrible death. I curse you to die with nowhere to be buried. I curse your entire family to perish. At Heavenly Saint Academy, Shu Chang had opened the leaderboard about 90 seconds earlier and discovered, from a name in 2nd place, that I was alive. He was still processing that when he watched me bury his cousin. Lin Kai, he said, I originally wanted to give you a chance. I was being overly sentimental. There will be a day, and I will make your life worse than death. 2 more hordes reached that street, somewhere past 2,000 beasts. It took about 10 minutes. I did not watch, and I am not going to describe it. A Tiger-type intermediate got through the halberd, and after that there was nothing left to recover, and his drone kept filming because nobody had told it to stop. The first-ranked student of an examination zone had never died in the history of the practical test. His name went red on every counter in the zone, his score voided, and I was first. Headquarters ordered every student in the 3rd zone evacuated and issued a shelter directive. I got the alert on my wrist and laughed because it was genuinely funny, in the way that things are funny at the exact moment they stop being survivable. 3 hordes were converging on me, front, left, and right, roughly double what had been chasing me an hour before. And behind me were the 2 that had just finished in that street. Ha 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 ha, said Shu Cheng at a screen, 400 kilometers away. Retribution. Truly, retribution. I picked the gap on the front right and went at about 100 meters a second, and I nearly made it. A 2-tailed white fox came at me, and I put 5,618 caddies through its brow without breaking stride, cut an azure black ox in half in passing, opened a red-eyed spirit cat. And I was 1 step too slow. 3 more intermediates came down into the gap ahead of me, one of them a veteran, and by the time I'd been forced back off them, 6 more had sealed the front, ringed, which left exactly one option, and it was the option I have always had: kill all of them or be eaten. The 2 worst things in that ring were both veteran mid-level fierce beasts, which is a category most bone-forging realm transcendents are advised to run from. A 12-meter snow tiger with a mark on its brow that the guidebooks call a king, and a 15-meter gray hunter crocodile. I went at the tiger first, and I did not go for anything important. Legs, then the tail, then the legs again. 6,242 caddies a swing, methodically, 1 joint at a time, taking away its ability to close distance while it screamed at me. Then the crocodile charged, and I did not dodge away from it. I dodged so that it arrived exactly where the tiger was. It hit the tiger instead of me and tore a 3-meter wound down its back, and after that the two of them were entirely each other's problem, and the whole country watched a boy stand back and let two apex predators discover each other. I finished the tiger's legs while it was busy. I'm not going to describe what happened to it after that. 1 billion people watched it with their hands over their mouths, and there is no reason for me to put it into words. Then the crocodile, all 4 legs, in order, the same way. Then up onto its back, to the nape, which is the one place on a crocodile that its own architecture cannot reach. 2 cuts, spine and artery, 2 veterans in about 5 minutes, and then the actual work started. Roughly 100 intermediates and more than 2,000 low-level beasts in a ring in a dead city on live television. And 40 minutes into that, the second horde arrived, the one from the street, the one that had been busy, drawn by the smell of everything I was doing. Another 2,000. Every single person watching arrived at the same prediction at the same time, and they were all right, and I want to list them because it matters. Chen Ruoxi, at Heavenly Saint Academy, he'll run out of stamina. Shu Cheng, cheerfully, he'll run out of stamina. 40,000 people on a forum, he will run out of stamina and be eaten, and it is going to happen on camera. And my mother, in a tower in Yanjing, with her hands flat on a desk, watching her son surrounded, thinking the same thing and unable to do a single thing about it. I did not run out of stamina. At hour 4, I was still at about 40%, and the reason is a thing that nobody watching could see and that I had never explained to anybody. 2 of them, actually. The limit body refining realm has an endurance that does not belong to its rank, because 5 marrow cleansings buy you a body that simply does not accumulate fatigue at the normal rate. And every single beast I killed gave a little back. Not much, a fraction of what I spent. But the devouring art was quietly refunding me all afternoon, 4,000 times, while 1 billion people watched a boy get slower and slower in their heads and faster on their screens. 4.5 hours, more than 4,000 beasts. The last one alive was a 3-flower spirit cat, a veteran, clever, and it stood about 30 meters away at the edge of the corpses and looked at me for a long moment. Then it turned around and left. I stood in the middle of 2 kilometers of a dead city that had gone red from wall to wall, and the live chat, which had been producing about 400 messages a second for 4 hours, went completely silent for about 11 seconds. Then somebody wrote, "If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would never believe this was real." 12,623 points. First in the zone by 6,800, and first in all of Hangxia, past Wei Yun of the Yanjing Huang family, who was 3,850 caddies and had a whole clan behind him, 45,610 bone temperings, 3,730 caddies. In an office at the top of a tower, my mother was doing arithmetic she did not like. She could not make the stamina work, not at bone forging, not at any resource level she could imagine, and then she got there, the way she gets to everything. Could it be the limit body refining realm? Which meant he had also gone through the chi sensing limit before it. 2 limit realms stacked, back to back, in a boy with no family, no sponsor, no academy, and no money. The resource cost of that is not large. It is grotesque. So, she said out loud, to the window, where did my child get the resources? There was exactly one other limit transcendent in Hangxia, and she had met him twice. And at Heavenly Saint Academy, Chen Ruoxi sat in front of a screen and thought about a delivery van with a fruit sticker on the door, and a boy telling her that a fish is not necessarily confined to a small stream, and could not make that boy and the man on her screen be the same person. Yang Qihong was retreating. He had come out of 5 years of seclusion as a fresh Grandmaster, thrown his best at Sun Jian, and lost, and he was leaving the way you leave when you have miscalculated in public. And on his way out, he passed over a city with 3,000 or 4,000 corpses in it, all killed by one saber, by one person, in an afternoon. He stopped in the air. Because he had just been reminded of something every Grandmaster knows, which is that prodigies are only cheap to kill for a very short window, and the window closes. Grandmaster Sun understood the moment it happened and burned his own life force to close the distance, which is not a thing you do for a stranger. And Yang Qihong, watching him come, calculated that he had time for exactly one move. From 500 meters up, Scarlet Evil Frenzied Kill. A crescent of red 200 meters across, and the buildings underneath it came apart before it arrived. Grandmaster Sun got a counter-strike out, and Yang Qihong threw a parry away to slow it, deliberately, trading a beat he could afford for a beat I could not. My speed collapsed, not from a wound, from the pressure alone. A Grandmaster's killing intent arriving on you is a physical thing, and it takes your legs. It's over, I thought. And then time stopped. I don't know how else to say it. Everything held still, and my whole life went past me in the way people describe, and I watched all of it and found it fairly short. And then the rest arrived, every life I had ever eaten. The golden-winged great pang from a wet hatchling in a stone nest, hunted and frightened, all the way up to a shadow that made a city look at the sky. A black-winged wolf's entire life, which was 11 months long and consisted almost entirely of being afraid and being hungry. A crystal shrimps, a black-armored king snakes in the dark, under sand for 60 years. And Joans, a young man out of an academy who had been good at his job and had it taken apart by people scheming above him, and who had found the Dark Knight cult at exactly the wrong hour of exactly the wrong week. Thousands of lives going past at once, and out of every single one of them, from a bird to a wolf to a traitor, there was one identical thing at the bottom. Not one of them was trying not to die. All of them were trying to live. Every single one. That is not the same sentence, and the difference is the whole of it. I can't die here, I thought. My road in this life isn't finished. And my eyes filled with 7-colored light. Every beast memory I had been carrying unassimilated for 4 months fused at once, all of it, and I did something that is supposed to require the third realm. I changed the frequency of my own chi circulation, and then I moved, a black afterimage, 1,000 meters in 1 second, 5 times faster than anything I had ever produced, out of the blast radius. The sword QI cratered 300 meters of that city. The shockwave caught me anyway, picked me up like a coat, threw me 500 meters, and put me into a wall. Almost nobody saw it. The cameras had blurred, the drones were tumbling in the pressure wave, and what a billion people got was a red crescent, a city coming apart, and no Lin Kai anywhere on the feed. The chat wrote my obituary in about 4 seconds. Shugang's relatives celebrated on a family group chat that later leaked. And in a glass office in Yanjing, a woman who had waited 12 years to speak to her son broke completely and then stopped crying and started making a list. And on the list were the Dark Knight cult, 2 named Grandmasters, and her own father. Then somebody with sharp eyes spotted a shape slumped at the base of a wall in the corner of frame. Yang Qihong looked back over his shoulder from 4 kilometers away and saw a 17-year-old standing up. "Am I a fake Grandmaster?" he said. Then, out loud to himself, a sentence I would pay money to have heard in person. When I report back, I absolutely cannot mention this. My reputation would never recover. He memorized my face on the way out. "As expected," said Grandmaster's son, entirely delighted, "of somebody Commander Gu thinks highly of. That 1 second had cost me the last 30% of everything I had. I could not pull my own saber out of the ground. I got a hand on it and went down onto one knee doing it, on camera. And both drones caught it, and the whole country worked out at the same moment that in that condition, a single low-level beast could have finished me. I picked a 28-story ruin about 600 meters away and started dragging myself toward it. At Heavenly Saint Academy, Chen Ruoxi had a visitor. Xu Chang came to see her about the exam, and he was careful about it, and he circled Lin Kai for a while before landing. "Lin Kai killed members of the Hua family," he said. "My family will settle that account. I'd suggest you keep your distance." She did not move a single muscle in her face. "He is him," she said, "and I am me." Then he changed the subject to a king-rank hunting mission he'd been offered, and she made the right noises, and he left satisfied. I got about 400 meters toward the ruin before I heard rotors. Manhwa was leaning out of the door of that helicopter waving with both arms before it had even finished turning. Wang Qiang, who had finished the fortnight on 2,732 points against my 12,623, said nothing at all and helped haul the ladder. I climbed it slowly. It took me a while. Then I sat down in a seat and answered questions with about 4 words each because that was the budget I had left. What happened? "I was surrounded by a beast horde," I said. "Then I was ambushed by a Grandmaster." "How many beasts?" "Over 4,000, I guess." "What's your base strength now?" "Over 3,600. And Mei Hua sat there and remembered a boy at 200 and something caddies cracking a tree outside the school gate about 4 months earlier. Wei Yun finished the fortnight on 12,603 points, 20 short. And instead of complaining about drop points, which he would have been entitled to do, he closed the page and marked me down as his rival for Heavenly Saint Academy, which I respected then and respect now. Then the clips escaped. They got off the Alliance site and onto the ordinary internet, and there were 2 of them, and the second one is the one that did it. The 4,000 Beast Afternoon, which people watched at double speed because otherwise it is 4.5 hours long, and 1 second of footage in which a boy in black armor becomes a black smear and outruns a Grandmaster's sword. Front pages, edits, 100 million memes. About a third of the population of Hangxia, somebody told me later, could now recognize your name. And my honest reaction to that was not pleasure, because fame is a shield against the Hua family, who cannot quietly disappear somebody a third of the country can identify, and fame is a target painted on your back for the Dark Knight cult, who do not care about any of that and never have. That evening, I watched every recording of Wei Yun's fortnight, and he watched every recording of mine, and I have always found that funny. My honest verdict on myself: he is stronger than me in raw force. We are level on battlefield control. He is nowhere near me on evasion. Call it 60 to 40 in my favor, which is not enough. 60-40 is a coin that lands wrong 2 times in 5. His verdict on me, which I read later. Strong, truly strong. You're worthy of being my opponent. Don't disappoint me. So I spent 420 million yuan on 2 bottles of Fei Hong Jin potion and went home to sit down. And I set the next target out loud, in a car, to nobody. Song Zhen. That old dog buried what happened to my sister, threatened my father in a stairwell, put me in a cell, sentenced me to a front line, and then spent 300 million yuan of his own money trying to have me killed outside a hospital. I'm going to take his whole family apart. There are 2 more names on that list after him. They can wait. He can't. In a villa called Lanyu Pavilion in Yanjing, the patriarch of the Huang family was watching my entire examination at 10 times speed. Wei Chao. 60-something, and he looks 35, which is what a realm above Transcendent does to a face. At the end of it, he closed his hand on the dragon-carved armrest of his chair and it came apart into powder. I'm going to tell you his side because I only learned it much later and because it explains everything. My mother awakened mental energy before she reached the first realm. Mental energy that could touch things and change them. A talent that is supposed to belong exclusively to the 10th realm, showing up in a girl who was not yet a transcendent at all. They groomed her as the heir from the age of 11. At 20, she traveled. In a border city, she met a base patroller named Lin Wei, and she came home pregnant. Her father offered her every compromise a patriarch can offer. Give the child to the family and keep your name clean. Marry properly, and the boy can be provided for quietly. Any arrangement at all, except the one she wanted. She refused every version, for years, and then had a second child. By then the rest of the family had started laughing at him, and there were moves being made to remove him. So he issued an ultimatum, and it was very simple. Come back and never see any of them again, or I will kill Lin Kai and Lin Yue. She came back. She went and looked at us twice, in 12 years, from a distance. After the second time, a car hit a 5-year-old girl in the street and broke both her legs and did not stop. She went into her father's hall and had to be restrained and was locked in a confinement room for 3 months. And she has hated him, without interruption, from that day, while quietly becoming strong enough that she is now a single step behind him and closing. He does not regret it. That is the whole thing about that man. He cannot be the one who was wrong. Everything he has done since is in service of not being the one who was wrong. And if I rise, then he was wrong. And so I cannot be allowed to rise. You want to make something of yourself? He said, to a screen. Not a chance. I'll make sure you're lost in the crowd at Heavenly Saint Academy. His instructions were specific. Funnel family resources into Wei Yun until he can beat me publicly. Then have the Huang students at the academy grind me down over and over in front of people until my Dao heart cracks and I stop advancing and the school removes me for failing to progress. And keep all of this from Lingerer. That is what he calls my mother. The same night, my mother read the complete file on my last 4 months. All of it. The golden-winged Great Peng, a thug in an alley, her son's father taped to a chair in a coking plant, the mercenaries, Deep City, the wall coming down, the blood sacrifice, the altar, the sewer, and the cliff. When she finished it, she turned it to powder with her mind, all of it, so that no one else in that building would ever read a page. Her conclusion took about 90 seconds, and it was exactly correct. Xu Chang threw her son off that cliff, and half of the disasters in that file trace back to the same family. Hua family, she said. You've decided to challenge my son. Then this old lady will challenge you too. She did not start a war between houses. She couldn't. The alliance won't permit it, and the Zhangtian bridge front makes it unthinkable. So she started doing it the other way, quietly, in the accounts, where nobody dies and everybody bleeds. The morning after I got home, Captain Zhou Bing of Lincheng Base, a bone-forging realm transcendent, 12 years in, jogged across a parade ground to shake a high school student's hand. I feel, she said, that if I had to fight you, I wouldn't last 10 moves. Then the principal of Lincheng No. 1 High School arrived at a run, and behind him the vice principal, the year head, and the academic director, and behind all of them, Qin Fen. They queued up. There was an actual queue to hold my hand and tell me I was the pride of the school, and Qin Fen bent at the waist like a student. It was the teacher who had foresight all along, she said. A strict teacher produces outstanding students. Please don't dwell on the process. I did not shake her hand. I stood there with my hands at my sides and thought about it very precisely because I had been thinking about it since June. Does trash like this deserve a promotion? To go on being handed classes? To do to some other kid what she did to me for 3 years? Whether she keeps her teaching license at all is, I think, a question for the Education Bureau, and I know a man who can raise it with them. Then the principal played a card I did not see coming, and I want to be fair to him because it worked. He knew about IUA. He had done his homework, and he came prepared. No entrance exam. Enroll her at number one high immediately at whatever level she is at, and assign private tutors to walk her from middle school basics all the way to the college entrance examination, however long it takes. I asked what he wanted. Only, he said, that when classmate Lin achieves great things in the future, he remembers there was a principal like me. My father hugged me at the school gate in front of everybody for slightly too long. Son, he said, I'm proud of you. Your mother would be proud of you too. Uncle Chen had booked the Ascending Dragon banquet at the Longtang Grand Hotel, which is 350,000 yuan a table and the most expensive room in Lincheng. I invited Manhwa and her parents, which turned out to be a small social earthquake. Her father Mei Feng and Uncle Chen had done business together 15 years earlier, and her mother took one look at her daughter's face when I walked in and worked out, on the spot, exactly why the girl had cried for 3 days when Deep City fell. The owner of the hotel met us at the door personally, Sun Guang, 60, wealthy, and he bowed to a 17-year-old in front of his own staff. Then he upgraded the table to the million yuan standard at his own expense, without mentioning it, and every dish that came out was high-grade vicious beast. And I understood, about halfway through the second course, what Chen Hao had actually paid for that evening. He had bought me one night of watching the world treat power exactly the way it treats power so that I would know what it looks like from the inside before somebody else showed me. The door came off its hinges about 10 minutes into the fish. He Ji, a rich idler who had wanted that room and been told it was taken, and behind him Gu Wei, captain of the Pingtian mercenary group, Bone Forging Realm, 3,300 caddies, the strongest mercenary in Lincheng. He slapped the hotel owner twice in front of us and started counting to 10. Uncle Chen stood up. Uncle Chen, I said, and put a hand on his arm and sat him back down. There's no need to be angry. I'll deal with it. He looked at me. It's not as if I've never killed a Bone Forging Realm before, I said. Gu Wei, being generous, offered to teach me how high the sky is. One punch. His 5,280 against my 6,341. He went backwards across the carpet holding a hand that had stopped working properly. One kick. 6,341 caddies into the abdomen, and Lincheng's strongest mercenary went through a wall into the corridor and stayed there coughing. 2 moves. Do you still want to teach me a lesson? I said. It is I, Ba, who is ignorant, he said, from the floor of a corridor. Tell us what you want us to do so that we can leave. Get lost, I said. And on your way out, take that broken door with you. You've spoiled my mood. Now here's the part I did not know about for another 6 weeks, and it is the reason I have never once relaxed since. He Ji went home and told his father the whole story in detail because he wanted sympathy. His father is He John, CEO of the Shuntian group, and he mocked his son for about 20 minutes and sent him to bed. Then he opened a hidden compartment in the back of his wardrobe, took out a phone that has 1 number in it, and called a white-robed deacon of the Dark Knight cult. His codename is LOO231. He has been theirs for 11 years. And what he handed over was not a story, it was an intelligence assessment. Gu Wei is 3,300 caddies, 2 moves, which means Lin Kai is not 3,700. He is between 3,800 and 4,000. The deacon was extremely pleased because the sectmaster had personally put me on the kill list, and because the plan was already written. Wei Yun is untouchable, because he lives in Yanjing, and the academies are in Yanjing. But Lin Kai has to travel north to the academy, overland, across open wilderness, and if they put him on an aircraft instead, well, once the plane comes down, he only has to wait for the ground. There was a purple-robed deacon in Lincheng already, assembling 3 more Grandmasters for a stretch of road. I spent the next 3 days in seclusion with the Fei Hong potions fused into one, 44,200% absorption, 40,521 bone temperings, 86,131 total, 3,730 caddies to 3,934. And I did not reach 100,000, which is what I had budgeted 420 million yuan to reach, because bone tempering gets hungrier the further in you go, and the curve does not care what you paid. In the next room, my sister drank 135 million yuan, and something happened that nobody in that apartment had a name for. Her mind went out, past the room, past the flat, out over the whole urban village, all at once, without being asked to. And the spiritual energy came into her acupoints with almost no loss at all. An ordinary person absorbing a potion loses 60 or 70% of it on the way in. That is simply what bodies do. She was filling 1.5 acupoints an hour. Nobody in my family knew what that meant. Not my father, not me, not her. Then I sat my father down and told him how we were going to kill Song Zhen. Not by going to his house. He is a sitting law enforcement director in his own city, with a building full of armed men and a network that reaches into the alliance, and killing him at his desk would put me back in a cell. So instead, I said, you're going to walk into the Transcendent Alliance lobby and report him, loudly. With evidence. I had the evidence. I'd been carrying it in a storage space for 2 months, an assassin's phone with a call log on it, with Boss Gong at the top, and the dashcam recording out of a certain escort vehicle showing 2 men drawing knives in the back seat. His own network inside the Alliance will tip him off within the hour, I said. That's the point. That's the whole design. Because a man facing life in prison runs. And the moment he leaves this city, he stops being a director with a building around him and becomes a fugitive in open country. Chen Hao supplied the plate number without being asked. LA000111, Black War Dragon SUV, and then I told my father the truth, all of it, for the first time. Devouring physique, limit body refining realm, 5 marrow cleansings, 3,934 caddies. He sat with his mouth open for a while. He had heard the words limit realm before, once, 20 years earlier, from a woman he was not allowed to talk about. The next morning, my father stood in the marble lobby of the Lincheng Transcendent Alliance and shouted at the top of his lungs, I am reporting Song Zhen, director of the Lincheng Law Enforcement Office, for attempting to murder my son, Lin Kai. A crowd formed inside about 40 seconds, because that is a sentence you stop walking for. A clerk came over very quickly and very quietly and offered to take the materials somewhere private. No, said my father at full volume. Who knows what connections that man has inside the Transcendent Alliance? I'm not handing this to you. Get your leader. Get me somebody senior. I'll stand here all day. And he kept shouting. Grandmaster's son heard it from the air, came down through the atrium, and took him upstairs personally, which, I found out later, was not kindness, it was timing. He and Commander Gu had been waiting months for a lever big enough to start pruning the Hua family's people out of Lincheng, and my father had just walked in and put one in their hands in front of 200 witnesses. Song Zhen got the warning call within 11 minutes. Then he got the second call, which was the one that mattered. The Hua family were not going to save him. Our family is willing but powerless, they told him. Lin Kai's momentum is too great and we are being watched very closely at the moment. There was also a detail in there he did not understand, and I did. The Huang family had begun quietly taking Hua family businesses apart. He threatened to talk, and the voice on the phone said, then we cannot guarantee that Director Gong's family will remain safe. He stood alone in his office after that and said the single truest sentence of his entire life. Good relationship, he said. It was all an illusion. It was mutual exploitation from the first day. Without strength, without position, why would the Hua family spare you a second glance? Then he took a C-grade Azure Spirit set out of the boot of his car and ran, and a black Tyrannosaurus off-road vehicle pulled out of a side street behind him. He phoned his wife and son to collect them on the way, and then, at a red light on the ring road, he hesitated over a number he had not used in 8 years and dialed it. Byway, they call him Crimson Wind. A white-robed deacon of the Dark Knight cult, and a man who owed Song Zhen his life from a very long time ago. He answered in the middle of something. He had just killed the law enforcement director of Lucheng City and 3 of his men, and he was close to comprehending a move, and he was in an extremely good mood. The arrangement they made was clean. If Song Zhen does not call back within 1 day, Crimson Wind kills Lin Kai. Crimson Wind also invited him to join the cult, on the spot, as a favor to an old friend. And Song Zhen, corrupt, sold, running for his life, with a car full of his own family, said no. I don't agree with the Dark Knight cult's methods, he said. I have thought about that a great deal. I still don't know what to do with it. In the car, somewhere past the last checkpoint, his wife asked him how it had come to this, and Song Zhen, who had held it in for 3 years, finally said it out loud in front of both of them. Isn't it all because of your precious son? If he hadn't gone after that girl, Lin Yue. If he hadn't done what he did to a girl in a wheelchair, would I have had to go to the Hua family in the first place? Would I have spent 8 years being their dog? And Song Rui, in the back seat, remembered it. 3 of them. A girl who could not stand up and could not get away and could not tell anyone in a way that would matter. Weeks of it. And then a teacher walked in on them one afternoon, and 3 families made 3 phone calls, and it went into a drawer. He remembered all of it clearly, and he felt nothing about it at all, except a low, sour resentment that some crippled girl had ended up making his own life more difficult. Then he glanced out of the back window and noticed that the big black off-road vehicle behind them had been behind them for a very long time. The plate started with S, which is Deep City, and Song Zhen understood the whole thing in one piece. The report in the lobby had been bait. The shouting, the crowd, the refusal to hand the evidence to a clerk, all of it had been designed to reach him so that he would run, because a director in a building is a legal problem and a fugitive on a road is not. He swerved off the highway into open country. The Tyrannosaurus was newer and heavier, and it ran him down inside 2 kilometers and rammed him 6 times, and on the 6th, at a turn, his car went over. Old dog Gong, I said, walking up. 3 months, no see. How have you been? He came out of the wreck in a C-grade Azure Spirit set and immediately started negotiating. Matters between Transcendents should stay between Transcendents, he said. My wife has nothing to do with it. My son has nothing to do with it. And I want to put my answer here in full because it is the reason all of this happened, and because it is the only speech I have ever given that I had rehearsed. If I spare your wife and your son, I said, who is going to spare my sister? Do you know what her life has looked like since your boy and his friends finished with her? 3 years. 3 years in one room, in a chair, drawing pictures with pieces missing out of them, not willing to go through the front door of her own building alone. She was 5 when she stopped being able to walk. She was 12 when she stopped being able to leave the house. And the second one was your son. And the reason nothing happened to him is you. If he had faced anything at all back then, anything, Yue might be different now. She might have gone back to school. She might be somewhere out there being 15. But you made a phone call. He drank a dark energy potion, which is a 20% burst that costs you a year of your life, and came up at 3,826 caddies and fought me properly. I flicked his C-grade blade aside with one finger. His follow-up came in, and I blocked it without the saber moving from where it already was. Then I kicked him at 6,687 and took his sword arm off at the shoulder and finished it. I killed all 3 of them out there, and I am not going to walk you through it. You know what I did, and you know why I did it, and there is no version of that on this earth that gets better for being described. Some things can be forgiven, I said, afterwards, in an empty stretch of wilderness. I let Shumei live. She lost everything she had, and she never touched my family, and she gets to keep breathing. Your 3 families are different. 2,213 bone temperings. 88,344 total. His memories gave me 3 things. The complete list of everything he had buried for the Hua family over 8 years, which included people who were not corrupt officials and who had families of their own, the Crimson Wind contract and the one-day clock on it, and his money, 500 million yuan, 440 of it on a black market card in his own inside pocket, the rest spread thin across 6 banks on his phone. I took a photograph of each of them, not for evidence. I want to be completely clear about that. I took 3 photographs so that I could show my sister. Then I went back for the C-grade blade because it was worth 350 million yuan and I am who I am. 3 bone-forging realm investigators arrived from the Alliance about 90 minutes later with an arrest warrant for Song Zhen and found the arrest already concluded. My story was that I had staked out the law enforcement office after my father's report, followed a fleeing fugitive, attempted to apprehend him, and been resisted by armed family members, and that it had gotten out of hand. Their captain was a man named Kai Jun, and he did not believe one word of it. It doesn't look like they were killed by accident, he said. Which was fair, and also unprovable, because the corpse of a director had a dark energy potion in its bloodstream, and men do not drink those to lose gracefully, and I declined to be leaned on. The moment that arrest warrant was signed, I said, Song Zhen stopped being a law enforcement director and became a defector who had colluded with the Hua family for 8 years and hired an assassin to kill a patroller. I didn't murder an official. I killed a fugitive. That isn't a crime. It's a service. They took me to the Alliance and put me in an interrogation room, which by that point in my life was the 3rd one. And then a clerk came in with a piece of paper instead of a question. No case. Conduct assessed as meritorious. 10,000 merit points. Signed personally by Grandmaster's son. Half an hour later, Grandmaster's son called me upstairs and said someone wanted to see me and turned a screen around, and Commander Gu Dingchao was on it. He asked me 2 questions. My realm, my strength. Limit body refining, I said, 3,934. And then he said the thing. I'm going to send you my own accumulated insights on the limit path, he said. Everything I have. You are the 2nd transcendent in the world to walk the limit Dao. Every document in existence that describes the limit realm was written by my hand. There is nobody else to send them to. I stood there. Grandmaster's son had to physically prompt me. Kid, he said, hurry up and acknowledge him as your master. Master, I said and bowed. Please accept this disciple's bow. His terms were 3. Do not publicize it. If people know whose disciple you are, nobody in Hangxia will dare to compete with you, and growth without competition is worthless. Choose Heavenly Saint Academy. Divine Dragon Academy will offer you more money. You don't have months to waste. Though, and he laughed here, which I did not expect at all, there's no harm in letting the 2 of them bid against each other first. And when you get there, find Jianghua. He'll handle your daily instruction. Then he said 2 things I did not understand and did not get answers to. Above Transcendent, and Zhangtian Bridge, above the Guiqiu Sea, connects to the other shore. After the screen went dark, Grandmaster's son mentioned casually that Xu Chang had once asked to become Commander Gu's disciple, and had been refused. He also told me what the Songzhen file was actually for. Commander Gu wants the Hua family reined in. They have been expanding into neighboring cities too fast and behaving as though the rules are for other people. But the Alliance cannot break a great family without breaking something else at the same time, so instead, every clean piece of evidence that comes to hand gets used to remove a few more of their people, Quietly, over years. His one request was that I keep my feud pointed at Xu Chang and at named individuals, rather than at the clan. Because the Hua family's strength, whatever else is true about it, is still Hangxia's strength, and there is a wall somewhere that needs it. I agreed, and I pointed at Xu Mei as proof that I was capable of it. Then I went home and put 3 photographs on the kitchen table in front of my father. He looked at them for a long time, and the man who had stood in a stairwell 3 years ago and taken it, because a fruit seller with a crippled daughter does not get to answer, sat down at his own table and cried, and then started laughing, and could not stop doing either one. My sister came out of her room the next morning. How many acupoints did you fill? I asked, because that is what you ask. 122, she said. And then the medicine wore off, and the spiritual energy kept coming in on its own out of the air, and I filled another 25. 147. 4 days. 4 days from an ordinary person to a transcendent at about 560 caddies with a spontaneous energy infusion at the end of it, which is a phenomenon that happened to me exactly once and which I had to earn. I have never in my life felt slow before. I felt slow standing in that kitchen, and then her face changed. But, she said, I still can't feel anything in my legs. The room went quiet. I know, I said. That isn't what the potion was for. That one cost 10 billion, and I don't have it yet. I'm going to have it. Then I gave her my phone with the 3 photographs on it. She looked at the third one for 4 seconds, and the whole apartment lifted. Blue light came out of her eyes, and every small object in that room came up off every surface at once and hung in the air, shaking, and the pressure of it pushed my father back a step in his own kitchen. But she did not faint. That is the thing. 2 weeks earlier, the same thing had knocked her unconscious out of her chair. Now she was a transcendent, and her body could carry it, and she stayed exactly where she was with everything we owned floating around her. Serves him right, she was saying, and she was laughing and crying at the same time. It must have hurt. It must have hurt so much. Retribution. And my father stood in the doorway watching his daughter hold a room in the air with her mind, and finally said the sentence he had been not saying for 18 years. Your mother, he said, was a mental talent user. 2 bottles of life-breaking gene potion, 90,000 merit points each, 270 million yuan a bottle, fused into one, ding. Profound ascension gene potion. Rivers of silver light came off the bottle and turned in the air around it, and there were tiny figures in the rivers, growing feathers and climbing. I watched that phenomenon for a full minute with a strange feeling at the back of my skull, like recognizing a room you have never been in. 52,000% absorption. One day in, I crossed 100,000 bone temperings, and every bone in my body turned bronze, and something opened behind my eyes that let me look inward and see my own structure, and I found I could set the frequency of my own chi on purpose instead of by accident. Bone Forging Realm. The third of 10. 3,934 caddies to 4,500. I did not stop. 2.5 more days. 4,662 caddies. The technique realm wants 5,000. And a fully comprehended move on top of it. I was 338 short of the first half and had no idea how to start on the second. And then my master's file arrived, the 10th layer of Extreme Transcendents Cultivation Insights. All 10 realms, mapped, not described, mapped, with the fastest correct route through each one and the specific places where people waste years. The first 3 realms are just money, it said. Anyone with resources gets through them. But the limit versions of those realms cannot even be perceived without a limit talent, which is why nobody has written this down before, because there has been nobody to write it for. The technique realm is the watershed. An ordinary technique realm gives you a move at double amplification. Comprehending what they call potential takes it to 2.5, and comprehending intent takes it to 3, and gives you what the file calls the unity of a man and his martial art. One person in the recorded history of Hangxia has ever reached it. He wrote this document. And he once used it to kill a man 2 whole realms above himself. The limit bone forging realm needs 300,000 bone temperings, at which point the bones go from bronze to gold, strength hits 6,000 caddies, and your chi frequency crosses 2,000 cycles a second, which hands you the first threshold of the technique realm for free, a step that costs an ordinary transcendent 5 to 10 years of brutal daily work. I had 88,000 of the 300,000. The remaining 212,000 at current prices comes to at least 2 billion yuan, nearly 670,000 merit points. Where, I said, to an empty room at 4 in the morning, am I going to get that kind of money? Which is a question with an answer, actually. The college entrance examination results come out tomorrow. I am first in the country in the practical test. There are 5 academies at the top of the national table, and every one of them is going to send somebody to my door with an offer, and I intend to make all 5 of them bid. So that was the state of things. A boy who 4 months ago had no talent, a fruit stall, a sister in a wheelchair, and a ceiling of 1 cultural academy in 1 inland city. and who now had 4,662 caddies, a devouring physique, 362 open acupoints, 5 marrow cleansings, a saber worth 230 million yuan, first place in the practical test of an entire country, and a master whose name is the only reason this country still exists. I sat on the floor of a 50-square-meter apartment on the 6th floor of a building with no elevator and read my master's handwriting, and my sister was asleep in the next room breathing like a transcendent, and my father was going to open the shop at 4. There were 2 things I did not know that night. The first was that in a room I will never see, behind a mask, a man had gone down a list and put a line under my name personally, not delegated, not assigned to a deacon, signed by the sect master of the Dark Knight cult himself, because I had cost him 5 years and a city, and because he had finally read my file properly, and the second was already coming through the western gate of Lincheng. A man in dark battle armor and sunglasses driving in before dawn, with a black saber lying across the passenger seat. First place in the college entrance exam practical test, he said to himself, checking a road name against a phone. That makes you especially worth killing, and I get to repay Director Gong's kindness at the same time, killing 2 birds with 1 stone.